Today's story is one you won't want to pause, and if stories like this are how you unwind, you can request the next one I narrate. Your pick, your novel, your audiobook. Try Patreon free for 7 days, then just $3 a month. Links in the description. Now, let's begin.
At the Central Hotel highest office. Z was quietly standing there overlooking the entire island, and most of the time he was looking at Roja. Watching Roja kill Lucifer and other strong opponents. He looked at Roja being unstoppable wherever he went. I didn't expect him to have the best performance in his first mission. If it was the previous Z, then he may not tolerate so much killing, but since his family was killed, Z no longer cared. Z appreciated Roja's performance. Suddenly Z's expression changed when he saw a person coming out of the hotel. He is finally out. Upon seeing this person, Z was ready to go and suppress him because no one in the elite camp could match him. But when he saw the direction that person was headed to, Z stopped his action. And suddenly his face showed a trace of interest. If it is him, it can be interesting. On the island. Many of the elite camp people were cleaning up the mess separately while the remaining were killing the rest of the pirates. The elites weren't all unscathed. They had many injuries, but most of them are light. They just consumed a lot of stamina. There are some relaxed elites that didn't get in any hard fights. First it was Smoker, then after him come Roja. If he didn't meet with Lucifer and used 2 Getsuga Tenshō and also used the flames countless times, Roja may be more relaxed than Smoker. And this time Roja and Smoker met on the same street. It's you. Smoker looked at the other side of the street and paused his footsteps, then said, Lucifer, you got him? Roja caused a commotion, so probably the stronger person had gone for him. Smoker met some slight stronger pirates, but none of them were that much. So he was sure that Roja should have fighted with Lucifer. But when Roja appeared before him, Smoker eyes flashed because the former seemed very relaxed. So he couldn't help but doubt that Roja met the Captain Lucifer. You won't be hearing that name again. Roja responded casually. This mission didn't give him any pressure, so the energy didn't increase by much. This wasn't as good as the first assessment, which made Roja unsatisfied. Hearing those words, Smoker nodded slightly as he was just slightly surprised because after killing Lucifer, Roja still seemed relaxed and wasn't exhausted. It seems like Roja was stronger than he expected. But he has a Logia-type devil fruit, so his body could change into smoke. So unless Roja no Haki or had a sea stone, then Smoker will hold the advantage if they fought. You come here while cleaning on your way, and most of the others are doing the same, so the mission is about to end, I think. Smoker talked while 2 cigars dangling from his mouth and went to Roja's side. At this time Roja and Smoker expressions changed. They turned around to see a person at the same side of the street. They didn't know when he appeared. Looking at him, Roja's eyes flashed a little bit. That face was familiar. Then a thought flashed in his mind while his memory jolted. This guy. Don Quixote family elite Lao Ji. Lao Ji. One of the family members of the Don Quixote family who used the martial art of the Jioken style, and even if he is not as powerful as the time of the original story, but as one of the elite members of the Don Quixote family, he should at least have the strength of a rear admiral. Doflamingo's power although far less than the Yonko, but he made the marine have constant headache as big pirate group. At this time Lao Ji looked at Roja and Smoker coldly. Lucifer is really useless. Not only was he exposed, he couldn't even handle the mess he created, and now I have to make a move myself. With a cold tone his killing intent filled the air as he didn't put Roja and Smoker, the 2 youngsters, in his eyes. Feeling the power Lao Ji was letting out, Smoker knew that this person wasn't like the other small fries. Let me handle this guy. Do you understand what you're saying? Roja glanced at Smoker, who wanted him to retreat and watch. Smoker brow wrinkled and was ready to retort, but the distant Lao Ji rushed over the 2. This situation is dangerous. For Lao Ji, he only need to destroy the marines on the island, then destroy the island and move to another one. And almost as Lao Ji reached them, Roja was the first to move. Soru. Almost instantly Roja's body blurred and flashed in front of Lao Ji while swinging his sword. Sword flow, cremate. Roja didn't expect that he would meet the Don Quixote family elite in this mission, and in the face of the latter, he had only one idea, and that is fight. 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 No matter the enemy, with his sword in hand he will cut anyone. Boom. The sword was yet to fall, but flames already rushed toward Lao Ji and was a silver-white sharp energy which followed behind the flames. Lao Ji didn't think that Roja was so fast and didn't have time to avoid the flames. Bang. A roar sounded as flames burst which instantly swallowed Lao Ji, then the energy attack and Roja's sword followed behind and fell at the same time. Smoker rushed toward Lao Ji with the intent to fight, but apparently didn't expect Roja to be so fast and already made his attack against Lao Ji. Even so, he didn't expect that Roja's attack would succeed. Now Lao Ji was swallowed by the flames, which made Smoker think. Is this person really that strong? Ding. In the next moment when Roja's sword fell, a sound of iron hitting iron sounded. In the middle of the flames, Roja was shocked to see Lao Ji defending his sword with a fist. Busashoku Haki. Roja looked at the painted black fist, then jumped away to retreat a few meters and wasn't surprised at all. Boom. At the same time Lao Ji, who was wrapped by the flames, suddenly used some kind of power which made the flames scatter to the side as his figure once again appeared. Loa Ji, although he was out of the flames, but he wasn't unscathed as most of his clothes were burned while some still had flames on them. Damn marine brat, using surprise to set me on fire. At first he didn't put Roja in his eyes as he didn't think that Roja got such speed, and the flames were aggressive which caught him off guard, and that made him really angry. Lao Ji directly rushed towards Roja again. Sword flow, torch. Roja looked at Lao Ji, who was rushing toward him, and grabbed his sword. Flames suddenly burst out around Roja, making a ring of fire. Do you think this will be able to block me? Lao Ji's voice sounded outside the flame, and then a terrifying fist come. If any other person from the elite camp faced this, they wouldn't stand a chance against it. Ji no Kakuin. Lao Ji forced his way into the flame and directed his fist at Roja with unstoppable speed. I know your tricks. In the face of Lao Ji's fist, Roja was fearless. He placed his foot a little back, then he swung his sword with a low cry. Getsuga. Tenshō. A strange force suddenly came out and a crescent-shaped red energy bursted out from Roja's sword and headed toward Lao Ji. Whether the strength of the swing or the energy produced after the swing both were double the previous attack. It can't compare with the energy that was within the flames. Lao Ji could resist Roja's energy strike before, but in the face of a sudden power, his expression changed. The distance was close and it's too late to escape. Lao Ji crossed his hands on his chest while hardening them with Busashoku Haki as he was forced to receive the strike. Boom! Lao Ji bounced back due to the force. His foot opened a crack on the ground while he tried to stop it, and on his wrist there was bloodstains, with the blood still spilling. Lao Ji wasn't Z or Garp. Even if he used the Busashoku Haki, he won't be able to receive his Getsuga Tenshō head-on like Z last time. Even if you can use the Busashoku Haki, so what? Roja was proudly holding his sword and standing with his head high. Looking at this scene, Smoker couldn't help but look with shock. Even if Roja was strong, he didn't think that his attack could be this tyrannical, that even the Busashoku Haki used by this pirate couldn't resist his attack. In term of attack, he is above Smoker. Powerful. Lao Ji looked at his wrist, which had a scar now. He took a deep breath and said, Really, I underestimated you. It seems you're not an ordinary kid. The next moment Lao Ji again rushed towards Roja and the fight resumed. Rumbling. Roja kept releasing flames so that the field temperature kept on raising. Although Lao Ji could force the flames away from his body, he wasn't immune to fire and more or less he will be burned. Monstrous flames swept in all directions, the whole street lit up and turned into a fire street. And this time those who were searching for the escaping pirate and cleaning the rest saw the flames again, which was more intense than before, as if waves that kept coming one after the other. It's Roja's ability. Is there an enemy? Many of the elite camp people were together already when they saw the flames rising. The whole street was on fire, so even those who were close couldn't get in. They could feel the heat waves coming one after the other. Just staying there made they sweat dry and vapor rise. The crowd were surprised and didn't know who Roja was fighting, when suddenly they heard a bombing sound. Bang! In the street a house come crashing down and a figure shot out directly and flew out of the street, then hit the ground. When the elite camp people saw that figure, almost all of them exposed a shocked expression. The one that flew out was Smoker. Cough. Cough. Smoker coughed twice while his mouth there was a trace of blood. Seeing this, the elite camp people looked at him in shock. Even Smoker got hurt. What a joke, are you saying that Roja and Smoker battled then Roja hurt Smoker? No, look carefully. On the side the crowd was in uproar after finding something. Looking at the direction Smoker was looking at, there was two figures in confrontation. Boom. Suddenly someone rushed out of the flames while covered in burns and was nearly not wearing a thing. At the same time another figure rushed behind the first one while he was swinging his sword at him. The first to come out was Lao Ji, and without a doubt Roja was after him. When the two were out of flames, Smoker was already standing while surrounded by smoke and once again rushed in. This was a mission to catch pirates, not a one-on-one fighting arena. Smoker naturally will not let Roja have that one-on-one battle as he joined the battle. But as he approached, Lao Ji would use his haki, and Smoker Fruit doesn't have any attacking power. His shortcomings suddenly were out, which is his attack power that was a little weak compared to Roja and Lao Ji. The smoke was only playing the role of hindering the opponent's sight. This battle was dominated by Roja. And because Roja's attacks can cause damage to Lao Ji. So when the latter receive attacks from Roja, he will try to avoid, and when Smoker attack, he will attack back. Lao Ji was one of the Don Quixote family's elite members, so when he fought seriously, Smoker was sent flying several times as he was wounded and was vomiting blood. This is the first time Smoker felt weak on a mission after entering the elite camp. Watching Roja, Smoker, and Lao Ji fighting, all the people there were shocked. Smoker and Lao Ji are showing some shocking strength, but the most incredible one was without a doubt Roja. The road was full of flames and Roja's energy attacks were tearing the ground. Right now Roja's power was clear to all the elite camp members. Even Drake and Hina with the other newcomers looked at the battle with a blank mind. Drake was very clear that a month ago Roja was strong, but absolutely not as now. Roja's power now is above his when using the fruit ability, not only the speed but even the strength. And Roja's Tobu Zangiki, compared to a month ago, was so much powerful to the extent that if Drake received one strike he will be cut in half. Most of the elite camp looked at Smoker, who was the most powerful in the elite camp, could only play a supportive role. Doesn't this mean that Roja is stronger than Smoker? After joining the elite camp for a month he became the most powerful among them, which only a few could do. In the battle Roja wasn't unharmed as there was a clear trace of blood on his mouth. That was how powerful Lao Ji's fist was. Even after getting injured Roja's striking power didn't drop but instead kept on getting more violent. In this fight Roja almost had no defense, all he did was attack. In the elite camp there is no one who will fight this aggressively, this style was a pirate style. Lao Ji was retreating more and more. He already thought that Roja's attacks were strong but not threatening, but didn't expect that Roja would be this aggressive, and sometimes he would receive his fist just to return a sword strike back. In this case Lao Ji didn't want to be reckless as his weapon were his fists, and Roja's attack are becoming more violent and unstoppable. Even while Lao Ji was using the Busashoku his fist was still full of scars and he had numerous blood stains. Sword flow, torch. Roja was again surrounded by flames. Even the elite camp members want to help him, they won't be able to as only Roja and Smoker, who got a Logia, will not be hurt by it. As the monstrous flame kept burning, Lao Ji was getting exhausted, as not only does he need to avoid Roja's strike but also have to suppress the flames. This time the elite member of the Don Quixote family Lao Ji was suppressed. All the people on the site were shocked and even Z's eyes were shining with unprecedented light. Roja battle performance although was slightly rough at the beginning but was getting better by the time. As if he was a sword genius, his moves kept getting better after every exchange. Roja's whole body was covered in blood, but only the blood on his mouth was his, all the other was Lao Ji's. Roja was suppressing Lao Ji and his whole body had a strong momentum. While fighting suddenly Roja started to feel that everything was extremely slow while Lao Ji was throwing a punch and Roja's sword was falling. Everything seemed to stand still. Isn't this the feeling of time extension? This state can only last a moment but in that moment everything become clear. The trigger of this state was before dying or life and death situation. In addition to that, even masters will perceive this state and only few will be able to enter it. Roja entering this state was a coincidence. He was in this state because he used too much the ability of the soul sword far more than any previous fight. Roja didn't know how many times did he use the ability of the soul sword as he now could clearly feel the existence of the sword in his soul. Roja wasn't in a crisis of life and death, also he wasn't the last moments before his death. But using his soul so much made him enter this state. For the others it was only an instant but for Roja everything was clear, his sword trajectory, the power of his strike and the trajectory of Lao Ji's fist. While he was trying to look more carefully his senses suddenly returned to normal. Everything returned to its normal speed. Roja found it hard to describe what he felt with words. Roja's sword suddenly fell which seemed just like a normal energy strike but the burst of power was impressively more powerful by 3%. Lao Ji defended against the sword. The swing compared to using Getsuga Tenshō wasn't anything great and an upgrade of 3% won't make a huge change as it even failed to shake Lao Ji black fist. And Lao Ji didn't care. After all Roja used the Getsuga Tenshō which increased the power of his strike by 3 times. But Lao Ji didn't know that this upgrade wasn't in strength but was in the way of the sword. Which enhanced his foundation with the sword. And the power which is almost 3% stronger will make Roja's Getsuga Tenshō leap in strength. The Getsuga Tenshō from before could already cut Lao Ji Busashoku. Now that its strength sword, what will happen? The next moment Smoker found an opportunity to launch a distracting attack at Lao Ji. While Roja held his sword and swung. Getsuga Tenshō. The 3% increase in normal Tobu Zangiki was much more apparent in the Getsuga Tenshō to the extent that it was like a bright moon blooming in the air and piercing the void. Lao Ji repulsed Smoker whose interference made the former unable to avoid Roja's strike. So he cast his Busashoku and tried to go against it. But when the fist and the energy collided Lao Ji's face changed. Before Getsuga Tenshō could barely cut though his haki but after the increase in strength it cut though his haki easily. This was ridiculous. Blood splashed while Lao Ji's face turned pale as he couldn't support his body. He was half kneeling and looked at Roja with awe. This is impossible. His haki was cut by Roja. Was this because of the overuse of haki that led to his power weakening? No. It's not. It's just. Roja just got stronger. In other words his power increased while he is battling. Lao Ji didn't seem to feel the pain as his face made an expression of disbelief. A pair of eyes staring at Roja who despite being so young had such strength but also his power increased while in battle he can't let him continue to grow further. Despite him thinking this way Lao Ji was already exhausted. His consciousness began to blur and the world gradually turned dark. Puff. Lao Ji fell on the ground into a pool of blood. In front of him was Roja who slowly put his sword back into the scabbard while the flames in the street extinguished. Lao Ji the elite member of the Don Quixote family was defeated. As the flames disappeared. The whole street appeared in a sorry state. The elite camp members were staring at the two people standing while most eyes were fixed on Roja. This is Roja's real strength. Even someone using Busoshoku haki was defeated. At this moment Z who was standing on top of the central hotel couldn't help but being amazed. Roja's performance was out of his expectation from the beginning and that final breakthrough which led to Lao Ji's defeat made him feel awe. In Z's view Roja was completely different from the 3 admirals. As the 3 of them relied on their fruit ability to join the marine, but Roja had no devil fruit, so Roja's strength was his own. With the collapse of Lao Ji the mission finally ended. In this mission the most outstanding performance was without a doubt Roja's. There wouldn't be anyone making an objection on this. Seeing is believing. Roja's strength burst on this fight made everyone amazed and shocked. After this mission everyone in the elite camp would look at Roja with eyes of fear. It's the same look which they looked at Smoker before. From this moment no one will doubt Roja's strength. They won't need to measure Roja and Smoker's strength anymore. They only need to know that Roja can crush any of them easily and that's enough. In the battle Roja's gains were many as he used his soul ability to the limit which led to entering the time extension state and comprehending more the way of the sword. Now Roja could defeat Lao Ji in a one-on-one battle. After the battle Roja was tired from the overuse of his physical and mental strength so he directly went back into the warship, entered his room and fell asleep. When he woke up the warship had set sail already and was about to reach the headquarters. He didn't have any sense of fatigue after waking up he felt refreshed. His body which had some injuries after the fight was cured. Well fighting Lao Ji made this mission have some value in it. Roja stood up while his eyes revealed excitement. He gained so much from the fight other than his breakthrough on the way of the sword and entering the time extension state, the energy of his soul sword skyrocketed. Compared to before his energy improved very fast. A total of more than 200 points. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 2. Attribute, Attack Power plus 165, Power plus 50, Agility plus 50. Special Attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, Sword Attack have additional fire damage, Evolution's condition isn't met. Special Attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Enhanced Energy, 291/140. After his fight with Lucifer and the other pirates, his energy didn't rise by much. But after Figting Lao Ji his energy got to the point where he could strengthen the soul sword 2 more times. Because he was too tired Roja returned to his room and directly fell asleep. So he didn't use energy. After strengthening his soul sword 2 consecutive times, a golden light flashed twice from his body. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 4. Attribute, Attack Power plus 200, Power plus 60, Agility plus 60. Special attribute, all things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Enhanced energy, 1/160th. It's clear that fighting will rise the energy more than normal training. Roja muttered while looking at the property bar. Roja now wasn't sure if he was already at the level of a vice admiral, but at least now he could defeat strong people like Lao Ji. I need to learn hockey so I can face characters with an admiral's strength. So the only thing left now is to train in hockey. Roja's eyes flashed with light. Roja was clear that if he was to learn hockey then he will be able to beat any vice admiral character. And when he could do that he will consider going out and look for the One Piece. In the New World. A large pirate ship was sailing slowly. In the pirate ship there was a cabin and the internal structure of that cabin was very delicate which gave an aristocratic atmosphere. It was nothing like a pirate shop. At this time. Inside that cabin, a person was sitting next to the table as he was using the Den Den Moshi. So you want to say? The second division in the South Blue was completely destroyed and Lao Ji was arrested there. Doflamingo said while his tone didn't contain any joy. Yes. From the other side the voice responded. Okay, I get it. Doflamingo hung up the Den Den Moshi and slowly his face sank while his hand were gently placed on his forehead. The atmosphere was completely silent. But in this kind of depressing atmosphere Doflamingo suddenly laughed. Fufufu, fufufufu. The depressing atmosphere was suddenly broken by the laugh of Doflamingo. It was a creepy laugh. As if it had only darkness and evil and after that laugh no one would know what Doflamingo was thinking about. Lao Ji is skilled and if it was the Marines in the South Blue then they wouldn't be able to a thing. This world will gradually lose balance, so how will the Marine and the world government move? In the sea a warship was sailing. Roja who was inside the cabin came out to the deck. But he found all the elite camp's members gathered there. Seems like they were having a banquet. Some people saw Roja. They had their eyes flash with a light of awe. Not only because of his strength but also because of his fight against Lao Ji which was a fierce battle to the extreme. Now everyone is clear about Roja's ferociousness. He was an overbearing existence which was different to the harmless look he possessed. The strong are feared. But the aggressive are more feared. Of course, not everyone was in awe as Hina directly pulled Roja. Yo, after burning the entire island you finally took a rest. Hina relied on railing by the deck side and directed a slightly frivolous look at Roja. Of course, if I didn't rest well would you help me massage my legs? Roja looked at Hina, shrugged and smiled. Hearing his sentence, Hina snappily glanced at him. Massage your head. Before the mission I was next to you on the street and I was almost burned by your fire. Hina now looked really angry. Roja smiled and looked at Hina. I am really sorry about that. You were looking for me for a compensation, right? What do you want? Hina snorted then no longer cared about Roja as she turned to chat with Ain. Roja looked at a free corner and sat down. They still didn't reach the windless sea. The wind was blowing gently bringing comfortable cool feeling. The crowd was pouring wine which Roja still didn't know where they found it. Before they could drink a serious voice sounded. What are you doing? Roja looked up to see Z expressionless while coming out of the cabin. Seeing Z this time the crowd didn't get up. They all looked at each other. In the past after every mission there will be a banquet but generally there was no wine and this time as no one knew why in the warship aside from water reserves there was drinks. The field was in silence. If a needle was to fall on the ground the sound could be heard clearly. And in this silence Z suddenly smiled. He broke the silence by saying, this time only. No next time. Z today was in a very good mood. Even if drinking was against the rule, so that they can be ready to fight in any moment. But if a former admiral couldn't handle something with those in the elite camp in the sober state change a thing? With the permission of Z all the people present froze then suddenly cheered up. The banquet started again. Roja didn't participate in the drinking but was enjoying the breeze while leaning on the side of the railing. Suddenly a burst of smoke came with the breeze. Smoker who was having 2 cigars dangling on his mouth came to the side of Roja. While he also leaned on the railing. After a while he suddenly asked. What do you think about the Marine and their justice? Smoker joined the Marine for his own thinking. Many had their own understanding about justice but Smoker didn't care about any of them. Looking at the entire members of the elite camp, Smoker could only pay attention to Roja, who showed so much talent which exceeded his by far. And once Roja learned hockey he won't be his opponent anymore. So Smoker wanted to know Roja's idea. Roja looked at Smoker and said freely, if the heart feel it's right then it's justice. Hearing this Smoker was silent and then looked at Roja deeply. This answer was beyond his expectations. From the previous fight, while looking at his momentum and style, Roja with no doubt hate to obey others when he think he is right and he won't be subject to any rules. Your own heart is the rule. Ordinary people won't have this kind of idea. Looking at the world now many people had this kind of idea but most of them are pirates. In the Marine there isn't almost a single one. The warship trip was from the South Blue into the Windless Sea then into the Red Line. In this process they didn't encounter pirates at first. But a group of lucky pirates who wanted to cross into the Red Line encountered Z and the elite camp. After the battle that the elites won easily there was no other problems. The warship safely returned to the Marine headquarters. After that the elite camp members had nothing more to do. So everybody returned to their room. Roja returned to his home to find Garp there. He told him about the mission. Then he went to rest a little. Tomorrow I will begin my hockey practice. Roja shook his fist and returned to his bed to rest. The next day. Roja was on the second floor of the Marine fortress which was the elite camp training field. And Z has long been waiting for him. Hockey practice now begin. Mariewa the place where the celestial dragons live also where the world government reside. In a luxurious and exquisite hall, 5 people were standing there. They are the core of the world government. The actual power controlling the government, Garusei. Don Quixote Doflamingo. He was trying to establish a black trading network in the South Blue. We don't know how wide, as we could only dig one island. He will be difficult to deal with. Even those 5 seniors had a headache while thinking about how to deal with Doflamingo. The degree of trouble Doflamingo brought in the view of those 5 seniors is no less than the 4 emperors. He was one of the world nobility. Even without that privilege he is still a headache. Well, we need a solution to this. Many powers had established their forces and are hard to shake anymore, for example the 4 emperors. The White Beard, the Beast Kaido, the Big Mom, and the red-haired Shanks. Many called them the 4 emperors, but now it became real. Roja was the one to start all this mess. He started the pirates era, and now the world's strongest man Whitebeard is escorting this era. So the world government found it hard to put an end to it. Once the 4 emperor forces completely form, I am afraid that with the marine power alone it will be hard to maintain the balance. The marines seem to be getting worse by every year, and there is no more promising youth like Borsellino, Sakazuki, and Kazan. Indeed, the quality of the recruits is down, or maybe Z's teaching level is in decline. Here the 5 people were shaking their heads. Akainu, Akiji, and Kizaru rose at a very fast speed. At that time they thought that 3 would be the new pillars of the marine, and many other promising youth will join the marine. But after so many years there was no recruit that could compare to the 3 of them. What is the situation with the recruits today? How are the CP doing? Sitting of the sofa, one of the 5 said after drinking his tea, the CP prepared some good members. I think letting the CP and the Marineford recruits face each other will be a good experience. The CP wasn't under the jurisdiction of the Marine, but it was directly under the world government, and it could be regarded as another organization. Yes, that exchange doesn't have to be a public one. The other 4 nodded their heads. For them this kind of thing is just a trifle. Unless someone with one of the 3 admirals' talent appear, anything else is not worthy of their attention. What they really care about is the development of the Marine for the future of the world. Marine Headquarter. In a separate practice field, Z was teaching Roja how to use haki. Busashoku haki and the body strength are closely related. The stronger the body, the stronger the haki. And if the body is weak, then the haki will be weak. For example, in the Island of Women, Amazon Lily, most of their soldier could use haki, but because their strength is insufficient their haki was very weak. The practice of haki needs time. It isn't something that can be learned overnight. Practicing haki without physical strength is a waste of time. It's like putting the cart before the horse. The potential of the body is almost infinite. Its strength can always get stronger theoretically. But the stronger the body, the more difficult the improvement. In general, the strength of the body can be improved without a limit, but in certain stage if you want to improve your strength it will be very, very difficult. So practicing haki will be more appropriate. If other people had the strength of Roja's body from before, then they will start their haki training. But Z found it a bit too early. But Roja now was different. The last few months Roja was very weak, but after practicing every day like a madman he became what he is today. If this was too early for some people, then it won't apply on Roja. The strength of the Busashoku haki varies from person to person. But control is the key, this is a fact. Now that Roja will be practicing haki, Z started to explain in a very simple way and with a gentle tone. Practicing Busashoku haki to be able to barely cover the fist or the weapon to slightly enhance the attack power, which is just getting started. If one can make the haki not around but highly condensed and attach it to a weapon or a fist to the point that it will change its color into ink blue or black, which can be called mastering the Busashoku haki. Furthermore, one has to be able to attach haki to any part of his body. And to achieve this it's hard even for those who mastered haki. Of course the most fundamental is the strength of the haki. As no matter how perfect the control is, if it's not strong enough then it's not strong enough. Z continued to talk and Roja nodded from time to time. Z taught Roja many things which Roja knew but wasn't sure about, and most of what he knew was correct. When someone used the whole body Busashoku he doesn't need strong control but he needs power. Assuming that Roja's haki had a value of 10, so whether he used the Busashoku in a part of his body or in his whole body will depend on that value of 10 if it's sufficient. So the strength of the Busashoku haki is fundamental. Z leisurely looked at Roja, paused for a bit, then slowly said again. Using the whole body Busashoku without a doubt will let your defense be more powerful, but still the strength is fundamental, and now you only need to practice to use haki on a part of your body. Z said what Roja thought about. If he didn't know how to use the haki in his sword but use it to defend, it would be simply a waste. Regardless who the enemy in front of him, he will cut them with his sword. This is the style of Roja. Seeing Roja nod his head, Z smiled then said, then let the haki training officially begin. Listen, you need. After a month in the room inside the 2nd floor of the fortress, Roja stood there holding a sword. He was looking with full concentration at the sword's body while the sword was surrounded by a strange atmosphere. This strange atmosphere was Busashoku haki. Busashoku. Hardening. With an idea Roja tried to gather all of his haki together. The haki gathered with Roja's control and began to condense on the sword. But after condensing to a certain extent and a little bit of blue ink color started to appear, it collapsed directly. A month's time is really too short. Practicing haki while my strength was lacking a bit and my control is insufficient. So I can't use it fully yet. Roja murmured and then took a deep breath and continued his practice. In fact, Roja already could use haki half a month ago. Roja then began to practice getting his haki out and into the sword. But he couldn't make the haki condense and form on the sword or on his hand yet. Roja also practiced Kenbunchaku haki at the same time. He could practice it faster than the Busashoku. Almost in a few days Roja mastered the Kenbunchaku haki. This confirmed Roja's guess. The basis of this type of haki is like his focused state. The same as the rhythm of everything, but you have to go the other direction to find it. As it gasped the opponent actions in order to dodge. The Kenbunchaku haki capture all the detail about the opponent. The higher the level, the greater the scope of perception. In addition, there's nothing more powerful. Actually there is. This state is the sound of all things. This ultimate state of Kenbunchaku haki is said to have only been reached by one person, which is Roja. This realm made him communicate with everything. Whether life or death. Everything is recorded on the world 800 years ago. That blank 100 years in the historical records, Roger didn't need to interpret the things in the poneglyph as he directly know of its content. Most people will find it difficult to achieve this level with practice. This degree of insight is almost another ability other than the Kenbunchaku Haki. Z was extremely shocked by Roja's progress speed. At first he could point Roja to a thing or two. But now Roja doesn't need any of his pointers anymore. Nowadays Roja's training speed made Z numb. Roja only took several days to practice the Kenbunchaku Haki, then only half a month to practice the Busashoku Haki, which made Z shocked to the point he didn't know how to speak. If Roja came now and told Z that he already mastered the Busashoku Haki, then Z won't get surprised at all. He wanted to teach Roja how to practice Haki. But when Roja began to practice, Z found that he didn't need to teach him a thing. In many things Roja could do alone and other places he could barely pass, so he simply didn't need Z's instruction anymore. Fortunately Haki practice needs some practical training. And since the theoretical aspect of Roja almost doesn't need his instruction anymore, then Z will take the practical training really seriously. Most of the time they were in battle. During this period Garp passed by. When he saw Roja training and performance he was shocked but more pleased. In addition, Z was so dedicated in training Roja that his heart started questioning if Roja was his nephew or Z's. Roja still wasn't able to condense the Busashoku Haki. Until the second month, Roja was finally able to use it. Not fully gasped as there's still some probability of failure. The practice was like hell. Just 2 months to comprehend how to control and use Busashoku Haki and make it attached to his sword. Even if Roja has a soul that is stronger people, it still will be really hard to do what he did. Using Busashoku hardening, out of 10, it will succeed once or twice. With the continuation of practice his success rate was getting higher and higher. From once or twice to 3 or 4 times and then to 5 to 6. From the start to now it's more than 2 months. Roja's success rate now is more than 80% and was close to fully gasp it. Boom. In the small room Roja was hitting a thick steel plate which punctured while his fist was colored blue ink or black. Busashoku Haki around the fist and the condensation on the fist are of completely different level. Roja looked at his punch and wondered. Before, he tested his punch with just the Haki surrounding it. It did brought some increase in power but not much. But when he condensed the Haki into his fist and used hardening, the increase was huge. Roja used hardening brought double the force used with a punch without Haki. The Busashoku brought his attack power up by another level. In fact it was equivalent to his soul sword when he upgraded it. Despite it only increasing his attack and defense, but that increase is terrifying. I will try again. Roja pulled out his Hano no Suki, took a deep breath and concentrated his Haki once again on the sword. It seemed like it will condense but suddenly collapsed. Is this a failure? It seems that it is not a matter of lacking control, but what I lack is Haki strength. Roja looked at his sword while revealing a thoughtful expression, but he didn't give up as he tried again. This time he didn't fail as the sword body was colored with a dark color. It turned into a black sword. Roja made a swing. Wouch! A very thick steel plate which was by the side split into 2 from the middle. The cut was smooth. Roja used Tobu Zangiki toward the another plate which was cut with a flash too. Ding! The energy swept the steel plate in the corner and cut it. The power of Tobu Zangiki is almost twice the normal or slightly weaker. It should be my control which is lacking. Roja looked at the scene before him with a satisfied smile. His strength increased by almost the double. If it was a few months ago a double in his strength is nothing, but for the current Roja a double in strength was something really terrifying. Roja's growth rate was slower than before as he only increased his physical strength by 35%. Haki will make anyone in this world strong, and even devil fruit user will need the Haki as it will increase their strength greatly. Roja didn't want to depend on his luck. Because Roja didn't want a devil fruit like Lucifer's, he didn't want to be a devil fruit user by trying his luck on some unknown fruits. The Haki didn't have any luck ingredient. It's the power that will grow with effort. The effect of Haki isn't simple increase in offense and defense. The Kenbunchaku Haki can perceive various attack, while the Busashoku Haki can be used to attack Logia-type devil fruit. So after learning it he won't be afraid to face any Logia user, as Busashoku is the most efficient weapon against them. Of course someone with a devil fruit can also practice Haki. So the outcome will depend on whose Haki is stronger. Haki in this world can be described as important. In those 2 months there wasn't any accidents as Roja's strength was steadily improving. In addition to the Haki practice, his soul sword once again upgraded 2 times. After thinking about it the property bar appeared before Roja. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 6. Attribute, Attack Power plus 230, Power plus 70, Agile plus 70. Special Attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special Attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Improved Energy, 42 180ths. Even after the basic attributes upgraded the effect wasn't obvious anymore for Roja. The time for the 4th stage is gradually coming. From the 2nd to the 3rd stage, the basic attribute enhanced by much, and in the next stage upgrade it will probably be another huge increase again. In addition to that, he will get another basic attribute, and also he will get the chance to extract another special attribute. I don't know what attribute will I extract in the 4th stage. After murmuring in his heart, Roja put away the property bar and put his sword in his scabbard and stretched his body. It has been 2 months since the last mission. In the elite camp, the frequency of the mission should be 2 to 3 months. But Z still didn't mention any news about the mission. Not having a mission is just right. As he still didn't master the Busashoku hardening. Which was a problem that has to be solved. And his physical strength didn't reach the limit yet as he can continue to improve. He need to make his Busashoku stronger and also improve his control until there won't be a chance of failure. Roja didn't hear any news about the mission and didn't take the initiative to ask. The Marine Headquarters Fortress 2nd floor. In the large field the elite camp member were practicing while chatting with each other. It's been about 3 months from the last mission. You don't need pay attention to that. Probably they don't have any real mission. Several elite camp members sat down to rest and drink some water. They started talking about not having a mission and couldn't help but feel strange. Usually every 2 months the elite camp will take a mission. And even if it was delayed it won't exceed 3 months. But now from the last task there is more than 3 months. Are you talking about the next mission? At this time I'm come over while looking at the few people talking, I asked teacher before. And because of something the mission will be delayed for few months. Few months. Hearing 9 words the recruit looked at each other. Although not everyone liked missions but they couldn't help but wonder, did something happen for them to delay mission for a few months? I didn't hear about any event that happened in the sea recently. A few recruits paused their practice and talked about the topic. I don't know, if you want to know you can ask teacher. Why do I need the reason of the delay? The important thing is that there will be one. Someone laughed after hearing this. They are not happy to go on mission. The missions will make them stressful and even if they won't lose their life the shame from having Z rescue them is enough. Everyone continued to chat. Suddenly the main entrance of the practice area was pushed directly by a group of people. After the group came in, they went to the center of the field while being led by a person. That person was calm and indifferent while looking at the crowd then said. Are the strongest recruits in the Marine headquarters here? You are. The elite camp crowd saw those people come in and were a bit surprised. Because they weren't wearing the Marine uniform which means they aren't from the Marine. If they could come here while being not from the Marine then their identity is worth considering. This group of people although different in size but there are men and women. The clothes are different than the Marine but still look like a uniform. You don't need to know who we are. A person looked indifferently with a condescending look at the crowd from the elite camp. The group of people come with such attitude and now they are talking with such a cold and arrogant tone. Suddenly everyone's faces in the elite camp turned cold. This time everyone from the elite camp gathered together. There was about 30 people in the elite camp which was more than those who came in by several times. Even thought they were a few people but in the face of the elite camp members, they not only didn't have a disadvantage but they even felt slightly better. You people are from the world government. Someone said coldly from the elite recruits. Not a Marine but still have access to the Marine headquarters. Come to the elite training camp with a clothing that looked like an official uniform. Certainly these people are from world government. And that guess was right. Those people are directly under the world government, the members of the CP. And the person leading this group was the person who will become a member of the CP9 and known as the strongest member in the CP9 history. Rob Lucci. What will you do even if you know that? Lucci glanced fanately at the front of the crowd and said very calmly, I only want to know one thing now. Are you this camp's strongest? His tone was ridiculing everyone in the camp and from the beginning he was arrogant. Hearing this everyone from the camp sneered. It was obvious what the world government wanted to do. It was to beat them up. Very good move. 3 stepped forward and looked coldly at those people then said, it looked like you're looking for trouble. Haha. Jabra looked at him and said with a trace of mockery, yes we came looking for trouble, what about it? In the top floor of the Marine fortress. In a very spacious hall the higher-ups in the main headquarters are gathered there. The Fleet Admiral Sengoku with the 3 admirals, Garp as well as the Marine elite camp instructor and former Admiral Z. In addition to them there are other people not wearing the Marine uniform which were officials from the world government. This is the case. Understood. Sengoku looked at his front and nodded calmly at the official. Sengoku was highest ranked in the Marine as he get order only from the world government. In the other hand Kizaru was drinking tea as this has nothing to do with him and Akiji looked like he will fall asleep at any second. Akainu was standing behind Sengoku looking calmly while listening the world government official without expressing his thought or commenting. After Sengoku and that official talked for a while, submitted some document and stopped talking. The official got up and was ready to leave. And at this time one of the officials turned around and looked at Z and said, yes, Z, some of the CP are here to look for your elite camp recruits and have a fight with them. What? Z frowned and said, have they gone already? Why didn't you tell me? If we were there how will they communicate? Don't worry, they will not be too heavy-handed as I gave them the order already. Another one said, Z, you look so anxious, is the so-called elites are just for show, don't you have any confidence in them? Z coldly looked at that official and said, you ordered them to not be heavy-handed and I didn't, if some of your people die then you bear the consequences. Ho ho. The official did not speak but laughed instead and then they left the hall and Z left too. In the hall only Sengoku and the others remained. CP prepared an exchange between our camp and theirs. I am really looking forward to it. Akiji looked happy and directly stood up and left the hall. At the same time Garp was eating. I still have thing to do, I shall go first. As he said that Garp left. Looking at the leaving Akiji and Garp, Sengoku shook his head and did not say a thing. Teacher Z's recruits are probably good but I heard that Mr. Garp's nephew is in the camp as well. Such an event is worthy of attention. Mr. Sengoku, don't you want to watch? Kizaru, who is still drinking his tea, stood up while revealing a wretched smile then looked at Sengoku. The latter had a headache from this situation. It was really troublesome. What was those 5 old men thinking? It looked like a completely small matter but in fact it isn't. Even if the CP and Marine both belong to the world government, the two of them didn't have a good relationship. Just now Z was unhappy and one of the recruits was Roja, Garp's nephew. And if Roja received even a wound Garp will not sit still. Z is not impulsive but he couldn't say so about Garp. If Garp took actions then the result would be devastating and if he really want he will get out of the Marine. Thinking to hear Sengoku calmed himself down and took a deep breath then said, well let's go over and see. The headquarters 2nd floor, the training field. Is this the extent of your ability? Jabra was standing in the field while in his hand was an irregular shaped ball. While the talking to mock the ball. And after a close look that ball was very good's head. And on the ground the rest of his body has turned top balls and was rolling. So strong. Very good wasn't his match at all. The elite camp members are looking dumbfounded at this scene, and seeing the eyes of Jabra they felt deep fear. Very Good wasn't the strongest in the elite camp, but he still is strong. But in front of Jabra he was defeated effortlessly. There wasn't anyone in the elite camp crowd who could face against Jabra except for Smoker. Why are you here? Smoker got out of the crowd, and in his mouth were 2 cigars. Smoke filled the place while he said to Rob Lucci and the others. Jabra did not speak but looked at Smoker at first, then exposed an arrogant smile, said, "If you could defeat me I will tell you." Humph. Smoker's face sank. Without shooting or doing talking any nonsense. He directly attacked Jabra. Jabra threw the ball in his hand and attacked at the same time. Bang. The battle didn't take a single hit to defeat Smoker. Karba punched Smoker's body, but he didn't expect his punch to pass through, as that part of Smoker's body turned to smoke. This made Jabra freeze for a moment. Smoker used that opportunity to attack him and sent him flying. Bang. Logia Devil Fruit. After the short confrontation, Jabra knew he wasn't Smoker's opponent, so he didn't move forward to continue but still looked at Smoker angrily. Smoker didn't continue to chase, but with his 2 cigars in his mouth he said, "Why are you here? Do you really think I will tell you?" Jabra eyes revealed a cunning look while said with a tone of ridicule. Smoker frowned and looked coldly at Jabra. And at this time Rob Lucci come forward and stood in front of Smoker. The purpose is to test the elite recruit's strength. Lucci answered Smoker's question and then looked at Smoker calmly and said, "Are you the strongest recruit?" Wouch. Lucci and Smoker started fighting. Bang. 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 Even using his empty hands to fight against Smoker's weapon, Lucci not only didn't fall behind but he even had the advantage in speed and power as he suppressed Smoker. Speed is the strong point of the smoke fruit. If you take that away then Smoker will definitively lose. Lucci was skilled in the Rokushiki, which made everyone in the camp shocked. There are no one here who reached his level including Smoker. Are you the strongest here? Lucci resisted Smoker's attack and suddenly shot past Smoker's weapon. Although Smoker has his devil fruit but his speed couldn't compare with Lucci's. Smoker's body flew in the air while he spitted blood and fell on the ground. Smoker struggled to get up but he already lost the ability to continue the fight. As long as you aren't fool you could notice that Smoker didn't have any chance of winning. Even Smoker couldn't stand in front of him. This is really outrageous. What the hell is this guy? Everyone present on the elite camp couldn't help but reveal an expression of horror. Lucci is young, too young that no one in the elite camp was younger than him. But even so there is no one who could be his opponent, even Smoker can't. You depend too much on your fruit ability. Is that all you've got? Lucci didn't continue to chase after Smoker. But he looked indifferently while Smoker was struggling to get up. Is this the so-called strongest in the elite camp? It seemed that the recruits of the headquarters are really disappointing. Lucci's tone was indifferent. At the age of 13. A kingdom under the command of the world government was invaded and 500 soldiers were captured as hostages to threaten the king. So the world government sent him to deal with it. In his view it was the soldiers' fault for being too weak, and maybe later the same thing will happen again. So. Lucci came to a conclusion. Such a weak soldier had no right to survive. So he killed all 500 soldiers and then slaughtered the pirates. Being weak is their sin. The world government sent him to test the marine elite. He didn't expect them to be so weak. If not for the order he would have just killed them. In his view those people being in the marine is a crime in itself. Hateful. Don't get carried away. Lucci's show of strength didn't make them as angry as his words. It seemed that everyone of the elite camp was out of patience. Lucci coldly looked around and said, "I said you're weak. Are you feeling upset about it? Well, how about I give you a chance? You can attack together, how about it?" Arrogant. Some people were angry and couldn't contain themselves as they directly rushed at Lucci. But they couldn't stand for a second round as they were sent flying directly while blood spilled. Those elite recruits couldn't maintain their calm and rushed at Lucci, but they couldn't be his opponent. The gap between their strength was huge. Seeing Lucci deal with those members was like a pot of cold water that poured on the elite camp members as their heart turned cold. Too strong. Even Smoker was defeated, and even together they couldn't do a thing. They didn't have any chance of winning. Anyone want to continue? Seeing that no one dared to stand up, Lucci shook his head while he got rid of the blood on his fingers. The other, looking at his dissatisfied face, rushed to him and said, "Lucci, don't waste your breath on those guys. Those marine elites aren't worth the trip, it seems. Our task is complete." Jabra and the others looked with disdain and contempt at the elite camp members. They shook their head and turned away. Lucci glanced at the elite recruit to see if there is another one willing to fight, but shook his head and turned around as well. The elite camp member faces was blue as they were unwilling to let them go like that. After all the ridicule their heart was really unwilling. And at this time some of them thought about Roja. Although those 3 months Roja was practicing alone they almost didn't see him. But 3 months ago Roja defeated Lao Ji. Don't be so arrogant. If Roja was here you wouldn't have been so rampant. This sentence was heard by Lucci and the others, which made their footsteps paused and once again turned around. Who is Roja? The marine headquarters. The second floor of the fortress, in one of the small practice rooms which was filled with thick metal plates. Busashoku. Roja was holding his sword, quietly standing there. Suddenly his eyes flashed and black color suddenly emerged and wrapped around the sword's body. Hum. The sword suddenly turned into a dark color with metallic luster. Getsuga. Tenshō. Wouch. Red energy with a crescent shape suddenly flashed. The attack cut the thick steel plates and continued to leave a deep crack on the wall. Even Getsuga Tenshō will get stronger with hockey. I finally gasped the hardening. All my attacks are stronger than before. I don't know where I stand anymore. Still the rear admirals aren't my opponents. Looking back to his own power, Roja exposed a satisfied smile. He spent half a month to learn the Busashoku and the other time he was mastering it while learning hardening to perfection. Also he trained his physical body to the limit. Now his strength is nothing like 3 months ago. All he need now is to test his new strength. Roja thoroughly mastered the Busashoku haki and the Kenbunchaku haki. Before the hardening has a probability of failure which led to his strength being unstable. But now his power was stable. While he was training these two types of haki he felt that there is a hidden power in his body like a third type. He tried to control it but he failed. While remembering this third type couldn't help but feel doubt, what was that feeling? Isn't Haushiku haki? This third type is the one that cannot be acquired from training, it can only be born in you. But Roja still wasn't sure. Because when the Haushiku haki start to awaken, whether him or other people they won't be aware of it and he will be aware only after it fully awakens. And here Roja didn't have experience of it being awakened. Whether it's the Haushoku or not, I will know that when I am in a tight spot. Roja shook his head with the emergence of this thought and no longer thought about it. Even if he wasn't like normal people and could feel the Haushoku before it awakens he still won't be able to use it until it do. This 3-month Roja didn't just focus on haki, he trained the Tobu Zangiki too. Since the last battle against Loa-ji, he got an insight in the way of the sword. So he improved by leaps and bounds. Now Roja is able to compress the air 8 times. The more he advances in his practice the more difficult it will get. The compressing limit is 15 times and after that it is no longer sword practice, it's your own comprehension of the way of the sword. Roja returned his sword into its scabbard and in front of his eyes the property bar appeared. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 6. Attribute, Attack Power plus 230, Power plus 70, Agile plus 70. Special attribute, all things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack have additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 180/180ths. It's enough for one upgrade. Seeing that the energy is enough to upgrade his soul sword to plus 7. He directly chose to upgrade it without hesitation. A burst of light flashed from his body while the soul sword turned to plus 7. Which made the fourth stage seem a little bit closer now. Roja had learned everything for a while now but he continued to practice just to rise the energy needed for the upgrade. Roja is mostly concerned about the soul sword ability. Once he upgraded it to the 5th stage he could use the Shurikai which had the sun's surface temperature. And even a strong Busashoku haki won't be immune to that kind of heat. And this is only the Shurikai not to mention the Bankai. In Roja's view if he used the Bankai with the temperature of the sun's core the everything will evaporate in seconds. Even the Yonku won't stand a chance. Taking a deep breath Roja gradually calmed down. All those thousands thoughts erased while his eyes flashed as he turned to leave the small room. What's going on? Outside the room. The officials of the world government as well as Z, Sengoku, and the 3 admirals came here. Lucci and the others were ready to leave but when CP executive came they all stopped. Elite camp side, although there wasn't anyone dead but there are many injured people. Mostly by Lucci's hand as he didn't hold back and many were seriously injured. This made Z's face really ugly. The CP executive deliberately came in front of Z and asked Lucci. How were the marine recruits? Very weak. Although all of those big shots were standing there Lucci was still very calm as he responded. He was neither overbearing nor humble. If this is the level of the elite recruits of the marine then in the future you better remove them as they are too weak. Those words revealed just how much Lucci looked down on the marine and even after saying this he still remained calm. This made everyone in the elite camp including Smoker to have an ugly face. The hatred took over their hearts but they still couldn't do a thing to refute his words. In fact Lucci's words weren't completely wrong. The marine was really in decline as they had to use direct promotion of the marine admiral and other thing after the Marineford War but that's still in the future. Note, he's talking about the original story there. Lucci's sentence was like blade in the elite recruits' hearts that continued to stab. In the next moment a voice sounded. I can't let you do that. Who? This voice passed over and suddenly the elite camp members regained their hope while their eyes shone and made way for him. Oh. The officials as well as Lucci and the other looked at this scene then they turned around and looked at the crowd making way while a person come to the front. That figure that just appeared was Roja. Roja is here. Looking at Roja coming over all the elite camp members opened away while they showed excitement on their faces. Although there are some people that weren't sure that Roja could win against Lucci, most people had faith in him after the last battle with Lao Ji. All of them felt this kind of feeling if Roja was to face an enemy then he won't lose. Finally came. Smoker clenched his fist while looking at Roja and reminded his kindly, be careful, that guy is very strong. Smoker understand Roja's strength clearly. If 3 months ago Roja fought with him then the fight will drag on as smoke and fire can't hurt each other. And 3 months later, although he doesn't know to what extent Roja power had increased, but his instinct told him that Roja was completely different now. They opened the way for Roja. If Roja can't win not only the elite recruits even in the marine even their teacher will lose a big deal of face. I know. Roja nodded to Smoker's reminder. When he first came he recognized Lucci's face. Although he looked a lot younger than in the story but he still could recognize him. Lucci was strong. He was known as the strongest member ever appeared in the CP9. But still Roja didn't think that even Smoker couldn't win against him. Roja didn't know the result of the fight but looking at the elite camp members. Many of them were wounded and even Smoker had obvious scars, coupled with their expression he could somewhat guess what happened. If he didn't know it wouldn't matter. But since he knows, he couldn't ignore it. Everyone's attention fell on Roja since the time the crowd opened a way for him. Garp, Z, Kizaru, Akiji and many other were looking at him. Smelly brat, you finally appeared. Garp grinned as he looked at Roja. At the side Z eyes flashed with light for a bit. And Akiji who found Roja interesting was the same. Only Sengoku and Kizaru didn't reveal any special expression as they only heard about Roja and didn't see his talent for themselves. But still Roja was Garp's nephew that's another reason for them to come here. Just now it seemed that the elite camp member found hope when Roja appeared. Garp's nephew won't be a monster too right? Kizaru said lightly that no one could hear it except for himself. Of course he himself didn't believe. For Roja who only joined the elite camp for 5 months or so to become the strongest. Sengoku heard about Roja's talent but he couldn't find an opportunity to go as he can't find time for recruits even if that recruit was Garp's nephew. So he couldn't help but reveal a curious look. Is there a stronger recruit in the headquarters? The official revealed different expressions as they looked at Roja. Roja gave those recruits hope so he seemed a little bit strong. But the officials still didn't think that Roja could win against Lucci. Are you the strongest here? Lucci looked at the elite camp people then looked at Roja. He stared at him in the eyes. Before Lucci heard those recruits say something about Roja but as he asked about it he found out that Roja had joined the camp only for 5 months. So he didn't pay much attention to that. But now it seemed it isn't as simple as he thought. Yes. Roja step by step come to the center of the field as he responded. He looked at Lucci faintly then said Rob Lucci, right? How do you know my name? Lucci frowned as he didn't expect Roja to call his full name. I just know. Roja smiled at him while looking deeply into his eyes and said, I am sorry. I am also an elite camp recruit. So I can't ignore what you just said. Humph. Lucci heard this and grunted. He looked at Roja and said. If you want me to take back my word then use your strength to do so. That's what I will do. Roja was in no fighting posture. He was standing lazily while looking at Lucci and shrugged. But as he put his hand gently on the sword his whole person changed. That lazy atmosphere disappeared. It was replaced with a sharp aura which was really awe-inspiring. Feeling this aura coming out of Roja's body, Lucci's expression also changed as he stared at Roja. The next moment Roja pulled his sword gently. Wouch! He waved the sword single-handedly. A silver energy projected toward Lucci. Renkyaku. In the face of Roja's energy attack, Lucci jumped forward then suddenly kicked out which made an energy attack to come out of his foot. This is one of the Marine's 6 powers Renkyaku, the kick will have the same effect as Tobu Zangiki with the sword. Bang! The energy attacks collided mid-air and the two busted and then disappeared. Soru. Lucci's eyes turned cold as he suddenly blurred and appeared at the back of Roja. He stretched out a finger toward his pack and popped fiercely. Shurgan. Lucci was proficient in the Marine's 6 powers as the power of his Shurgan can match a real gunshot. So if he really did poke Roja there would be a bloody hole. However, the moment that his finger was about to touch Roja's back, the Roja's figure turned into a blur then directly disappeared into thin air. Oh. Lucci's face changed as he suddenly without hesitation used Tekai. Even if he used Tekai at the last moment and tried to avoid the attack, he couldn't avoid it completely as his clothes were torn and a trace of blood flowing out. Kacha. Lucci suddenly fell on one knee as a deep cut appeared on his abdomen. Sure enough, even with Tekai I still couldn't nullify his attack. Lucci looked at Roja differently as he was still on the ground. Roja was still holding his sword. Naturally not anyone can block his attacks anymore. Renkyaku, Soru, Tekai, Shurgan, it seemed that you are proficient in all the 6 powers. Roja stood in front of Lucci while holding his sword. He didn't care about his attitude as he looked at Lucci with contempt. Lucci used this exact same attitude when he looked at the elite camp members. So now Roja completely reversed the situation. You are very strong. But if you want me to take back my word you will need more than that. Lucci looked calmly at Roja after saying that. Then suddenly his whole person blurred and once again he rushed to Roja. He launched a storm-like attack at him. On the basis of physical strength Lucci was stronger than Roja. Even his Soru is faster than Roja's. But now even if Lucci was faster not a single hit could hit Roja. But for several times in a row, Roja's sword strike hit Lucci and he couldn't dodge even once. Roja Tobu Zangiki attack hit him on the shoulder which left deep blood marks. Whiz. 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 Some people of the elite recruit couldn't even see Roja and Lucci's fight as they could only see Lucci's shadow constantly flashing. He surrounded Roja which made Roja look like has been suppressed. When blood spilled out, everybody thought that it was Roja's blood. Until Lucci retreated to a distance to stop the attack, which made the elite camp's member find out that it wasn't Roja's blood but Lucci's. Roja didn't have even a wound while he stood with his sword in hand. Between the two, the winner was evident already. Now, do you still think that I can't win? Roja didn't continue. He stood quietly with his mouth slightly exposing a look of mockery. Even if your speed is fast, so what? The elite recruit didn't see a thing but Sengoku, Garp and the others saw it clearly. Kenbunchaku Haki. Under the Kenbunchaku Haki, Lucci's every action was known to Roja. If that's the case how can he compete with him? Lucci was proficient in the Marine 6 powers. He can use Tekai which was somewhat similar to Haki but if we were to compare the two Tekai isn't enough to stop Haki. It turned out that he can already use Kenbushoku Haki. How terrifying, so he's able to use the two types now. Kizaru looked at the scene that he showed an expression of exaggerated horror. He learned Haki before the graduation. And it's not just the Kenbunchaku. When Roja swung his sword, there was clearly Busashoku Haki mixed in. Even if he didn't use hardening on purpose, but Kizaru and the other were the strongest, so they noticed this in the first glance. Garp's nephew is so good. Even Sengoku was showing how shocked he was. Roja went easy on his opponent. This has to be as the look on his face says it clearly, I didn't use my full strength yet. With his strength now Roja wasn't weaker than any Commodore but if he used his full strength would that make him as strong as a Rear Admiral? This idea made Sengoku's mind and heart shake. He didn't graduate but had the strength of Rear Admiral. It seemed only the current 3 admirals could do this. In other words Roja has the potential to become an admiral. Thinking to hear Sengoku looked at Roja's eyes. He became excited. The only good recruits that appeared in the recent years are the 3 admirals. But if they don't find good recruits in the next 10 years, then the Marine combat capability will drop. If that was to happen then the Marine won't have a choice. They would have to promote some strong people in order to supplement their powers. In this kind of situation, Roja's appearance in the elite recruits with an admiral potential made Sengoku heart excited. The world government officials looked at this scene while surprise is apparent on their faces. Apparently they didn't expect Roja to be able to suppress Lucci. Not only that, but it seemed Roja is going easy on Lucci. When did the Marine headquarters have such a strong recruit? If not for Roja's young look, the official would think that Roja was an officer from the Marine in disguise. Lucci, go all out. The CP executive looked at this scene, his face sank as he said to Lucci in a low tone. Lucci looked at his shoulder wound and then again at Roja. His eyes were exposing a sharp glint. Suddenly his whole body changed. He used his devil fruit. Zoan fruit, leopard. You finally used your fruit. Roja looked at Lucci without any surprise, but in his face there seemed to be some expectations. Now it seemed that he already ate the fruit. He even have a devil fruit. Akiji and the other, when looking at this scene, they frowned. Originally Roja suppressed Lucci. But Lucci used his devil fruit ability, which was the leopard Zoan fruit. This fruit will give him a huge increase in flexibility and strength. On the other side, the CP executive looked at Z, then said with a smile, didn't I mention that Lucci have a devil fruit? Whiz. Lucci transformed into his semi-human form, which made his strength and speed increase. Although it's not as much as Drake, but still it increased his power by a lot. Whiz. 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 Two figure engaged in the fight again. This time Roja didn't hold the advantage as Lucci could dodge Roja's counterattacks. While Lucci is in this form, Roja seemed to be suppressed. Since you're worth fighting. Watching that Lucci has become more and more aggressive. Roja held his sword while slightly shaking his head. Then his eyes flashed with light. Boom. The next moment a flames emerged from the sword and wrapped around it. Then it directly swept in all direction around Roja with a radius of more than 10 meters. Sword flow, torch. The flame came too fast that Lucci didn't have any time to react. He was enveloped in flames. Whiz. The next moment Lucci came out with burned clothes and started rolling on the ground. With that, most of the flames were extinguished. After that he stood up. His body had a trace of burns. You still could use fire ability? Lucci looked at the field that was wrapped by flames and Roja in the middle looked like a flame general. Lucci was extremely shocked. At the same time the officials were also surprised. The flames devil fruit. No, no. This isn't a devil fruit ability. The flames came out of the sword. Is this a flame sword? That's impossible. What a terrifying flames. Looking at the field, the officials couldn't help but reveal their shock. In fact, from beginning to now, some suspected that Roja flames originated from his sword, but can the flame sword burst out with such a terrifying flame? It's almost as if he is using a devil fruit. This is really frightening. Kizaru also looked with surprise at the field of flames. Although his tone still had that exaggeration, but he still didn't hide the shock in his heart. If Roja was using a devil fruit he won't be shocked, but Kizaru knew, as he clearly saw, that it's not a devil fruit ability. He didn't know from where this power originated. He was a great admiral, but he still didn't find out. This really shocked him. Sengoku and Akiji expression changed almost at the same time as Kizaru. They looked at the field in surprise. The flames waves gradually began to extinguish as Roja didn't want everything to burn. Standing in the middle, Roja didn't care about Sengoku as well as Akiji, Kizaru, and the other surprised expressions. Roja's mind was clear. Although his ability was mistaken as the power produced by his sword play, but with the flames becoming more and more strong, and when he used the Shikai, then this thought will sooner or later be thrown. But so what? With his identity as Garp's nephew, why would he explain from where he got his powers? If he told them he was reborn from another world, they would just take him to the lab, slice him, then study him. But when he evolved the sword to the 5th stage, he could use the Shikai. And he won't be afraid of anyone. In this world, he only need others to know that he is strong and let them fear him. There is no need for them to know why he's strong. Sword flow, cremate. Roja was holding his sword while the flames started to extinguish. When they went out completely, Roja swung his sword. A flame projectile formed and flew through the air. Boom. A terrifying red flame broke out, countless eyes couldn't contain their shock as a monstrous fire formed. Lucci looked at this scene in shock as he tried to dodge the flame by moving to the side. But in the next moment, another attack came from the side. Boom. Boom. Roja continued to swing and the flames continued to shoot out. The flames swept the field from all directions. The place where they were battling was covered in flames. The temperature continued to rise with every release. The entire second floor turned into hell. Lucci was fast and the flames couldn't hit him. But just the temperature and the waves of flames suppressed him completely. The situation turned completely one-sided. The temperature continued to rise. But Akiji, Kizaru, and others weren't affected by it. On the other hand, the elite camp members as well as the CP members started to sweat like there is no tomorrow while their eyes held their shock. The CP members, Jabra and the others, looked at this scene and couldn't believe their eyes. The Marine recruit had someone strong to this extent. Lucci was completely suppressed. He had no chance of winning, which was incredible. Was Roja really just a recruit? Enough. The world government officials looking at the fire in the field, their faces become uglier as the time went by. And one of them couldn't help but open his mouth. Does that mean I won? Roja didn't continue after the other saying this. He put his sword back into his scabbard. At the same time the flames which had enveloped the entire field slowly faded down. Rojas didn't wait for the answer. Of course he wouldn't lose to Lucci. And as he knew the purpose of this fight he wouldn't continue needlessly. Lucci retreated without speaking a word. He looked at Roja, who seemed to be like a flame general with his eyes full of fear. The Marine recruits had such a strong guy. The elite recruits were eager to see Roja win against Lucci. They wanted to hold their head high and be proud. But when Roja really won and regained the face that they lost, it felt unreal. Sure enough. No one can defeat Roja. Roja's strength grew once again. He is in completely different level from before. Many people in the elite camp saw Roja's back and couldn't help but mutter. While Drake and the others who came with Roja from the ordinary camp looked at Roja with a complex expression. Especially Drake, who sighed in his heart. The gap was really widening more and more. At first he could see Roja's back. But now Roja went further and further ahead to the point he couldn't see it anymore. The CP executive had an ugly expression the entire time. The CP was just an intelligence agency after all. Their overall strength can't be compared to the Marine. And after so many years they finally found a genius just when the 5 big shots, Garusei, of the world government issued this challenge. He thought this time he could gain face in front of the Marine. Who would think that an even more powerful genius appeared? And he even learned hockey. Also he had that strange ability to control flames. Are you really a Marine recruit? The CP executive looked at Roja and couldn't help but ask. Although he knew that Roja was young and most likely he isn't fake. But he was still reluctant to believe. Roja looked at him and at the same time looked at Akiji, and the other then said. I am. But soon I won't be a recruit anymore. What do you mean? Hearing Roja's words, the CP executive frowned as he was puzzled. Roja didn't answer but turned around to Z and said, Teacher Z, thank you for teaching all this time. This sentence made Z feel a little strange at first, then he suddenly thought of its meaning. His eyes flashed a few times. Could it be that? Sure enough, in the next moment Roja said calmly with a serious tone. I am now applying for the graduation exam. This sentence made most people surprised for a moment. If they remember correctly, Roja joined the elite camp for less than 5 months. In the elite camp you could stay for 3 years and learn everything from Z. While also you could use the Marine various training equipment and other resources. They also could get that delicious meat, and they won't have any life-threatening experience as Z will protect them in the missions. Before, the elite camp members would only apply for graduation in their 3rd year. But Roja didn't complete even half a year and he wanted to apply for the exam. But with a closer look, Roja applying for graduation isn't a problem. As Roja's was powerful enough to apply for it. And he can only grow stronger in face of the life and death situations. He will never become strong if he always was under Z's shelter. Z was clear about this, so he wouldn't stop it. I already decided. Roja nodded earnestly. He had learned almost everything he needs. And for him there won't be any point if he stayed in the camp. He wanted to conquer the sea and stand at the highest point of it. From when he came to this world, that was always his dream. Z looked at Roja. He saw determination on Roja's eyes, his heart was pleased, but he also felt some loss. He finally nodded and said. I approve of it. The CP executive looking at this scene in AZ. He grunted, then turned away to leave while saying, let's go. The other officials already left as they were unable to stay after they lost their faces. Garp didn't care about their departure. His eyes were fixed on Roja. He couldn't use words to describe the complex emotions his was feeling. Garp always wanted his son, Monkey.D. Dragon, to be a good Marine. But as a result, Dragon ran to the Revolutionary Army. He became the world's most wanted criminal. Although on the other hand, Dragon was strong, so Garp was proud of him even if he didn't follow the direction that Garp wanted him to follow. And now Roja made him very satisfied and proud. These guys. Sengoku looked at the world government crowd. He didn't call them back. He only shook his head, then looked at Z and said, for the exam, tomorrow come over and apply for it formally. Because the graduation of anyone from the elite camp will be someone with a high rank, the graduation exam has to go through Sengoku himself. That would be good. Z nodded his head. Roja already reached the graduation criteria, but although his strength isn't a problem, the rank he will get after the exam is the final result. So whether he become a commander, a captain, or a commodore all depend on him. The exam had 3 stages. You won't graduate unless you complete all of the 3. The first stage is a simple physical test. Like a strength measurement, speed, attack power, and so on. The second stage is very different, as he need to set out with the Marine and catch or kill a pirate that has at least 100 million berry. And the performance while doing the arrest is to be assessed. If his performance is poor, he won't pass. Also this time Z won't be saving the one who take the exam, as he need to depend on himself. And if he become a little bit careless, he might die there. Finally it's the third stage, which is A, to fight against 10 prisoners, monsters, or even some strong Marines. If he won, then he will pass. Although Roja joined the elite camp for 5 months or so, he still understood structure of the exam. In Roja's view, the first stage was set so the recruit won't apply for graduation easily. The second test was considered the real graduation exam. If you can pass the physical test, then you can participate in the real exam. The third stage is the same as the second. After the physical test, those 2 tests will focus on combat ability and training results. It seems soon we will get another good fellow Marine. Akiju looked at Roja, then continued, the third stage of the exam I will be there to watch. The elite recruits graduation exam's third stage is exiting for many people of the elite camp. As their performance will be seen by Akiji, Akainu, Kizaru and others high-ranked Marines. But they were rarely interested in this. The current 3 admirals have set a record in their graduation exam. But Roja's talent is extraordinary. He got outstanding powers. It doesn't seem any less to them when they were his age. What's more, this guy is Garp's nephew. So Akiji was very interested in to watch the third stage of the exam. I wonder what will Mr. Garp's nephew do in the third stage. Akiji's heart flashed with an idea as he glanced at Roja, then turned around to leave. Didn't expect Teacher Z to have taught such a good student. It seemed that teacher isn't old or anything. Kizaru at the same time looked around and continued, even if I was busy when he will have his third stage of the exam, I will still come and see. Kizaru and Akiji left the field. Well, if I had time I will also come and watch. Sengoku looked at Z and Garp with a smile, then turned away. In the blink of an eye the world government official and the high-ranked marines all have gone. Only Z and Garp are still with the other elite camp members. Z looked at Roja and said, "Tomorrow submit your graduation exam application. The day after that we will hold you first stage of the exam so you can prepare." Z said this while knowing that Roja didn't have anything to prepare. He meant for him to go and get some rest. And so Roja left with Garp. Seeing them leave among the elite camp crowd, someone spoke. "Teacher Z, I'd like to apply for graduation." "Me too." The first to say this was impressively Smoker. After that many followed as they already were preparing to apply for the exam, but they didn't expect that Roja would take the chance to be the first to apply. Z didn't find this situation surprising. Although the elite camp members can apply for graduation at any time, but usually there is someone leading to it. And after that person lead, all the other will follow him to do their graduation. And this time that person was Roja. Smoker. Z will apply for graduation for those he called by name. After a bit he said, "Is there anyone else?" No one talked. Seeing this, Z nodded his head and turned away. On his room, the sun was shining in the middle of the blue sky. Roja sat directly on the ground beside the balcony in the second floor. Roja was holding Hano no Suki with one hand and the other hand was wiping it gently. He rarely wiped his sword. Because under his flames the sword won't have any blood sticking to it. Roja looked at his hand and suddenly murmured. With the soul sword getting stronger, even an Owazamono sword won't be able to withstand the flames. If you look carefully at the sword you will notice a slight deformation. It's no longer the same sword he used to have. Because it's just deformed a little bit. If you don't look for it deliberately then you won't be able to see it. The soul sword will let the flames and other attacks like Getsuga Tenshō flow out from his Hano no Suki. So Hano no Suki materials are unable to bear the strength of those attacks. Although I am still able to use it, but when the soul sword upgrade to the 4th stage Getsuga Tenshō will get stronger, and when it reach the 5th I will be able to use Ryūjin Jakka. And that would make Hano no Suki unable to withstand that kind of power. Roja gently put down his sword. Ordinary swordsmen will use their sword thousand of time and the sword will still be usable. But the ability of the soul sword is to make that sword hold the power of a Shinigami's sword, which is completely different from the swords in this world. If I could have such a sword, he said. Such a thought emerged in his mind, and after saying he couldn't help but laugh and throw such ideas in the back of his head as he stood up. If an Owazamono sword won't be able to withstand his soul sword's power, then probably a Seijo Owazamono will withstand it. But that's not for now, as he still could use his Hano no Suki. Wouch! Roja held his sword then jumped down from the second floor. At the same time he used Tobu Zangiki with full power directed at the courtyard. Boom! On the courtyard, a deep crack appeared all over it. Roja put back his sword into its scabbard while ignoring the damage he caused on the courtyard. He directly went into his room without having to think about tomorrow's test. Because if he can't pass, no one else in the elite camp will be able to. In the marine headquarters. In a small square where variety of equipment were placed. Beside them stood 10 marine soldier. In addition to the marine soldier there was 3 high-ranked marine too. An advisor and 2 consultants. The advisor will provide information for Sengoku and the admirals. But even if they were under Sengoku and the admirals, they didn't have a very high position, because if you don't have the strength you won't gain respect. The square was divided into several areas. The marine headquarters as well as 2 consultants are standing in one region where the elite camp's recruits are gathered for the stage 1 test, physical test. In addition to Roja, other elite members applied for graduation. This made Roja surprised in his heart, but soon he thought about it. Smoker and the others spent more than 2 years. So it's normal for them to apply for graduation. In front of Roja and the others there was a strange machine. Bang! One of the elite member went in front of that machine and punched. The machine flashed with a light, then a number suddenly appeared. Qualified. The advisor nodded his head and recorded the number. After that he looked at the rest of the others and said. Next. Another recruit of the elite camp went forward and repeated the same action as the previous recruit. This machine is obviously used for the physical test. Vegapunk is really worthy to be called the leading figure in the science and technology. He casually invented a thing which was so easy to use and can really save a lot of effort. One of the 2 consultant, Yamakaji, said while having a cigar dangling from his mouth. On the one on the other side of the advisor also smiled and said, yes, but unfortunately, this thing has a limit. If you exceed that limit it won't be able to measure your power. It is still very good to accurately test the power of those junior in the strength test. Yamakaji heard this and smiled. From the elite camp one by one continued to test their strength. Finally it was the time for the last 2, Roja and Smoker. Smoker was first to take the test. As a result the consultants exposed an amazed look while looking at Smoker in the eyes. He's worthy to be someone that studied under Z. Even while being a recruit he has the strength of a captain. After the consultant murmured. He directly turned to Roja and said. Next one, Roja. Now finally it's Roja's strength test. Most of the recruits were looking forward to this. They wanted to know Roja's strength. Roja went before the strange machine. At first Roja thought that this machine will measure power. But later he found out that it's measuring the strength but only comparing with previously measured data and do an overall combat effectiveness. So it's not as simple as attack power, but it's the overall strength of a person. For example, the marine gun, if we were to use it on the machine it will score 10. And if the value is more than 500 it belonged to non-human strength. Roja is not that clear about his overall strength. In fact he only didn't know what value he will get. He could do a 10,000 push-ups without feeling a little bit tired. His physical strength is already out of the ordinary by many times. What is the maximum limit that this machine can measure? Roja went in front of the machine and asked the consultant while his eyes were showing how excited he was. You can use it just fine, don't worry. Because Roja was the last one to take the test, the advisor seemed to be considering the next text. So when he heard Roja he was a little impatient as he said that. In fact, the advisor and the consultants didn't know the limit of this machine. They only knew that it can measure a captain's strength. So they weren't sure of the limit. Smoker has just measured and got very close to the captain's strength. So the advisor and the other two were still in shock. Despite knowing that he is from the elite camp, but reaching the captain's strength level while still a recruit is really incredible. As for the limit of the machine, they didn't consider that someone could reach it while still a recruit. Okay. Seeing the impatient attitude of the advisor, Roja was lazy to speak back. So he shrugged calmly and stood in front of the machine. Fist. Busashoku hardening. Punch. Boom. Suddenly there was a bombing sound. The advisor watching the machine was surprised by Roja's punch. Roja used his full power for that punch. You could even hear sonic booms from the speed. This made the machine directly explode into pieces. The smell of cola drifted all over the place. Puff. The high-ranked Marines had their mouth open from shock. Especially Yamakaji, who threw his cigar out of his mouth. Beside him the other's consultant, watching this scene, made their mouth hit the ground from shock. Smoker and the others had their mouths twitching. Tut. Roja didn't think that this machine won't work. He thought that it could take and measure his strength, so he threw a serious punch. As a result, the machine broke down. They shouldn't blame me, right? Roja shook his head. He scratched his head, then looked at the consultants and asked, what does this count as? Advisor. Yamakaji. Smoker and the others. The previous assessment is for explosive power and the next one is continuous attack. In another area in the square, Yamakaji was standing before a black stone while looking at Roja and the others. This time Yamakaji didn't let the consultants take over, but he did it personally. And after the explosion there was only one consultant left. As for the other one, he won't be coming back probably. This stone, thought it's not Karasaki, but it's still a very hard stone. You need to be able to completely destroy it under 1 minute or you will be disqualified. This assessment allowed the use of weapon. Speaking to here, Yamakaji couldn't help but twist his mouth when he looked at Roja. He couldn't think of a way that a recruit could use Busashoku hardening even if he's someone from the elite camp. That's too exaggerated. Teacher Z really taught some unreasonable students. Then now we shall begin the second physical test. The first one. Under Yamakaji's eyes the elite camp members started to come forward one after the other. Psy black stone Althot, it's not the material to build the fortress, it's still a very hard type of stone and each stone was 1 meter square. So a big and hard stone need to be destroyed. Although by completely destroy it they didn't mean turn it to powder. But it has to turn into gravel. Even so the difficulty was still high. Boom. 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 One after the other come forward to destroy a stone. They all used their respective weapon. Even if the previous test they used their fists, but in this test everyone picked a weapon as they didn't know how to use hockey like Roja. They couldn't just use their fist on a stone as hard as steel. Sound of roar bursted as soon as the recruits started attacking the stones. Here in the Marine headquarters every elite recruit is a monster. Although there was a huge gap between them and Roja, but if they were compared to the ordinary camp then you will see how strong they were. It almost took everyone 30 seconds to completely destroy the stone. Which made everyone qualified. Roja, it's your turn. Yamakaji had some understanding of Roja. After recording the others' results he looked at Roja and said that. Okay. Roja came forward. His eye was an indifferent look while he pulled his sword. Wouch. 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 Smoker and the others could only see red rays of light. They didn't know how many times those rays flashed. In a blink of an eye, Roja put back his sword into the scabbard. Let's start the next test. After returning his sword, Roja directly headed to the third test site. Yamakaji looked at the stone which didn't seem to have changed. He nodded his head then turned to Smoker and the others and said, come on, let's go. In the next instant, the consultant looked confused to what just happened and couldn't help to reach the stone with his hands gently. Crash. The stone that was 1 meter square directly scattered into countless neat little stone. Each piece at the standard level for the test. One of the recruit looking at this could help but say, I think we should wait more to apply for graduation. Next to him another person said, yes, this is really too. They had to attack this kind of stone desperately so many times to smash it and after that they had to turn every part that didn't meet the standard onto gravel like little stones. But Roja just waved his hand and the stone was completely broken to pieces. Although they didn't really mind Roja's strength, but the gap is still too huge for some people that made them doubt life. The physical test was divided into 8 parts. Including the strength, speed, explosive power, sustained attack, endurance and so on. The endurance test was time-consuming. It took them a full day to complete all parts of the physical test while there were only 9 people including Roja. And they all were qualified, with 4 of them having good results. 3 outstanding performances. As for Roja's result, they couldn't evaluate as there wasn't any case like his before. This type of results appeared before like that of Akiji, Kizaru and Akainu and they could evaluate it. As the score was above the limit of the assessment then the result won't be excellent anymore. It would be evaluated as perfect. Perfect evaluation, really didn't expect another one to appear. Yamakaji seeing the results couldn't help but reveal how touched he was. To have this kind of talent is really incredible. But in the next stage can he get another perfect evaluation? Yamakaji's eyes flashed when he thought about this then he shook his head. That's too difficult. The first stage of the assessment had a perfect evaluation so does the second and third stage. The second stage is to depart with a marine army and pursue a pirate with 100 million berry as a bounty. And have to get the entire crew of that pirate so he can get a perfect evaluation. Only 3 people got this perfect evaluation in the second stage and those are Akiji, Kizaru and Akainu. The 3 turned to be marine admirals. Yamakaji smiled a bit and shook his head. Smoker and the others dispersed each to their own room at the end of the first stage. They all were going to prepare for the second stage. The Marine Headquarters Intelligence Department is very busy today. On the New World, there is a lot of pirates with a reward of 100 million and above. But on the other half of the Grand Line, there aren't that many pirates with that kind of bounty and they generally called a supernova. But the New World isn't an easy place to reach for a recruit. There you can find the Yonko and many strong pirates. There would not be any weak pirate. Even if you find one that would belong to a greater power. So the marine actions in the New World are limited. A person with 100 million as a bounty can't be casually caught. So the members of the intelligence department need to verify from various sources that the pirates that the recruit will catch aren't in some kind of a powerful group of pirates. So they will not face a hopeless situation and can complete their exam, or all the blame will be put on them. This is the pirates in the first half of the Grand Line with a bounty of 100 million berry and above. And this is the list of pirates in the New World. The degree of danger is almost the same. Looking at the pile of information in front of him, Yamakaji pondered with a cigar in his mouth. If someone can have a reward of 100 million berry and above in the first half of the Grand Line, then they probably are very strong. Their strength is extremely outstanding, so they are called a supernova. In the New World, hockey becomes something that most pirates could use. Because entering the New World without hockey is suicidal. And once one uses hockey, then his strength will increase by a huge margin. To catch supernova is difficult. And sometimes even a rear admiral will be killed. If he was lucky, then he will be able to escape. And the pirates in the New World are extremely dangerous. Currently there is 4 pirate that meet the condition. In the first half of the Grand Line, there are 4 pirate groups. And in the second there is 10. Half a day later, Yamakaji already chose a target for Smoker and the others. The only one remaining was Roja. There are only 2 pirate groups in the first half of the Grand Line, but the captain of both have a reward of 200 million berry. And in the New World, there is 4 remaining, but the captain of each group have a bounty of 200 million berry too. Roja is the strongest from all the recruits. So Yamakaji will pick the easy and weaker pirates for the others. And then he will find a target for Roja, but Yamakaji found that the remaining 6 are much stronger than the previous 8. They are completely from different levels. Standing next to Yamakaji was an advisor. His eyes flashed as he sneered and said, "Let's put this pirate group with a bounty of 196 million berry as a target for him." This advisor is the one that got hurt in the first test after Roja punched the machine. This was entirely his fault. Because of that, a month of his salary was deducted. So he was depressed and transferred this grievance to Roja and tried to give him trouble. But when he investigated, he found out that Roja was Garp's nephew. Garp was untouchable. Although he couldn't do anything to Roja directly, he can play a little trick so that the other weak pirates won't be shown to Yamakaji. So originally there would be 15 pirate groups with 9 not that hard. But he pulled out one of the easier to catch pirates, so there would only be 14 pirate with 8 easy and the other extremely hard to catch. And finally, he made sure that one of the hardest would be assigned as Roja's target. Although Roja is strong and won't die in the exam and he won't fail either. But he can't get an excellent or good evaluation. So Roja may be pulled down in rank after this. 196 million berry. This is not that much different from a 200 million one. Yamakaji stayed silent for a bit, then shook his head and said, "Well, let's visit Roja and see how he decided." If he didn't want to take the second stage of the exam, then waiting for another few months isn't a problem. Although Roja has shown such a great power in the test before, the difficulty of the second stage was too high even so if Roja can't complete it, but his life won't be put in danger. But this wasn't fair to Roja. Yamakaji already knew that Roja was Garp's nephew. He wasn't the same as Consultant Carl. He was under Garp's command before. He fought with Garp and he still highly respects him. So naturally, he won't deliberately do something harmful to Roja. Alright. Seeing Yamakaji wanted to let Roja make the choice, Carl expression suddenly stiffened. Finally, he could only helplessly nod. He couldn't do a thing if Yamakaji decided on it. And if Roja was to wait for a month, he would find a suitable target. This kind of secretly hiding a document can't be done every time. And he wouldn't dare to do that. Yamakaji already sent someone to bring Roja to his office. After some time Roja arrived. "Roja, you can come in." Yamakaji saw that Roja came, so he directed a friendly smile at him. Because now he knew that Roja was Garp's nephew, his attitude became a lot better. Yamakaji had a good character generally. And Roja had a good impression on him yesterday. So he smiled back and said, "Is there any problems?" Yamakaji looked at Roja straightforwardly while helplessly shaking his head and said, "Indeed, there is a problem with the second stage of the exam." Yamakaji explained everything, then waited for Roja to make his choice. If he accepts to take the test now, then the difficulty would be really high. Although Roja possesses superior strength, so he could complete the task. But the final evaluation would be qualified or good. Getting excellent would be difficult, let alone perfect. If you wait for a month or two, then the difficulty will change to a simple and easy target. And with your strength, your chances to get excellent evaluation will be very high. A month or two. So. Roja listened to the words of Yamakaji, then looked at the table with 6 bounties placed on it and quickly picked one, then said, "A month or two is too troublesome, this will be good enough." Puff. Roja's character was like Garp's. They both found waiting a month or two to be troublesome. But seeing him pick so quickly made him nearly choke. What did he pick again? Silver Sword Pirates. The captain reward is 220 million berry. Although the bounty represents the harm that person would do to the world government. Rather than the strength, but a bounty of 200 million had the same range of strength. The difficulty is similar. But this group is different. It's a brutal group. Far more brutal than the other 5. They just burn and loot. They even destroyed an entire island after looting everything from it. "Roja, do you really want to choose this?" "Well, this is the most pleasing to the eye." Roja smiled while saying that. He really didn't know what is the Silver Sword Pirate group origin was. But he just picked that group because the captain was not as ugly as the others. Anyway, they were all in the 200 million, so there isn't much difference. But I think that we should respect his choice. There's still things that Yamakaji wanted to say. But when Carl said that seriously, Yamakaji looked at him, then at Roja, then shook his head helplessly. Well, since this is your choice, you have to be careful. Although you're strong, a reward of 200 million berry in the New World isn't simple. And this Silver Sword pirate is extremely cruel. They once slaughtered an entire island. Thanks for the reminder. After saying that, Roja turned around and left Yamakaji's office. Watching Roja leave, Yamakaji shook his head and said, really, he is as impulsive as Mr. Garp. Next to him was Consultant Carl, who had a witty expression on his face. But in his heart, he was laughing out loud. Originally he thought that his plan failed. He didn't expect that Roja would ignore the difficulty of the exam and chose to take it now instead of delaying it. Not only did he not delay the exam, he even picked one of the most brutal pirates group. Roja could punch the testing machine and destroy it. So a strength of someone with 200 million berry won't be dangerous for him. But not now. The Silver Pirate Group isn't a normal pirate group that will run from the marine. They would engage in battle while slaughtering, and if they were in disadvantage they will run. Roja was careless. He may lose his life in this kind of mission, and although he just wanted to create some trouble for Roja, Carl loved to see that happen. The mission of capturing the Silver Sword Pirates was given to the G4 division. This was Roja's mission, so he was sent there. Well, someone from the elite camp is here to take the exam. His mission is to capture the Silver Sword Pirates with us. But their reward is 200 million berry. He looked at Roja with amazement. He was a student of Garp too. And knew everything about the exam. He received a notice from the headquarters about Roja's arrival and was surprised. So, when will we depart? Roja looked gentle and calm. His face didn't give the marine soldier or their captain any pressure. Now. The Commodore looked deeply at Roja and said, the Silver Sword Pirates just robbed a merchant ship. Also, all the people on the ship were killed. Just now I was about to send a warship to destroy them. Understood. Roja nodded, then turned and walked toward the door. The Commodore looked at Roja's back while slightly shaking his head. This guy. Does he think that a 100 million and 200 million bounty is the same? I don't know what the people in the headquarters are thinking by sending him. When he thought to hear, the Commodore had an idea. And his eyes flashed with light. Monkey.d. Roja. Monkey.d. This guy in Garp. If that's true, then it's not necessarily wrong to send him here. The Commodore wanted to call the headquarters and inquire about Roja. But he suddenly, when he picked up the Den Mushi, he put it back with a thoughtful expression. The base of the Marine G4 division. A large warship was prepared to set sail. Numerous marine had solemn expressions. They had their weapon and their killing intent was up to the sky. When the captain reward is in the 200 and up, there would be at least 3 captains, and in certain conditions, even a Commodore will be dispatched. In the G4 division, there is only 2 Commodore. One is in charge of the base and the other will go with the warship when the time requires it. The Commodore in charge won't leave the base, and now the other Commodore was on a mission. They didn't have other option but to increase the number of captains. So they sent 5 captains. Originally they wanted to dispatch more captains, but with the arrival of Roja, they had to remove some. In the warship, the 5 captains were handling every matter concerning the upcoming journey. After finishing, they suddenly received instructions that a special marine will go on this mission with them. After a moment, Roja could be seen from a distance. The few captains were stunned while Roja was boarding the ship. Because Roja still didn't finish the exam. He had no rank. He is still wearing the trainee uniforms. If this is the warship that will go capture the Silver Sword Pirates, then we can go. I shouldn't have gone to a wrong boat. Roja looked at the stunned captains while shrugging randomly at them. Then he directly went into the cabin. Silence. All the people on board were looking at each other, and after Roja went into the cabin, an uproar suddenly rose. What's going on? What's wrong with this guy? Where did he come from? The captains contacted the base, and after some time of repeated confirmation, they believed that the instruction that was issued about the special marine from the headquarters is that trainee. Now that they can find his the special marine, then they won't be able to give him commands. With that, the G4 division captains and soldiers' faces turned ugly. In the marine, the number of time you go and capture pirates will accumulate war points. War point can't rise the rank but will help redeem a variety of items. The higher the service done, the more thing that can be exchanged. The marine forces are spread throughout the world, and their sphere of influence is far bigger than any pirate group. And with the resources they had is no doubt much more than any other force. Devil fruit, for example, can be exchanged with war point. Even a Logia-type devil fruit can be exchanged. However, that need a lot of effort and a lot of accumulated merit. And Roja is from the headquarters. He can follow them to capture the pirate group, and they have no right to command him. So he can hide in the warship without fighting any pirate. Isn't this using his background to exploit? Is this really okay? Moreover, his background looks very large. Even their Commodore could only open an eye and close the other. Well, let's get ready. Our Commodore could only open an eye and close the other. This is really. Does it really matter who he is? Several Marines shook their head and exposed an angry but helpless expression. In the end, they ignored him. In a separate cabin, Roja was lying in the bed. His face showing a helplessness. Even if their voices weren't loud, he still could hear them. Those guys. Roja shook his head. He was lazy to just go and explain to them. He will face the Silver Sword Pirates with the G4 division, but for now, he will just ignore them. He will rest until he meets these pirates. Maybe they have one of the Seijo o Wazumono swords. Roja thought about nothing but swords. Then he entered the space where the Soul Sword reside. Soul System. I always feel that you're not just an ordinary RPG system. But I still can't find the origin of such power. Roja looked at the sword in the air. The sword body was crystal clear. Roja stood there without speaking, just looking at it. Roja didn't know why. But every time the Soul Sword upgraded, it will more and more resemble a real sword. But no matter how you look at it, it didn't feel like a Zanpakuto. Beside, Roja didn't hear about any Zanpakuto with this kind of ability, which let him have the ability of other Zanpakuto like Yamamoto's fire and Ichigo's Getsuga Tenshō, and maybe there will be a third one. Roja, after looking at it for a while, he subconsciously reached with his hand and wanted to touch it. But it was like a ghost, his hand passed through like there is nothing there. Well, I feel that every upgrade will make you more real, so sooner or later I will figure out what you are. Roja returned his hand and shook his head. Reporting, the Silver Sword Pirate group is in front of us. Go faster. The warship caught up with the Silver Sword Pirate under a week. They didn't expect this. They thought that they will need at least half a month to catch up to them. When those on the warship heard that they already caught up, all of them suddenly tensed and began to take action. Naturally, the warship isn't something that the Silver Sword Pirate's ship can compare to. Not every pirate group have a powerful ship. After all, large warship needs turbo power. The report kept on coming to the warship's captain. Enter into the cannon's range. Cannons ready. One of the 5 captains looked serious, and with the order, the cannons fired together. Numerous cannonballs rained toward the Silver Sword Pirate ship. Wouch! Wouch! And when the cannons were about to hit, a sword energy suddenly shot out from the ship, a very large one at that, which blocked the cannonballs on their path. The Silver Sword Pirates showed up. Their faces didn't have any fear when looking at the warship. Really lucky. We met with the Marine. The Silver Sword Pirate's captain shook his head. His face suddenly revealed a ferocious look and said, I was in a very bad mood today. And a small Marine warship comes toward us. Wipe them out. Good. Compared to the Marines which were wearing a uniform, the pirates' clothes were a mess, but their momentum isn't the least bit weak. The Silver Sword ship began bombing at the warship too. Boom. 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 Roars sounded with every cannonball fired. The sea was splashing every now and then with the off-target cannonballs. On the deck, one of the captains was vigilant. Sir, our cannonballs are hardly hitting their ship. Keep firing. Try to stop their attacks and prepare to board their ship. Dealing with a pirate in the new world with just cannonballs won't achieve anything. The most important part is to board the ship. Not every pirate group had Luffy on their ship. Luffy can use his fruit and directly board a ship like it's nothing. The warship kept on coming closer and the 5 captain took place. But some cannonball fell on the warship. At this time Roja was in the upper corridor of the warship. He was looking at the pirate ship getting closer. This distance is still a bit far. In the air, cannonballs were coming to hit the ship. The nearest captain, as well as 2 other people, quickly deflected the cannonballs coming at the ship. The closer the 2 ships get, the harder it is to deflect the cannonballs. Not good. He missed 2 balls that were heading toward the place Roja was standing in. Seeing this, his face turned even worse. Roja was a Marine trainee. They didn't know how big is his background. But he was mixed in with them to get some merit, and even their commander could only open an eye and close the other. If he was to die, then it will be big trouble. When the captain was thinking about this, a light suddenly flashed with an incredible speed. Wouch! The 2 cannonballs froze at the same time, then they suddenly crumbled into dust. Roja was quietly standing in his place. His eyes still looking at the distant pirate ship. He didn't seem to move from his place, but his hand was on the sword hanging on his waist. This is. That Marine captain and the 2 lieutenants beside him were stunned. Their pupils shrank, then they breathed a sigh of relief. A master. This guy wasn't some Marine trainee, but he is a sword master. Some of the weak lieutenants are not even aware of what happened. Impossible, that kind of swordsmanship. He can't be just a Marine trainee. Is he really? Several lieutenants was very stunned and inhaled at the same time. A thought flashed and their eyes suddenly shined while looking with shock at Roja. Impossible. Although I was strong when I was a trainee too. But even people there aren't strong to this exaggerated manner, unless he's in the top even there. At this time other cannonballs were flying toward them. Almost there. Roja put a little force into his leg and jumped into the sky. He once again drew his Hano no Suki and swung twice. 2 energy attacks flew toward the cannonballs and sliced them. If the first time many people couldn't see, then this time all of saw him clearly. You. On the deck, the commandor stared at Roja in dismay. Roja was lazy the past few days. He won't come out of his cabin, and when he does come out, it would only be to eat, and then he would go back into his cabin. He had a separate cabin, so it seemed that he had some background. So no one came to cause any trouble for him. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself before. But there is no use now. There is only one thing I want to say, and that is the captain of those pirates is my prey. Roja looked at the Commodore while saying that gently. Which made him look creepy after his display of strength just now. Then Roja continued to say, so. Can you stop firing at them? Stop firing? Are you kidding me? The Commodore was still shocked by Roja. The strength displayed by Roja was far more than he imagined a Marine could have. And after Roja asked him to stop firing, he shouted back subconsciously. This is really giving me a headache. Forget it. Roja shook his head. Although the people on the warship has no right to order him, he also had no right to order them either. After all, he is just a Marine trainee. Roja never cared about his position, he only cared about personal strength. Because of this world, personal strength is what will give you the position. As long as his strength is strong enough to become an admiral or more powerful. He could even make the world government obey him. Whiz. Seeing that they won't stop firing, Roja just gave up on that idea. He directly used some strength into his leg and jumped out from the warship. Wait. What are you doing? The lieutenant was looking at Roja. He saw him jumping out of the warship and then rush toward the other ship. Rush. Not only him, all the people present were staring. They were stunned. Their brains couldn't keep up. Roja jumped from the warship but didn't fall into the sea. He was in the air. It seemed like he was stepping on a ladder. Moonwalk. The Commodore and the other important people on the warship have heard about this before. But naturally they weren't surprised by that, they were surprised because Roja chose this time to use it and go into the pirate ship, alone. Was he ready to rush into the warship alone? Was this a joke? Don't mention that the cannons were still firing. Even if he can deal with the cannonballs, can he deal with all the pirates alone? Does he have that much self-confidence in his strength or is he courting death? Roja used his sword to reflect cut the cannonball that was coming toward him. He learned the Kenbunchaku haki so there was no need to fear these cannonballs. Whiz. Whiz. He didn't want the two ships to get too close to each other. So he chose this distance to use moonwalk and go alone. The reason he came alone is he didn't wish for anyone to interfere. So he can go all out. The Silver Sword pirates saw Roja coming toward them. They didn't panic. What is it? Swordplay isn't bad. Strength isn't bad either. This guy is mine. No one will have him. Boy, rushing here alone, it seems that you're confident. Or are you just courting death? The pirates didn't really have Roja in their eyes. They were laughing and joking like there is nothing. I have come for a reason. Roja is dressed in a trainee uniform that he was holding his sword and standing on the air. What reason? The reason is to display my full strength. Roja standing in the air suddenly swung his sword toward the ship. Sword flow, cremate. Even when he was fighting Lucci he didn't use his full power. Because it would have spread to a wide range. Even if the flames burned an area of 10 meters but the temperature would be unbearable in a range of 100 meters. This time he used his full strength. Without any reservation, Roja's sword swung and flames come out rushing. The sky turned red suddenly and the flames with tens of meters long come down crashing. Not good. This is bad. The Silver Sword pirates were originally looking down on Roja and didn't think that is good enough to face them all together. But suddenly when they thought that he's gonna use an energy attack, it turned out to be a flame attack. This can be described as a surprise. Having thought that Roja was arrogant, they were ready to deal with his energy attack. But suddenly flames come down on them suddenly which made them react a second late. Boom. Monstrous flames rushed into the ship and turned it into chaos. And almost when the flame comes down Roja didn't stay still as he suddenly held his sword high. The sword fell down. Getsuga Tenshō. Hum. Red energy dozens of meters long suddenly pierced the void. And the strike fell suddenly on the ship. This sword strike was unleashed at the same time as the flame fell. Tens of meters of flames and tens of meters of sword energy. Both formed a cross. The Silver Sword pirates were unprepared to face it. The pirates were ready for an energy attack, but what came down was flames. Not only flames but after them, a huge energy attack came down too. The Silver pirates were in chaos after just 2 strikes. Hum. At this time a figure met with Getsuga Tenshō. This was the Silver Sword pirates captain with a bounty of 225 million berries. In the new world his strength is not bad, but surprised by the flame then hit by Getsuga Tenshō would he withstand that? The captain knew that he can't withstand such power directly. So he leaped and waved his sword which collided with the Getsuga Tenshō and issued a sound of metal hitting metal. Suddenly he felt huge pressure. Boom. The other Silver Sword pirates tried to black Getsuga Tenshō after rushing out of the flames. A sword strike against all enemies. Wouch. The sword split off and the energy attack continued down, which made a crack that was about to cut the whole ship in half. Far away. The captain of the warship and the people with him are looking while their mouth wide open to the point of touching the ground. That trainee. What is his identity? He is too strong. Stop firing, stop firing. At this moment, the captain was awakened. No wonder Roja wanted him to stop firing, so this bombing will cause an interference to Roja. On top of the pirate ship. Roja was still stepping on the air. Looking down at the ship his mouth suddenly revealed a smile. Indeed the New World pirates are different, there isn't a single casualty. This is good. This is really good. If they were to die this would be really boring. Stating this Roja turned upside down and used moonwalk to rush directly from the air into the ship. At the same time, Roja was holding his sword and waved. Sword flow, torch. Boom. Red flames fell from the sky and Roja who was in the flames came down like a meteorite. He directly hit the center of the ship. Boom. 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 Monstrous flames are being constantly released. It was like waves of hell. They swept every direction of the ship. The ship was enveloped in flames and turned into a huge oven. Some of the pirates started to jump into the sea and on the other side, the warship was catching them one after the other. As for those who didn't jump out, the marines on the warship looked at the flames that constantly burned the ship and those on it, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. This is too exaggerated. It seems like we won't need to go into that ship. Even the 5 captain looked away. They couldn't help but smile. It seems that Roja can finish everything alone. It is obvious. Roja didn't need any help. They just need to catch everyone that jump out of the ship. Wouch. Wouch. Monstrous flames kept on increasing and from time to time an energy attack will be released at the pirates and the ship. The ship had more than 10 cracks now. And it immediately was filled with water. After some time from the burning ship, a figure came out slowly. With this figure getting out the flames made way for it like a group of soldiers making way for their general. After that, the flames started to fade little by little only leaving ruins behind. Whiz. Roja gently stepped and he suddenly jumped from the air and returned to the deck of the warship while his sword has long been returned into its scabbard. Roja had some blood stains but that blood was already dry. In addition, he didn't have any trace of being burned. Go clean, if you don't hurry that ship will sink. After going back to the warship, he saw everyone looking at him in a daze. So he couldn't help but turn his eyes and point at the faraway ship that was burning and collapsing. Silence. After some time, a captain voice broke the silence. Go finish the work. The warship finally broke out from the silence. And this time Roja returned into his cabin. His clothes had blood stains. He looked at his clothes with a frown. Although I wasn't injured. With the flame ability and also Busashoku Haki aid, I still had blood stains on my clothes. It seems my power still isn't enough. My experience in real battle isn't enough. When you look at Roja you would think that he came out of a desperate fight. If I can achieve the 9 air compression in the Tobu Zangiki or even 10. Then this battle would have been easier. And those bloodstains wouldn't be there. Finally, Roja comes to the conclusion. He isn't strong enough. Marine G4 Division. You're back. The Commodore of the G4 base was sitting on his office and beside him was the other Commodore. Well, the pirates have run. The Commodore in charge of the G4 appeared very depressed. He sat down and ordered a cigarette. After smoking for a little and put his leg over the other one while smiling and said, after I have gone out did anything happen? Well, there is a young man who came to our division from the elite recruit. He came to participate in the second stage of his graduation exam but. He smiled a little then continued, I don't know what happened but the task assigned to him to catch the Silver Sword Pirates. Second stage of the graduation is. To catch the Silver Sword Pirates. The Commodore who was in charge of the G4 stared at the other one and said, he must have offended someone. The Silver Sword Pirate Group had a bounty of 225 million berries. When I did that I faced someone with 100 million and almost didn't pass. Probably not. This guy is someone from Vice Admiral's Garp family. Anyway I didn't ask about the detail but just received that they already met the Silver Sword but I still don't know the result of the battle. Again the Commodore put a cigarette in his mouth too and said. Since he is one of Mr. Garp's relatives then he should have some strength. But the Silver Sword Pirates aren't weak either. The G4 division chased them several times but still couldn't capture them. And since you weren't here, I sent 5 captains with him. So we still have some hope. The G4 leader was sitting there and smoking while listening to the other Commodore words. Then he nodded and said this. I hope nothing happens. And at this time a den mushi rang. The G4 leader reacted instantly and picked up and hurriedly said, I am the leader of the G4 division, how is the fight? The person from the other side said something then. Pita. The den mushi in the leader's hand fell on the table. At the same time sitting beside him is the other Commodore, his cigarette also fell to the ground. In the G4 office, you couldn't hear a thing. Silence, a long silence. In the Marine Headquarter Fortress top floor. Sengoku's office. Sengoku was sitting there and in front of him, there were several documents signed. He handed to a Marine soldier beside him and stretched his body. Then he picked up a cup of tea and drank slowly. At this time someone came to report. Hey, Yamakaji, what is it? This is. After coming into Sengoku's office, he looked respectfully at Sengoku, then hesitantly handed the information and said, look at this. Why are you so agitated? Seeing the expression of Yamakaji, Sengoku couldn't help but worry. His eyes flashed as he took the information and looked it up. Then he fell in silence. For a long time, Sengoku was silent, then he put down the document, drank some tea, then slowly said, Silver Sword Pirates all have been captured and 4 of them died. G4 division had 0 deaths, seriously injured 1 person and 3 had minor injuries. Totaling into 4 casualties. Among them, Roja defeated the Silver Sword Pirates captain, 9 cadres and 50 of the ordinary crew. It's better than I had imagined. Sengoku said slowly, seemingly calm. But his eyes and appearance were different and exposed what he was feeling at heart. Among the 3 admirals, Kizaru had the best score in this test. They all almost defeated the entire enemy alone. But the number of casualties was 6 people. Beside the captain of their target was only 170 million berry. One of the most difficult tasks, perfect battle, and fewer casualties. Sir, Roja really is a relative of Mr. Garp. Yamakaji too wasn't stupid. He couldn't calm down and said while he was slightly shocked. Listening to Yamakaji who mentioned Garp. Sengoku couldn't help but shoot, Garp was always giving me trouble, he is so much trouble. Yamakaji smiled and didn't speak. It seems that I have to get some time to watch the 3rd stage of the exam. Sengoku stood up. He sighed and looked at the window deeply. And then he handed back the document to Yamakaji. Marine Headquarters. Below Sengoku's office was the high-level conference room and below that floor, there was the Marine Intelligence Service. In addition to gathering information for the world government but they also deal with complex information every day. This place provided Sengoku, the admirals and others with information. And here was the advisor searching for some information and also registering information. It was Marine Advisor Carl. His responsibility was to register Roja and the elite camp recruits with the information about their tasks. After that, he will return to his work. Suddenly a special information was sent over. This is a result of one of the recruits who was doing their second stage of the exam. I didn't think there would be someone finishing this fast. Carl looked over the information, suddenly shook his head, as he couldn't help but think about Roja. He estimated that even if Roja did complete his task it won't be anything special. Then he made a small action. He wanted to look at the information. After all, he is the one in charge of the management of the information and basically, no one will know if he looked secretly at the message. After a while, Roja opened the new information. Crash. The document in his hand suddenly fell to the ground. Next to him was another advisor, he looked at Carl and said, Carl. What's wrong? No. Nothing. Carl was trying to keep himself calm as he squatted to retrieve the fallen document. Then looked at the corner of the document, there was a clear line written. The second stage of the exam, score, perfect. In the elite camp's second exam, someone got a perfect score. This is big news. Who was qualified they didn't know but all people in the headquarters heard about this which caused quite the sensation. Everyone was shocked. Because in the history of this exam, the perfect score only appeared 3 times. Each time was one of the current admirals. No one else got a perfect score. What would that mean? In the Marine headquarters, the high-leveled conference room. There were 3 people. Sure enough, Mr. Garp's nephew was really a monster. Akiji was lazing around. He suddenly opened his eyes and said, "Arara, he really got a perfect score." Then Akiji put his hand under his chin and said, "I don't know if he could do the same in the 3rd stage." Kizaru looked at him and said, "The 3rd stage is the last one. It's too difficult that we couldn't pass all the Tenshō." "Well, maybe." Akiji stood up and left. Kizaru looked at him, then drank his tea and also left. The 10th. After the 2 of them left, Akainu stood up, slightly shook his head after he thought of something. He snorted and left too. A warship slowly docked at the Marine headquarters shore. Out of the warship, a figure flashed as it jumped from the deck to the shore, then he directly started walking. This naturally was Roja, who just finished the 2nd stage of the graduation exam. Along the way, every officer he passed by had that big word in his coat. The word, justice. After he completes the 3rd stage of the exam, Roja will also become a formal Marine officer. And his rank would be at least an ensign. Of course, the higher the position the better, like an admiral. Roja smiled and went back to his home while enjoying the breeze. This time he went out and didn't practice at all, but he still engaged in a battle, so his energy increased, but not by a lot. It was more or less like practicing for 15 days. After returning by half a day, Roja received some info. The 3rd stage of the exam can be taken before 2.5 months. Roja looked at the instructor who told him about this, then put his hand under his chin. After some thought about why he will need to wait that long for the next exam. The 2nd stage of the exam had a time limit of 3 months, and those who couldn't complete their task will need to redo the exam from the start. Roja completed his task and returned after just half a month, which means that he had to wait for the rest of that time to end so he can take the final stage of the exam. I will have to wait for 2.5 months so I can take the 3rd stage of the exam. Does that mean that I will take the exam with Smoker and the others? Roja reached the state where normal practice won't increase the energy anymore. In the sea, many people had physical power comparable to Roja, but only few could reach Garp's power. The practice will be harder the stronger you get. For the current Roja, his strength is most likely is that of a rear admiral. They may be not his opponent. He only needs to practice his 2 types of hockey while also increasing his physical strength, and all that only to achieve 2 things. First, improve his swordsmanship. Second, reach the 4th stage of the soul sword. From now until the 3rd stage of the exam there is 2 months and a half. If I want to reach the 4th stage of the soul sword, then would be difficult. But if it's swordplay, then I have a chance to do that. Until the beginning of the 3rd stage, I have to increase my strength to a whole different level. The last practice before going out in the sea. After that, I will improve by doing real life and death battles. Roja now comes to the elite camp training ground. Now he can't stay at home and practice because he may split the whole place in half. So, of course, he will have to come here. Didn't you participate in the 2nd stage of the exam? Seeing Roja on the training ground. Hina suddenly comes before him while being surprised. I finished it already. Roja smiled at her and then left to the small training room. Finished? So fast. Roja's answer made Hina open her eyes in shock, even Ain was stunned. The fastest speed to complete the exam last year is a month and a half. Roja only used half a month to finish it. If they didn't know Roja's power, then wouldn't have believed him at all. The small room that Roja entered was the smallest one. And even for Roja, this was the first time he came here. And that's because this room was built with karasaki. This special material is stronger than steel and had the power equivalent to the sea. It's capable of suppressing the devil fruits. It causes the body to feel weak and it will be hard to use any ability. Generally, this is used to handcuff the pirates with a devil fruit ability. Because this room was built with karasaki, those with a devil fruit were forbidden from coming here. And the reason why Roja chose this room was because he had too much destructive force. The karasaki could tolerate his strikes. Let's use weights, 10 tons. Well, there are 20 tons which seem to be the limit. Roja walked into the room while feeling satisfied after looking at the equipment there. When he was practicing in other rooms there was the only weight of 10 tons. It seems that only this room could afford this kind of training. But 20 tons of weight is so big. Roja went before the 20 tons of weight and stretched his hands. Then he tried to lift it. Although the weight was made of special materials, but it's still very large. Roja was used to 10 tons of weight. But he was new to this 20 tons one. Well, he had the strength of more than 1,000 people, so he can easily lift this kind of weight. And to practice until you reach Garp strength, then 100 tons of weight is normal. Garp could destroy 8 mountains with a fist and throw a huge iron ball bigger than a warship. This level of weight is unsuitable for practice if it was the normal size. I don't know who made this, Vegapunk the best scientist or someone with gravity devil fruit. Let's begin. Carrying 20 tons, Roja began the warm-ups. Roja's heart suddenly turned a little emotional. Nearly a year time has passed from when he came to this world. No, to mention 20 tons, he couldn't even lift a 200 kilograms basic weight. And now he multiplied that number by 100 times and he didn't feel any pressure. Wouch. Wouch. After an hour of warm-up, Roja, who was in the karasaki, made room use the 20 tons of weight to train. After a while, Roja looked at his body and decided to rest for a bit. He pulled his sword from the scabbard and waved. Wouch. 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 For a moment Roja's sword compressed the air 8 times and the 9th time didn't go smoothly, and only a little bit was compressed. Boom. The strike swept over and exploded at the target. I need to adjust the strength and speed. The 9th compression needs to meet the standards of the former 8. But I should be faster and more perfect. Roja looked at the result, nodded his head and once again looked at the target and waved his sword. Again. Wouch. Wouch. The 9th compression slightly improved but still lost power and failed again. The problem is my power control. Again. Roja felt that his strength was more than enough to complete the 10th compression. Now he only lacks the comprehension of the sword. And to improve his comprehension, he needs to use the sword countless times and little by little he will learn more. Roja wasn't anxious about the third stage of the exam. His strength was already enough, and in those 2 months and a half, his power will still increase. After half a month Roja completed and perfected the 9th compression. And after a month and a half Roja finished the 10th compression. In the Karasuki training room. Roja suddenly leaped while holding his sword and suddenly the sword blurred and out of it a strike flew toward the target. Boom. A silver-white energy suddenly collided with the specially made target like lightning. The 10th compression is hard. But after mastering it feels different. Roja looked at his sword while his eyes flashed as he swung his sword with one hand. Wouch. Even if Roja used a single hand, he still could use Tobu Zangiki, but it's a lot weaker than using it with 2 hands. So not only the strength and speed. The comprehension is also a key point to get stronger. Roja who was holding his sword with one hand revealed a look of understanding. The 10th compression is a bottleneck. No wonder that not many could get to this level and who did got here are all strong people. Roja continued to wield his sword to understand the way of the sword better. After relaxing his arm, Roja thought about the property bar, and suddenly it appeared before him. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 9. Attribute, Attack Power plus 280, Power plus 90, Agility plus 90. Special attribute, All things in the world turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release an arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 13/210. After practicing hockey and defeating Lucci, Roja's soul sword upgraded 2 times, he wasn't that far from reaching the 4th stage already. It seems I need to wait after the exam to upgrade it again. Roja estimated that there are 3 other days until the 3rd stage of the exam. He will soon upgrade his soul sword to the 4th stage. I already should have top physical strength. Also, I can use Haki and Tobu Zangiki. Coupled with the flames and Getsuga Tenshō. Roja eyes flashed and his face showed a smile and said, I should have any problems in the 3rd stage of the exam. If Roja were to face the top people of the headquarters it would be better experienced and also his soul sword will upgrade easily after the fight. Roja was hoping to fight some vice admirals in the 3rd stage. 3 days later. In the Marine headquarters, Marine Ford, there were many huge places. The biggest was the harbor which was enough to accommodate a battle of 100,000 people. Secondly is the fortress. On the first floor, there were 2 squares, one for the ordinary camp. The other is built like a ring. In the ring, 2 people were fighting. Bang! Suddenly a figure flew out of the ring. Smoker, the 6th win. You pass. Looking at this scene, Yamakaji announced. The one standing in the ring was Smoker who just win his 6th battle so he can be considered as passed the test. Of course, if he wants better result he needs to continue. Smoker chose to stay and fight the 7th battle. In front of him were 6 enemies, their strength was between lieutenant commander and captain. Starting from the 7th battle, the difficulty began to increase. Here, the 3rd stage of the exam was being held. Many were present in the audience. Like Kizaru, Akiji, Akainu, Z, and Garp. Even Sengoku was here. The situation in the new world isn't something they can interfere in as they want. So they could only monitor the 4 emperors for now. Because of this, all the high ranks in the Marine were busy. Still, in this graduation exam, the 3rd stage for the first time had so many high ranks from the Marine. I didn't expect a Logia user to participate this time. He is probably the best recruit. It seems so. Several Marines looked at Smoker and commented. No, I heard that Vice Admiral Garp's nephew is the best out of this year's recruits. Also, I heard that he got the potential to be an admiral. Potential of an admiral. Hearing this made everyone present reveal an expression of surprise and shock. The admiral is the highest rank in the Marine. And there is only 3 in that position. If someone had the potential to be a Marine admiral, then it means he will stand on top of all of them. Some high-ranked Marine didn't take it into account even if he was Garp's nephew. In the top seats. Smoker has the Smoke Devil Fruit which is a Logia type. So he can pass the 7th level without any problem. Akiji was looking at Smoker who was taking his exam at the field and commented randomly. Unfortunately, his physical strength is inadequate. So his chance to pass the 8th level is meager. Kizaru said then looked at Z with a slight mockery in his eyes then continued. Teacher Z, you taught me to pay attention to the strength of the body. Humph. The 3 admirals were Z's students, but the relationship between Z and Kizaru is the worst. Z was always unhappy about Kizaru because he depended too much on his fruit power and didn't pay attention to the power of his body. Who let my fruit ability be light? It's not weak even if I relied on it only. Kizaru said helplessly. Z didn't want to argue with him and continued to look at the field. Bang. Bang. Smoker was in a confrontation with a pirate. The pirate had a reward of 180 million berries, but he didn't know how to use Haki. He had a Paramecia fruit, but against Smoker Logia he couldn't do a thing. The pirate could only get beaten. After a while Smoker seized a flow in the pirate attacks and defeated him. The 7th level, pass. Seeing this, most people only nodded. From the beginning of the fight, they already knew the outcome of the match. Many elites were watching the fight. Some were from the military school. It was hard for me to pass the 6th level. But Smoker passed the 7th. His strength is way over ours. Smoker has a Logia Devil Fruit so of course. We can't match him. Someone said this with a sour tone. Watching Smoker pass the 7th level using his Devil Fruit ability made some people's hearts feel bitter. Don't forget. There is still Roja. When someone said this, the sourness in his voice was gone. If they were jealous of Smoker's fruit, then they couldn't be jealous of Roja. Even if Roja didn't use his flame ability and fought with only his physical strength and his sword, he could crush any of them. Smoker probably won't be able to pass the 8th level. We don't know if Roja could do that. If I remember correctly, this exam had 10 levels. The 10th level. Someone thought a little, then shook his head and laughed. The 3 admirals couldn't pass the 10th level. They only passed the 9th. Some elite camp graduates suddenly exposed a shocked look and said. Even the 3 admirals couldn't pass the 10th level. Incredible, who is the opponent in the 10th level? A master listening to them suddenly looked at the 3 admirals and said. Vice Admiral. My father told me that, in the 3rd stage of the elite camp's graduation exam 10th level, a random Vice Admiral will be the opponent. After hearing this sentence, all the people looked at each other. A Vice Admiral. The second highest rank after the admirals. The absolute backbone of the Marine without a doubt were the admirals. But the one who hunts the pirates with huge bounties are the Vice Admirals. Each of the Vice Admirals is experienced veterans. Their bodies were incredibly powerful. They were at least masters in 1 or 2 techniques of the 6 powers. And most importantly, they were proficient in using Haki. The Vice Admirals are not the strongest in the sea, but compared to Marine recruits, the difference is like the gap between heaven and earth. Even the current admirals couldn't do a thing against them when they were recruits. They could only admit defeat. Although they become the strongest in the Marine, but the strength of a Vice Admirals isn't something an average person can reach. And most people who reach that level of strength won't be able to go any further. If you don't have talent, then even if worked hard, you won't be able to surpass that level. To think that a Vice Admiral will take part in the exam. It's a joke. No matter who or what fruit he has, it won't be possible to win. The people present shook their head while their mouth twitched. Don't overthink it. We couldn't even pass the 7th level. If not for Smoker and Roja, we probably wouldn't get to see the 8th level opponent. As for the 10th level, we won't necessarily get to see that today. In the field. After passing the 7th level, Smoker chose to challenge the 8th. Smoker will be fighting someone at the Commodore level with no devil fruit. He only uses the 6th power of the Marine and Haki. With a punch, Smoker was hit. After some time, Smoker was defeated. As his opponent was one of the Marines, he showed mercy, and even after beating Smoker, he didn't leave him with any wound. If his fruit ability wasn't smoke, he may have a chance. If it was another ability with a more offensive power, he might have passed the 8th level. Akiji slightly shook his head. After saying that, his eyes flashed as he was anticipating the next fight is the most exciting. Finally. I don't know if he will be like us and only pass the 9th level, or will he be able to break our record and continue to move the 10th too. This is something worth looking forward to. Is it finally Roja's turn? The elite camp members and other people all turned to look at Roja, who was entering the field. They thought about how Smoker passed the 7th level and was defeated at the 8th. Those people had hoped that Roja will pass the 8th and the 9th like the current admirals. Not only them, but even Garp, Z, Akiji, Kizaru and even Sengoku were also paying attention in the field. To be more precise, even Akainu raised his hat to look at the area. This was too eye-catching. Countless people were concerned about Roja while Roja entered the field. Looking at the audience, Roja noticed Akiji, Kizaru, Garp and the others. He felt like he did see this somewhere. Then he remembered when Whitebeard come to save Ace, the entire headquarters was facing him. Yamakaji, looking at Roja standing there, couldn't help but reveal how much he looked forward to this moment. He raised his mouth into a smile, then said. Monkey.D. Roja, 3rd stage of the graduation exam, 1st level start. With Yamakaji's words, Roja's first enemy entered the field. Facing his first opponent, Roja didn't even pull out his sword. He just threw a punch randomly, and the man was sent out of the field. For the next 5 levels Roja did the same and only used his hands, but on the 5th level, he used a little bit of Busashoku Haki. When he did that, most of the people, who didn't know about him using Haki, were surprised. 5th level pass, do you need to rest? Yamakaji, after seeing Roja punching out his opponent with a little bit of Haki, nodded his head. In the 3rd stage of the exam, there are 10 levels. After each level, there are 10 minutes of rest. You can choose to relax, or you can decide to continue. No need. Roja shook his head. All the previous opponents were too weak, so basically, with a casual wave of his hand he sends one out. Finally, if you can pass the 6th level, then you can be considered as a graduate. The elite camp recruits all had their eyes flashing when they looked at the field. They stayed at the elite camp with Z for 2 years to pass that 6th level. Well then, in the 6th level your opponent is Lieutenant Commander, Komaros. After Yamakaji finished talking, Komaros was already on the field. Komaros still wanted to win. If he was to capture a pirate, then he will get about 1 million. But if he could beat a recruit in the graduation exam, then he will get several times of that. Whiz. The axe was falling, and the most important thing is that Haki around it directly used Soru and rushed to Roja with his axe. Komaros could already use Haki. Very good, but it seems he can't use hardening yet. Roja noticed the Haki too, and his eyes flashed. You can use Haki. Roja looked at the Haki around the axe and decided to use his sword, not his fist anymore. Ding. His sword was instantly out of its scabbard. Komaros' axe was split in 2. One of the 2 halves was sent flying away and hit the ground far from them. Komaros' body instantly stiffened. His back was full of cold sweat, and his heart turned cold. Although he saw how powerful Roja was in the previous 5 fight, he didn't think that he would be this strong just by pulling his sword. Too powerful. Is the gap between us that huge? I surrender. Komaros directly threw in the towel. Seeing Komaros throwing the towel, Roja looked at him and nodded slightly. He returned the sword and looked at Yamakaji. I can take the next one. For Roja to cut Komaros' axe after pulling his sword wasn't surprising for most people who knew Roja. Because even if Komaros used that little bit of Haki, he wasn't Roja's opponent who mastered hardening already. Yamakaji nodded and announced the beginning of the 7th level. The 7th level, your opponent is, a pirate being held on the 5th level of the prison, D. Ross. 2 years ago he was caught and defeated in the New World by the G6 division. The captain of the Dairo pirates with a bounty of 193 million berries. After Yamakaji finished talking, a prisoner with handcuffs came forward. Beside him, a lieutenant opened his handcuffs when he got on the field. If I kill that bastard, will you free me? Looking around, D. Ross already knew he wouldn't be able to escape. After saying this, the lieutenant said. Maybe. The lieutenant said this while looking coldly at D. Ross. In fact, everyone present knew that him being released is impossible. But the lieutenant stated that only to let D. Ross have a little fighting spirit. Hey. I know that you're lying to me. You guys won't simply let me leave. But since I was confined for 2 years, it's finally time to move a little. So I will accompany that kid to play a little. D. Ross said with a smile. His eyes were bloodshot. He can't escape anyway. So no matter what happens it won't get worse than it is. It would be better to capture the kid and directly cut his neck if the others wanted to rescue him. Whiz. This guy didn't need to wait until the beginning of the match. He directly rushed toward Roja like a storm. Before he got too close to Roja his whole person turned into a ball, then he transformed. Go to hell. D. Ross rushed toward Roja with his fists turning black. He can use hardening. He possessed great power. Even Smoker and the others looking at this were shocked. If Smoker were the one fighting D. Ross, perhaps he wouldn't have any chance to win. But, the one facing D. Ross was Roja. Roja instantly used his sword. Black color started to surround the sword as it formed the hardening. Boom. D. Ross' fist directly hit Roja's blade. The airwaves were visible to the naked eye as they were moving all around. Roja was standing in his original position, and after the waves disappeared, he took one step back. The Zoan Devil Fruit has high ability indeed. This one's power isn't small too. Roja looked at D. Ross indifferently. When Roja was facing marine opponents his attitude toward them was good. But against a pirate, his killing intent was up and was looking at him coldly. Impossible. He only took a step back. D. Ross's face revealed the extent of his shock. He just punched out with all he got without saying a thing. He hit Roja's sword and was waiting for him to collapse due to internal injuries directly. But he didn't expect that not only did Roja not collapse but he even only took a small step back. Roja compared to him was a young boy. He found it incredible that such a small body could hold this much strength. This is my turn then. Roja looked indifferently at D. Ross and swung his sword. The sword fell which made the air seem moving away from it. The sword felt like it's passing through the void. The sword fell on D. Ross. This sword didn't produce energy. All there was in it is the haki and the power of Roja's swing. Not good. D. Ross could guess the power of the sword. He wanted to escape, but because the distance was too close, it was already late. So he put up his arm while using hardening on them to receive the strike directly. Wouch. Roja's sword cut through D. Ross' arms and cut them even though the latter was using haki. Blood splashed. D. Ross roared in pain as he tried to escape. He forgot that he was in the marine headquarters. In the next moment, Roja took a step and disappeared. He appeared behind D. Ross. Chong. SFX. This sound was produced by the sword returning to its scabbard. On D. Ross' body appeared a clear line with blood stains. His eyes still had the horror he faced before he died. The 7th level, pass. Roja was fast to end this round which made many people in the audience shocked. The strength, speed, swordsmanship, and haki that Roja displayed were extremely powerful. Strength, speed, haki, swordsmanship. Most people only had 1 or 2 and weren't weak. Roja had all 4, this wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Roja's show of strength had exceeded the expectations of most people here. Yamakaji took a deep breath, he looked at the next opponent on the list then exposed a strange look. The 8th level, your opponent will be a giant monster, the Silverback Ape King. The opponent was extremely different from the one who faced Smoker a while ago. Smoker faced a lieutenant commander, and Roja was to face a giant monster. Monkey King. Roja looked while surprise was apparent on his face. He couldn't help but remember the ape he killed in the first exam. It seems this one is called SBAK. It should be much stronger than the other one. This SBAK was captured by the G2 division in the New World. It took more than 3 captains to subdue it and transport it here. Roja, you have to be careful. This big guy isn't easy to deal with. Yamakaji reminded Roja and then turned to look. You could see him looking at the SBAK which was being suppressed. 4 people were leading it to the field. A massive body with explosive muscles power. There is no doubt this will cause trouble to even the elite of the marine. SBAK. The crowd of the elite camp heard about the SBAK and couldn't help but suck in cold air. They were the elite of the marine, even when facing pirates, they won't be horrified. But the SBAK far from just the look, he emitted a strong sense of oppression. I didn't think that Roja's 8th level would be this hard. It's even more challenging than the previous ones. I believe that it's difficult for him to reach the 10th maybe even the 9th level. The same master from before said solemnly. If it were Smoker fighting, he would hold the advantage with his smoke ability. Because this SBAK can't do a thing to a Logia-type devil fruit. But Roja wasn't a devil fruit user. And fighting such a big guy is not okay. Are you ready? Because Roja's 8th opponent is a monster. Yamakaji was looked at Roja and said solemnly. Let's start. Roja looked at the SBAK with a trace of interest showing on his face. The body of the SBAK was massive. It seemed like a boss character from a game. The 8th level, start. With Yamakaji's command, the 4 Marines suppressing the SBAK released him and jumped on the side. When he hasn't contained anymore, the SBAK hit his chest a few times while roaring to the sky. Roar. The sound was deafening. But the people present here weren't ordinary people, so a SBAK roar didn't have much effect. Facing this roar, Roja took the opportunity to attack first. He didn't rush at the SBAK but only waved his sword and used Tobu Zangiki. Wouch! A silver-white sword energy suddenly projected toward the SBAK. The SBAK roared, apparently, it is too late to escape. But it reacted fast and used its hand to block his attack. Bang! The attack hit the thick arms of the SBAK and made a metal collision sound. The sword energy didn't break the ape's defense. Although Roja didn't use Busashoku hardening, he still used the full power when he swung the sword. SBAK. It seems that was my 8th level opponent. In the audience, Akiji looking at the SBAK while scratching his hair, he was nostalgic. Then you froze it into a lump of ice. Kizaru seems to remember still what happened. He looked at Akiji then turned to the field with a look of interest and said, so, how will he deal with it? Roar. After being attacked, the SBAK glared at Roja. It was ready to tear Roja apart. It was caught and kept by those hateful marines who made it angry and mad. Roja who provoked it will face all that anger now. Whiz. SBAK rushed with an incredible speed almost instantly, and it appeared in front of Roja. Using its fist like a hammer on Roja, and if they were to hit, then Roja will turn into a meat patty. Moonwalk. To avoid the SBAK strike, Roja jumped in the air and used Moonwalk and stayed 32 foot up above. Then he turned toward the SBAK and began to swing fiercely. In the eyes of the SBAK, Roja was like an ant. So those small attack won't do anything to it. It used those thick hand to strike Roja who was in the air. But this time Roja didn't use only Tobu Zangetsu, but he also used Haki. Wouch! The SBAK attack collided with Roja's swing. Of course, Roja was sent backward for some distance. But the palm of the ape had a cut, and the bones were visible. Even if its skin was harder than steel, it's impossible for it to resist Roja's swing. It seems that when I use Haki, I will easily break its defense. Roja was stepping on the air. I don't know if the ape Luffy encountered after the 2 years is stronger than this one or not. Roja couldn't think of an exact answer to this question unless he sees that great ape king for himself. The SBAK was in pain. It seems that it got even angrier than before. It even leaped toward Roja. I wanted to tear him apart no matter what. However, Roja didn't want to continue and waste his time and energy by playing with it. Wouch! Wouch! While still in the air, Roja swung his sword toward the SBAK a few times. After that, the SBAK fell back while there was a visible trace of blood on its body and face. The big and huge body of the SBAK crushed down to the floor, and Roja put back his sword into its scabbard. Looking at the huge shadow of the SBAK made Smoker, and the others shocked again by Roja's power. They all knew that Roja was strong, but they didn't know how strong he was. And in the face of this SBAK, they finally knew that Roja was still holding back. 2 strikes from Roja defeated even such a powerful monster. Other than the 3 admirals, Sengoku, Garp and the other high ranks who were not surprised. Shock silenced all the other marines present. The 8th level, pass. A long time passed, and finally, Yamakaji announced the result while some marines came to retrieve the SBAK body and clean the blood of the field. The 8th level ended. Now time for the 9th level. Only the 3 current admirals were able to reach and pass this level. And if Roja was to pass this level, he will be the same as the admirals. Roja defeated the SBAK without his flames and Getsuga Tenshō. But using Moonwalk was energy consuming. Even so, Roja wasn't out of breath. After 10 minutes of rest, Yamakaji looked at Roja and said, we'll go to the next level. After that, his expression turned serious as he declared. The 9th level, your opponent is the Rear Admiral, Strawberry. After declaring this, a man was walking to the field while in his waist a sword was hanging. 9th level, Rear Admiral Strawberry. Strawberry now was only a Rear Admiral, but a decade later he will be a Vice Admiral. Many of the original story strong marine individuals are now still lieutenant or below. After all, there's still some time to reach the original story timeline, about 11-10 years. Strawberry may be a Rear Admiral, but he is still very powerful. Teacher Z seems to have taught a good student. And also you are from Mr. Garp's family. Strawberry looked at Roja curiously as he talked with a friendly tone. Roja nodded and smiled friendly at him. Strawberry seems to be one of Z's student. So Roja was equivalent to his kohai. Most high-ranking officers were taught by Z anyway. You're better than me. But in this exam, I won't go easy, so be prepared. Strawberry smiled and said to Roja while pulling his sword. Anytime. Roja's expression was calm as he nodded gently. It's good then. Strawberry saw Roja was getting ready, so he no longer talked. He held his 2 swords. After that he used hardening on them which made them turn black. They were shining under the sun. Strawberry waved his swords at Roja. Wouch! Wouch! 2 blue sword energies suddenly flew toward Roja. When using a single sword, the strike produced would be stronger than that of when using double swords. But the one created by Strawberry was impressively sharp. In the face of those 2 strikes, Roja put the Busashoku on his sword and used hardening. Then he waved. Hum. A silver-white sword energy flew out. The 2 strike of Strawberry and that 1 strike Roja crashed against each other. Roja's attack was stronger than the other strikes. And when they collided, they made an explosive sound and then collapsed. Good. Strawberry praised Roja. He was facing someone so young yet was so accomplished in his swordsmanship. Praises aside, Strawberry still won't go easy. Soru. In the next moment, Strawberry rushed toward Roja. Roja used Soru and have gone behind Strawberry. Ding. The 2 swords collided with Roja's sword while the 2 figures stayed still. Sparks flew as the wind was disturbed. Ding. Ding! When the close combat started, there was no time to stop. Strawberry and Roja continued to stagger. Roja was flexible when using his strength, speed, swordsmanship, and hockey. While Strawberry used his twin swords, which turned into a well-matched fight. Smoker and the others looking at this scene made them go numb. This time Roja's strength was in full view. Even if he didn't use his flames, he still could be well matched against a rear admiral. His power, speed, hockey, and swordsmanship reached this kind of level. Even Strawberry couldn't beat him. He is a monster. Kizaru looked at the field. Although his voice still held that joking tone, in the depth of his word you could find how shocked he was. Strawberry was someone under Kizaru. So Kizaru was clear about Strawberry's strength. Just now Roja fought against Strawberry, and their strength could be judged as the same. In other words, that last exchange was a tie. And that made Kizaru look at the field in awe. Because Kizaru knew that Roja still had that flame ability which he didn't use yet. That flame power was a threat to even Strawberry. Even if it wasn't, it could change the balance in this fight. So you can say. The 9th level opponent was unable to stop Roja. Not only Kizaru, the others beside him also though the same thing. Watching the fight Z revealed a slight smile. This is his current best student, Roja. Garp's eyes were showing his pride. It's like they're saying, this is my nephew, monkey. Roja. At the field. Roja and Strawberry battle was fierce. Strawberry's strength and Roja's are almost the same. Swordsmanship and hockey, Strawberry had the advantage over Roja. But regarding speed, Roja was faster. When Roja upgraded his soul sword, a basic agility attribute was added coupled with Roja's normal speed with Soro. Roja's speed was comparable to a vice admiral. This was a very intense battle. Roja and Strawberry were flashing continuously on the field. Even though the ground was made from special stone, cracks still appeared on the surface due to the energy attacks from them. As the fight was getting longer, Strawberry was gaining the upper hand. Even when he was slower than Roja he used his advantage in hockey and strength to dominate the fight. You're faster than me but unfortunately, my hockey and swordsmanship are stronger than yours. You can only do this. Strawberry looked at Roja and could only sigh. Roja was more excellent than he had thought. Originally when he was selected as the opponent in the 9th level, he didn't think that would get the opportunity to appear. But he didn't expect that Roja would have such outstanding strength. But now it seems that Roja is a little worse than the current 3 admirals. It seems it's difficult for him to pass the 9th level. His swordsmanship and hockey are very strong, but he won't be able to defeat Strawberry. The admirals directly passed the 9th level. But reluctantly Roja won't be able to pass. The audience from the headquarters began talking about the fight. But almost when they thought that the match was about to end, Roja's sword suddenly started to emit strange power, while Roja's eyes were flashing. With this kind of power if I don't use the soul sword ability then I might not be able to win. That being the case then. Roja murmured in his heart. He held his sword and looked toward Strawberry while smiling. Be careful. Boom. From Roja's sword, hot flames started to come out. Sword flow, torch. Hearing Roja telling him to be careful, Strawberry didn't understand his meaning. But when he saw the hot flames coming from all directions, Strawberry was shocked. He didn't know that Roja had a flame devil fruit. Which caught him a bit by surprise. In front of Roja's flames, Strawberry didn't have time to avoid. The flames' range was too big. Hula. The flames swept in all directions, and the horrible heat waves swept to the audience while the flames swallowed Strawberry. Many people knew about Roja's flames ability, such as Akiji, Kizaru, and the others. But their eyes still flashed when Roja finally used it. And those that didn't know about it had their faces change drastically. Logia flame fruit. No. No. This isn't a devil fruit. The only shock could be seen on their faces. Even Kizaru, Akiji, Garp and the others didn't know the origin of Roja's flames, so the others could only be shocked by those flames. This is a flame coming from the soul. This is an ability from another world, no one knows about it. This flame. Even Akainu who was watching in silence from the start couldn't help but reveal his shock. His eyes flashed when he saw the fire. When Roja participated in the competition, Akainu was on top of the fortress. But the flames of that time weren't as intense as the ones now. Also, he was far away last time, so he didn't get a good look at the flames. This time with a closer look, he was surprised, because he also didn't understand where did the flames come from. Sometimes he thinks that the flames were an illusion, some other times he thinks that they were real and other times he thinks that the flames were between the two. After staring for a while, Akainu narrowed his eyes. What a strange flame, but if it's only to this degree. The flames released by Roja was powerful and very hot for others. But in the eyes of Akainu who possessed the magma fruit, his flames were weak and no threat to him at all. Wouch! Wouch! Strawberry used his swords to send 2 blue sword energies. Even though the flames wouldn't defeat him, but his clothes will get burned anyway. The monstrous flames were extremely gentle on Roja's side, and even his clothes weren't burned. Strawberry rushed out from the flames while he was red with the flames wrapping around his clothes. He saw Roja was inside the flames like a fire king, the flames always making way for him whenever he moved. Roja didn't continue his attack and also did Strawberry. I didn't think you had this kind of power. I underestimated you. Strawberry felt the hotness of the flames around him and couldn't help but smile. Then he shook his head and said, you win. Before, he was facing Roja who only used swordplay and hockey. But after Roja used the flames, he obviously didn't have the strength to face him anymore. This is just a graduation exam and not a life and death battle. Since the outcome is obvious, then Strawberry will generously throw in the towel. He wasn't ready to be more embarrassed if every piece of his clothes were to be burned. Strawberry's initiative of throwing the towel was no problem of course. But the meaning of him losing is unusual. The audience was in silence. For a long time, there was only silence while the flames were being extinguished. Gradually Yamakaji recovered and slowly said while his tone was trembling. 9th level. Pass. With Yamakaji officially announcing the results, the audience minds shook. Then they started talking among themselves. On one hand, they didn't understand Roja's flame's ability. In the other hand, they saw him pass the 9th level. So far only the current 3 admirals passed the 9th level. Sure enough. His potential is great. Vice Admiral Garp's nephew is a monster. Many were looking at Roja with eyes of admiration. He is no longer just a recruit, his position is the same as theirs or maybe higher. The 3 admirals were silent as well as Garp, Sengoku, and the others beside him. No one spoke, they only looked at Roja in the field. Everyone now was looking at Roja, he passed the 9th level so now is the 10th. Will Roja continue and challenge the 10th level? Under the eyes of all those people, Roja walked toward Yamakaji and asked. Is there some water? After fighting Strawberry, Roja consumed a lot of stamina, and since his opponent will be a vice admiral now, he shouldn't make any mistake. So Roja wanted to drink a glass of water then adjust his state. Here. Yamakaji looked at Roja, poured him a glass of water. Roja took the glass and gulped it in one go. Yamakaji didn't ask Roja if he wants to continue with the 10th level, but he quietly until the 10-minute of rest to end and then said. The 10th level. No need to take it. You passed the 9th level already, and that's a great honor. Only the 3 admirals could do what you just did. No, since I already passed the 9th level. Even if it's impossible for me to pass the 10th, but I still want to try, so I won't regret it in the future. Smoker and the others were nervous watching Roja. They didn't know why Roja would choose to try the 10th level even though he knew that it's impossible to pass it. If he could pass the 10th level, he would have surpassed the 3 admirals. Although Smoker and the others know that this possibility was too low. If someone wants to surpass the 3 admirals, then it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 8 minutes. Finally, in the 9th minute, Roja returned to the field. Countless people looked at Yamakaji waiting for his announcement. The 10th level will start soon. Since the 9th level opponent is a rear admiral, then the 10th level opponent would be without a doubt a vice admiral. Roja's eyes held immense fighting spirit and excitement for this fight. There wasn't any trace of fear. This battle, he wants to fight and also win. If he didn't have at least the strength of a vice admiral, then how will he go out in the sea and become one of the strongest out there? At last Yamakaji said with a solemn voice. In the 10th level, your opponent will be Vice Admiral Momanga. With the announcement of Yamakaji, a man came down from the audience to the field. He was wearing a lavender-striped suit, dark blue shirt, his beard and hair were purple-colored. He was young compared to the other vice admirals. In the original story, Momanga was one of the top figures in the War of Marineford. He was promoted to be a vice admiral at the same year that Kizaru, Akiji, and Akainu were promoted to be admirals. He got promoted earlier than anyone, which is the proof of his strength. The 10th level opponent is Momanga. Momanga was promoted to vice admiral not long ago, but his strength isn't something other vice admirals can reach easily. The people who knew Momanga and saw him walk to the field were talking solemnly. At this time, even Kizaru, Sengoku, and the others couldn't help but discuss among themselves. The first to talk was Akiji with flashing eyes. Momanga isn't the strongest but also isn't the weakest. If he wants to beat him, then the difficulty is much higher than Strawberry. Z looked at the field then murmured, Momanga. I think even if Roja used a flame of his it will be difficult to win. That Momanga's swordplay and hockey are way above Strawberry. He is stronger than Strawberry in all aspects. I am afraid Roja won't be able to do much. By the side, Garp was unconcerned by the outcome. He is already very proud of Roja passing the 9th level. In his view, if Roja passed the 10th level or not it doesn't matter. Momanga is also a student of Z. At the same time, Roja was a student of Z, and he is also Garp's nephew. So Momanga had a very good impression of Roja. At least when he saw his performance, he was surprised several times. But like Strawberry, Momanga won't go easy on Roja. If he was to go easy on him, maybe Roja will surpass the 3 admirals and pass the 10th level, but that wouldn't be fair. Even Roja himself won't approve of such a thing. Be careful. After Yamakaji announced the beginning of the fight, Momanga put his hand on the hilt of his sword and said to Roja. The next moment Momanga drew his sword. Itoryu, Iai. This move could be called a sword skill. And a very powerful one at that. This move will be different depending on the user. Ching. Momanga's sword moved with an extremely fast speed. The sword emitted a strong suffocating green aura suddenly. Hum. A coldness could be felt from the green light that was produced by the sword. And suddenly a sword energy projected toward Roja. That strike seemed to be able to cut anything in its way. Momanga was the strongest opponent Roja faced until now. At the face of such force, Roja's battle spirit was ignited and was set on facing that strike head-on. Itoryu, Iai. Roja used the same move that Momanga used just now. Which was a basic move that most swordsmen with average skill could use. But Roja was very skilled in using it. Boom. 2 strikes collided and exploded while making 2 deep cracks on the ground. Momanga's used a single sword, his power, hockey and swordsmanship was above Strawberry. This sword strike was stronger than Strawberry's 2-handed attack. Roja's strike was weaker than Momanga's as the latter's strike continued to move towards Roja then dissipated. Very strong. This strike left a deep impression on Roja. He took a deep breath, and his whole person changed. He seemed to enter battle mode. Whiz. Roja's counterattack starts as he swings his sword and sword energy came out at the same time. The energy was coated with flames which made Roja seem like a fire lord. Momanga's face was calm as he swung his sword. Wouch. The flames and the energy were divided in 2 from the middle. Following that, Momanga used Soru and rushed toward Roja. Your strength is amazing. But unfortunately, this is the end, sorry. Momonga's eyes revealed a little regret. Roja's flame ability is powerful, but only in a prolonged fight. He already thought about this, so he chose to end the fight quickly. And now Roja seemed unable to receive his strike. Under the watchful gazes of all the audience, Momonga was about to end the fight. Some people thought that this was best for Roja. A winning streak may be good, but a setback would give him more experience. This Momonga is so much stronger than Strawberry. His swing is much stronger than Roja's. Roja's flame is powerful. But in this case, if the flames were unable to withstand Momonga's strikes and be divided all the time, they won't have any effect on the fight. Everyone looked at the confrontation between Roja and Momonga. Many looked at Roja with regret, but also they didn't feel much surprised. This is probably the end. Whether it's physical strength, speed, swordsmanship or hockey, they all were below Momonga. Even so, with this kind of ability, Roja can cope with pretty much any situation that he had to face. If Roja was to practice for a few years, upgrade his swordsmanship and hockey, then Momonga won't be his opponent anymore. It seems that the third stage of the exam, 10th level, won't be passed. After all, no one could do it. And whether an existence that could pass that level will appear in the future or not, then that is hard to tell. However, when everyone thought that the match was over, the shock overwhelmed them. At the field, Momonga, who rushed toward Roja to end the fight, was faced with a sudden swing from Roja. Getsuga. Tenshō. Roja didn't use Getsuga Tenshō until now. And faced with such a strong opponent, he didn't have a choice but to use it, or he would really be defeated this easily. Air started to ripple. The sword still didn't finish the full swing, but the pressure from the strike overwhelmed Momonga, whose face changed. What is this power? Momonga was stunned. He already judged Roja's level before, but this strike was so much stronger than the previous ones. Because he was the one who initiates the attack, it was hard for him to avoid this strike. So in the face of Roja's Getsuga Tenshō, his only choice was to face it head-on. Even if it was to use his full strength coupled with hockey, he wasn't sure if he could face that strike. Boom! The earth cracked, and deep gully was made. Under that strike, Momonga was sent flying over 10 steps. Under him the ground was broken while he tried to stop, showing how powerful that strike was. The situation was completely reversed. Before, Roja couldn't face Momonga's strike. But now, not only did Momonga fail to face Roja's strike, he even was sent flying. Even if Roja's strength was improved by 2 times, Momonga had the confidence to face it. But Getsuga Tenshō gave Roja 3 times more power than he generally used. Seeing this unexpected, almost impossible change, everyone was stunned. What happened? His hockey is the same, but the power is suddenly greater. That swing had at least double the strength of the previous ones. This simply a joke. The shock didn't stop at those marine officers, even Akiji, Kizaru and those beside them couldn't hide their shock. Why didn't we see this power before? Did he use some trick? At the field, Momonga used all his power to block Roja's strike only to be sent flying back 10 steps. His hands turned numb from the power of that strike. Momonga looked at Roja with shock as he didn't expect Roja to still hide this much power. Boom! In the next moment, Roja attacked again. With a swing of his sword, flames that were much stronger than before flew toward Momonga. The flames were a dozen of meters high. The sky was dyed red. Not good. Momonga's heart shook. He now didn't know if Roja could use that strike continuously or not, and also didn't know what kind of power it was. But it was clear that the situation was completely reversed. Wouch! Faced with those monstrous flames, Momonga could only use wind pressure to forcefully cut the flames in half. But at the moment he was about to swing his sword, a white-silver sword energy was flying toward him. It wasn't Getsuga Tenshō, but only an ordinary strike. But Momonga looked at that strike, he became frightened. As he didn't know if this was that strike or a normal one. When he tried to block the strike, another one comes flying. And wherever he went, a sword energy strike will follow. The ground was already full of cracks. Momonga didn't hesitate in the slightest, he directly dodged. The strikes were going down on the field like there is no tomorrow. Which made the field into a mess. Suddenly one strike was dodged by Momonga, then rushed toward the audience. This brat. Garp shook his head helplessly when he saw this. But no one saw the pride his eyes held when looking at Roja. Whiz. Garp jumped to the front of the audience, his fist was covered with hardening hockey as he blasted that strike, which was Getsuga Tenshō. Boom. Suddenly the ground was filled with more cracks. Like a spider web, the cracks kept on spreading in all directions. Garp. WTF. Sengoku stared at Garp. All the destruction that was caused by Roja and Momonga was like nothing. The damage caused by Garp's single punch exceeded all that. His punch was as if a bomb just fell here. Ha ha ha. Garp didn't care about the damage caused by his punches, laughed while looking at the field. Roja and Momonga's fight continued. Momonga didn't know when Roja would release his Getsuga Tenshō. So he didn't dare to easily block Roja's strikes. But while he didn't rush to attack, Roja's flames began to take effect. Even if he can use Busashoku hardening, it's impossible to get out unscathed from the fire. Under the heat of those flames, Momonga was burned, and many bruises appeared on his body. It seems that Roja completely suppressed him. If he attacks, Roja would use Getsuga Tenshō. And if he defended, he won't be able to bear the heat of the flames. And if Roja used his Getsuga Tenshō while Momonga was trying to defend against the flames, then he is done for. Although Momonga could see that Roja's sword strikes were getting weaker. But even so, he was being burned by the flames, and no matter how much his power declined, if Roja used Getsuga Tenshō, it will be hard to defend. As the fight continued, the outcome becomes evident. Roja's swordplay was weaker, but he is still strong with the flame and that weird strike. So if he just ignores his exhaustion, then he will win no matter what kind of fight it was. Momentum is a strong thing. If someone held that power, then no doubt he would win. And now Roja was in full control over it. Roja's momentum was getting stronger by the time. On the other hand, Momonga's momentum was getting weaker and weaker. Boom. 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 Sword energy constantly flew toward Momanga. The battlefield changed completely from before the fight. Smoker and the other has long retreated. They were very shocked. Roja's power now was incomparable to theirs. If they were to face Roja now they would be like ants. The gap between them kept on getting bigger. Looking at the sword energy that was wrapped by flames, they felt their hearts turn cold. Because for them, even an ordinary energy strike is enough to split them in two. They simply won't be able to withstand such power. Now, Garp, Sengoku, and the others jumped from their seats so that they can stop the energy attack that came toward the audience. This just shows how powerful Roja was now. They only know that even Momanga, a vice admiral, couldn't withstand Roja's strikes. Garp and the others didn't have any difficulty to block those attacks. The field now looked like a war site. Monstrous flames swept in all directions, and the two inside could not be seen. At last, the whistling of the sword fight is not heard anymore. And suddenly Momonga's figure was out of the flames while he didn't hold his sword anymore. He was sent flying out of the flames. And step by step Roja came out of the flames. He was like a fire lord who controlled all flames. In addition to the sound of the flames that kept on burning, there was nothing. Only silence. Despite the fight taking this long, Roja didn't seem in a sorry state. But the outcome of the battle is already very clear. Momanga could continue, but this isn't a fight to the death. Even if was serious in the fight he wouldn't continue to the death as he couldn't defeat Roja anyway. I lost. In this silence, Momanga smiled and threw the towel. He believed that Roja's strength was stronger than his and even if he was to risk everything he won't be Roja's opponent. Roja was only a recruit who applied for graduation. Looking at his appearance, Roja's age was 20 up and down. So young but still had power comparable to a marine, vice admiral. Such talent is simply incredible. Even if Akiji, Kizaru, and Akainu had just graduated, they wouldn't reach this level of strength. All the people looking had a hard to describe look on their faces. Their minds were blank as they didn't know what to say. 10th level. He passed. The 10th level, the opponent was a vice admiral. All people thought that this was an impossible task for a recruit. But this thought was broken now. He actually passed the 10th field. This is really. At this time even Kizaru's face was full of shock. By his side, Akiji couldn't find words to say. Even Akainu narrowed his eyes. He looked at Roja who was like a fire lord and suddenly thought flashed in his mind. He didn't know why but he just thought of monkey.d.dragon. The narrowed eyes suddenly turned cold. Akainu pursued absolute justice. When he thought about Garp's son, Dragon, who joined the revolutionary army and turned into the world's most dangerous criminal, he couldn't help but reveal hatred in his eyes. In the war, Akainu never called Luffy Garp's grandson, but he called him Dragon's son. Because one name means the grandson of the marine hero while the other means the son of the leader of the revolutionary army. With this talent, if he dares to do anything like Dragon. While thinking Akainu's eyes turned colder as he took a deep breath. That kind of thing. I will not allow it. Monkey.d.Roja, graduation exam 3rd stage, 10th level. Passed. Yamakaji finally recovered from his shock. His tone was trembling. Because after reading Roja's information, he knew that Roja was less than 20. Being less than 20 with this kind of power, his talent was just too shocking. Everyone knows that Momanga has gone all out in this fight. But he still lost against Roja. This was unbelievable, but this turned into a fact now. Roja passed the 10th level which he also got a perfect score in the 3rd stage of the exam. The 3rd stage had a total of 10 stage. If one passed the 6th it means he's qualified to graduate, the 7th is a good score, the 8th is excellent as well as the 9th and finally passing then the 10th level will grant a perfect score. The 1st stage of the exam, perfect score. The 2nd stage of the exam, perfect score. The 3rd stage of the exam, perfect score. This is a first since the establishment of the 3 stages of the exam. Good, very good. Sengoku couldn't restrain his emotion anymore as he looked at Garp and said, Garp, you really have a good nephew. Ha 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 ha. Garp stood at the ruins of the field. He didn't speak, he just grinned while looking very happy and proud of Roja. Roja put the sword into his scabbard and with this move, the flames gradually extinguished. At the same time, the ground began to turn visible. The field was filled with sword marks which could be seen with a glance. Past the 10th level. Even with his opponent being a vice admiral. Roja's strength improved to such extent. Smoker and the others still couldn't believe what just happened. They just didn't know what they should feel now. This was a scene that was hard to believe even if you witnessed it yourself. Yamakaji who was responsible for writing the score for the exam gave Roja the score he deserved. Without any doubt, Roja's score would be perfect. The word perfect was added in front of Roja's name. Then Yamakaji accompanied Roja and the other graduate with Sengoku to decide the rank that every graduate will receive based on his score in the 3 stages of the exam. Sengoku took the paper from Yamakaji's hands then took a deep breath to calm down. He wasn't ready to return to the office, but he still could do it here. Shuzo asterisk, your 1st stage score is good, your 2nd stage score is qualified, and the 3rd stage score is also qualified, you passed the graduation assessment. Your rank will be a lieutenant commander. Asterisk, note, Shuzo appeared in the EP 575 from One Piece. Sengoku looked at the information then gave a rank to Shuzo and by his side Yamakaji directly recorded it down. Yamakaji was eager to know what rank would Roja receive. Sengoku just looked at the information and directly knew what rank should be assigned. Smoker, the score of the 1st stage is excellent, the score for the 2nd stage is good. When Sengoku finished reading the information, he thought for a little bit and seemed to hesitate to give Smoker the rank of captain, but he chose it at the end. After finishing receiving his rank, Smoker was guided by some marines to receive his uniform. And at last, is Roja's turn. Looking at Roja's papers, Sengoku could see the 3 red, perfect words from the 3 stages. Sengoku hesitated for a bit. In the elite camp, the best rank that could be granted is captain. In the history, only 3 were directly assigned as rear admirals just after graduating. Those, of course, are the 3 admirals. Because they had 2 perfect scores and passed through the 9th level of the 3rd stage of the exam. Roja had 3 perfect scores, so he meets the condition for the special promotion. But what kind of rank should he assign to him? This is very difficult to decide. Roja defeated Momonga, which was a vice admiral. So there is no doubt that he got the strength to be a vice admiral too. But Roja was still young, so directly promoting him to a vice admiral is hard. Yamakaji, what rank should we assign to Roja? Sengoku pondered for a while, then directly asked Yamakaji, who was beside him. This. Yamakaji had an indecisive expression, as Roja's situation was unusual. Because he is the first to get this kind of score. Yamakaji didn't know how to decide. Hesitating for a while, Yamakaji turned to Sengoku and said, Roja defeated Momonga. His strength isn't a problem, so directly promoting him into a vice admiral should be possible. This time, not only Yamakaji talked, even the vice admirals around started talking. As a vice admiral, even if his strength is sufficient, but he is still too young. No, strength is what's important when facing a pirate, his age doesn't have anything to do with it. Since Roja could win against Momonga, then he is more than enough to be a vice admiral. Their opinions were different. The special promotion wasn't a trivial matter for the headquarters. Even Sengoku couldn't decide easily. Although in the original story, Fujitora and Ryūjin did receive the special promotion to directly reach the rank of an admiral. But that time the headquarters was empty, they needed strong people to fill those important roles. But now those positions are already full. And there are many vice admirals too. Since he broke the record and scored 3 perfects, maybe you can give him a chance, Z, who standing by the side suddenly said. Z's words weighed more than anyone here. Although Garp didn't talk, Sengoku already knew that he wants his nephew to directly have an important rank on the marine. Taking into account those two, Sengoku gradually decided. At the same time, on the other side of Sengoku, a low voice passed over. No. This was the one who didn't speak from the beginning to the end of the 3rd stage, Marine Admiral Akainu. Akainu looked at Roja, then directed his gaze at Sengoku. With a low tone he said, the vice admiral position isn't a trifling matter, it's not such an easy position to grant. Fleet Admiral couldn't have forgotten about Dragon's case, right? As Akainu mentioned Dragon, the atmosphere in the room turned heavy. Obviously, it's not a good topic to mention now. On the other side, Garp smiled stiffly while his expression sunk. Monkey.D. Dragon, he is Garp's son and Roja's cousin. Now he is the most wanted criminal and the first person who want to overthrow the government. Because Garp was the marine hero, the government issued strict order to not disclose this information to anyone. Even in the marine, only those high-ranked officers would know this. But Roja knew about this matter because of his Garp's nephew, and also he was the center of this matter now. Sengoku was silent for a while. All the people present looked at Garp and Akainu. Some people couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Between two gods, it's better to stay silent. In that case, then I grant Roja the rank of Rear Admiral. Sengoku, after staying silent for a while, rejected his own idea. Although he reduced the rank by 1, but he gave this rank to Akainu, Kizaru and Akiji before, so there is no problem. Rear Admiral. Akainu heard Sengoku and frowned. In his view, Roja was an unstable factor. If he did something wrong, he will cause the marine a big disaster. In particular, Roja himself was Garp's nephew. And if he did something, then the reputation of the marine will be implicated. Fleet Admiral, this is an unstable factor. Enough, Sakazuki. Garp directly shouted at Akainu while looking at him coldly. Akainu's real name is Sakazuki and Akainu is only a code used by the marine. Akiji's name is Kazan and Kizaru's name is Borsalino. Only high-level marine call them by the names. Akainu's words halted, then he looked at Garp indifferently. Although Garp was the marine hero, he was too impulsive, he even sometimes ignored the world government orders. And Akainu didn't like that. Not to mention, Dragon was Garp's son, but he went to the Revolutionary Army and became the world top criminal, which is a great irony to the hero title. Garp was really angry this time. But he had nothing to do about the things concerning Dragon. As that was a stain in his career as a marine. Akiji and Kizaru didn't talk. Z frowned, while Sengoku looked at Garp and Akainu as a headache. At this time, a voice suddenly came. That voice was Roja's. Roja didn't know what to say to Garp when he looked at him, but when he looked at Akainu he chuckled. Haha. This chuckle when fell on the ears of the people here, they felt something strange but couldn't tell what was it. All the people turned to look at Roja. The original extremely depressing atmosphere suddenly broke. And turned into a strange atmosphere. Oh. Akainu looked at Roja and instinctively felt that Roja's tone wasn't good. So his eyes turned cold. At this time Roja turned his body and directly walked away. From the beginning to the end he didn't say a word. It seemed that the words were included into that chuckle. To Roja, Dragon is Dragon, and he was himself. Whether he was a marine, a pirate, or a Revolutionary Army member, and even if he wasn't one of the three, he didn't care about the position because he knows how strong he really is. But to Akainu's statement, Roja changed his mind. Since Akainu put it as if Roja gonna betray the marine, so Roja will replace Akainu as an admiral. In the marine headquarters, there were 2 ways to get into the admiral position. The first one, that the position doesn't have anyone at the time, with that the government will appoint someone to that position. And the second is to gather 200,000 military exploits and choose to compete against an admiral for his position. And if you defeat him you will get it. The defeated will be replaced and will be put into a stuffed position of the headquarters. In another world he will be on the cold bench with the only choice is to retire. Don't think that you can always be an admiral, it won't take long, Akainu. Roja smiled and continued to walk without turning away. After Roja was far away. Grant Roja the rank of Rear Admiral, this decision is set and won't change. Sengoku looked at the back of Roja, he took a deep breath, then looked at Garp and Akainu and turned away. Akainu frowned, but he didn't go on. Although he was still dissatisfied with that decision, he knew from the tone of Sengoku that this wasn't up for discussion anymore. As for Roja's hostile attitude toward him, he didn't care. Roja's talent is really high and he seems to have potential to go beyond the rank of an admiral. But he was still far from it, and also unfortunately for him, his ability is flames. In Akainu's view, although Roja's flames are strange, but compared to his magma, he wasn't a threat to him at all, and the only threat is his sword. But he was a marine admiral, which is the strongest in the entire headquarters. He was very clear about how strong he was. He also had great self-confidence. If Roja was Mihawk, that would be another thing. If Roja wanted to take him down, that would not be easy. Or else how can he be a marine admiral? In the living room of Roja's home. Roja was sitting on the sofa and leaning against its soft pad. Suddenly, the door was opened. Roja looked slightly over to the side and said, "You're back." "Yeah." Garp said with a low tone, it seems like he's still in a bad mood. Roja looked at Garp's appearance and couldn't help but laugh. "You look like you just got beaten, not the image of the usual Uncle Garp." Roja seemed like he didn't care about the position of a rear admiral of a vice admiral. Garp didn't accept this lightly. Roja's joking tone made Garp's mood get better. He looked at Roja and smiled, "Brat." He shook his head and said with a heavy tone, "Did I tell you about it? The thing about dragon. Did you forget? You even asked me what to do." Roja rolled his eyes. He began to think that Garp was suffering from amnesia. Not only did he mention dragon several times, he even would ask what to do sometimes. "I wanted to teach that boy and make him a good marine. But who knew that he will turn into such a big shot?" He said this while grasping his hair and screaming. On Roja's head black line formed one after the other. Garp didn't care about the impact that dragon caused in the world. He doesn't. To be precise, Garp didn't care about that. The only thing he cared about now was that dragon affected the rank of Roja. Everyone can think what they want. I will still get stronger and that a kind of guy. I will just beat him one day. Roja clenched his fist. What? Garp grabbed his hair and thought for a while. Then he said, "So you want to get stronger and beat him up?" "Yes, I will." Roja nodded his head. Although he was still weaker than Akainu, he will get more powerful as he upgrades the soul sword. If he reached the 5th stage he will open Yamamoto's Shirkai. The magma against the sun's surface temperature, which is stronger? This question is very interesting. Roja himself would like to know the answer. If there was someone listening to the conversation between Roja and Garp, they would spurt blood over 3 meters away. Ah, right. Seeing Roja ready to return to his room, Garp suddenly had a though and looked deeply at Roja. What? Garp having this look was rare, so Roja paused and blinked at him. Well, nothing. Garp with deep eyes staring at Roja then suddenly shook his head and said, "It seems that you have a lot of secrets that I don't know of. But since you don't want to tell me, there should be a reason. So I won't ask." Although Garp seemed like a muscle brain, that doesn't mean that he is stupid. On the contrary, when he chases Roja he proved how smart he was. Roja remained silent for a moment, then he went back into his room. Roja rarely conceals anything from Garp. Even his idea about Akainu, he directly said it. Garp won't cause him any harm. Garp cherishes his family, and as long as Roja was recognized as family, then that's the important thing. Marine Headquarter Harbor. A medium-sized warship docked. Some marine officers were waiting on the deck. Their task was to send a batch of materials to the West Blue. Who did you say was the newly appointed leader of the first branch? How can I know that? Several captains were talking to each other. The delivery task isn't a dangerous task, as the probability of danger was very low. At this time a figure appeared and came over to the warship. As the figure came closer and closer, they saw that this figure was wearing the Rear Admiral uniform. It to be him. The officers of the Marine made an awe-inspiring queue to meet their new leader. Just when that figure boarded the warship, those captains exposed a stunned look. Because the one wearing the Rear Admiral uniform was really young. It seemed like he has yet to pass 20 years. This was their first time seeing a Rear Admiral this young. This person was naturally Roja. Originally with the rank of a Rear Admiral, Roja would sit on standby on the headquarters. But an accident occurred the past few days. The first branch's Rear Admiral was defeated by a pirate group. The West Blue wasn't the Grand Line, so a pirate defeating a Rear Admiral was rare. The West Blue was one of the weakest seas and it was impossible for the strongest pirate there to win against a Rear Admiral. A Rear Admiral from a branch can't be compared with a Rear Admiral from the headquarters. Because of this, the Gecko Pirate Group captain's reward increased from 15 million berry to 70 million berry. Which made his bounty one of the highest in the West Blue. There is no specific information. They didn't know if the Gecko Pirates were still there or did they enter the Grand Line. Since they could kill Marine officer, then the normal officers won't be able to deal with them. The West Blue is too large. Whether they will are still there or not is unknown. And as a result, the Marine headquarters appointed Roja as a temporary leader to the first branch of the West Blue. Whether strength or intelligence, Roja was undoubtedly the most appropriate one to take over. And if Roja did a good job there and was promoted to a vice admiral I would be for the best. Roja didn't refuse this appointment. In some aspect, he held similar aspect as Garp. He didn't like to be bound to the rules. And compared to staying in the headquarters or going out to the sea, he would choose freedom. Is the material ready? Roja swept a glance at the captains while asking. They captains, but Roja the leader was so young which made them surprised. After hearing Roja's question, they looked at each other, their eyes revealing how strange were they feeling now. After a little bit, someone nodded toward Roja. Everything is ready, we're ready to set sail. Let's set off then. Roja issued a direct order, then he turned and entered his cabin. After he left, the captains were still stunned. Roja's deeds have spread quickly among the high-ranked marine. But these captains didn't hear about it, they didn't know about Roja. A young rear admiral, I never heard of anything like this. I am not feeling too good now. The first branch of the West Blue is close to the headquarter and to the Grand Line, so this young rear admiral will serve as the base's leader. Really? Several captains looked at each other, but they were not qualified to question the headquarters orders. So they moved the ship toward the West Blue. In the warship highest level cabin, which is Roja's room, who wasn't a recruit anymore. Now he is this warship commander. The distance to the entrance of the West Blue's first branch is too long. We would need to cross half the world to get there. I can't practice in the warship. Roja was sitting on a wooden chair while his hands were behind his head. With a thought, the property bar appeared before Roja. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul +9. Attribute, Attack Power +280, Power +90, Agility +90. Special attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release an arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 117/210. At first the energy increased really fast. But now it's getting slower and slower. Roja looked at the property bar and smiled, then said to himself, but it won't take too long. When he reached the fourth stage, Roja was looking forward to what kind of special attribute would he get. After a while, he put aside the ideas about the soul sword and took a look at the piece of information before him. Gecko Pirates. This information is about the person who defeated the first branch's rear admiral. After a while, Roja shook his head after placing the papers on the desk. If I were to encounter him, it will be easy to deal with him. 70 million berry reward would get me 7,000 points. If he wants to replace Akainu and get his rank, then he will need to accumulate 200,000 points to issue the challenge. Catching a pirate with 10 million's bounty will get me 1,000 points. Now I don't have any point, so I need to capture 200 pirate with a bounty of 10 million. The number is really too much. However, if the bounty of the pirate is 1 billion, I only need to catch 2. Roja thought a little, then couldn't help reveal a smile. The reward of 1 billion berries. Only the Yonko have that kind of bounty. The headquarter won't find it easy to catch those pirates or whoever is in their crew. Because if the marine was to catch one, then it equivalent to announcing war against the Yonko. Other than catching pirates, if you found a devil fruit or a precious item, then you can also get a point from them. This time Roja looked at another piece of information. The information inside it is something even a captain can get his hand on. This was the record of all the devil fruit and how much points will they give when found. Roja wasn't interested in it, but he still looked at it. The only thing Roja was interested in is to get a 100,000 point to exchange it with, a Seijo o Wazamono sword. The world only has 12 sword of a kind. Before, Roja only knew about Mihawk sword Yoru and Shodai Kitetsu. The others' whereabouts isn't clear. And now Roja found one in the marine headquarters. 100,000 point isn't a small number. A good sword really isn't cheap. Even a powerful devil fruit has the same price. He will wait until he reaches the base in the West Blue, then he will use the information agencies there to look for information about the swords. The warship was moving at full speed after leaving the headquarter. The warship speed was really fast. Using both sails and turbo devices, the speed was higher than any other normal ship. The warship quickly entered onto the windless sea. During this time this ship's commander didn't show up. Although the marines didn't approve of Roja in their heart, they still couldn't go against his orders. After entering the windless sea, all the marines present were very nervous. This kind of delivery task didn't hold any danger. Even if they encounter pirates, they will escape and won't take the initiative to attack a marine warship. The only danger is on the windless sea. If they have bad luck, then they will accidentally pass by a sea king. With no wind here, they won't be able to escape at all. This is the third time for them passing through here. The first time they didn't encounter any sea king. The second one they did encounter one, but it didn't attack them. And now it's the third time. They didn't know if they were lucky or not this time. Although the warship bottom was made with kairoseki, this didn't mean all of it was made of kairoseki. This is absurd. Beside the warship, almost over the top of it, a sea king appeared. On the deck, all the captains' faces turned green while staring at it. They didn't take this into account. In the absence of the wind, encountering a sea king is normal. Most of the times, it will appear far away from the warship. They would avoid it and the sea king would be too lazy to catch up to them. But this time it directly came from under them. So they can't avoid it. Unless the sea king is blind, otherwise, how can it ignore such an easy prey just beside it? The sea king suddenly appeared beside the warship. The shock caused by its appearance made the ship sway. All the marine moved to the deck directly. Then their expressions suddenly stiffened. Cold sweat dyed their back and horror was evident on their faces. This is bad. Really bad. In the warship, many people made this kind of trip before. It's not their first time in the windless sea, but facing such a situation was a first for them. The appearance of the sea king made them turn pale. If they encountered a small sea king, then would have just used the warship weapons. If they saw a large or a giant one, they would directly flee. The one they just encountered was a medium-sized sea king about the same size of the warship. It's hard to escape a sea king, especially when they had their eyes on the ship. Even if they use their turbo to its fullest power, they won't be able to move faster than a sea king. All the people present on the ship, including the captains, couldn't help but turn stiff in this situation. Their forehead overflowed with cold sweat while they didn't dare move even a little. No wind, the sea was calm. The atmosphere was solidified. The warship was moving forward while the head of the sea king was moving along with it. No one dared to move, scared that the sea king will see them. They prayed so it will not attack them. But unfortunately, the sea king wasn't blind. The reason for the emergence of the sea king wasn't to find a warship, but when it did find one, it was too shocked and stopped moving out of fear. Why did it find a monster when it just went out of water? The Sea King was frightened. After some time it reacted instinctively and attacked the warship. It used the tens of meter-long tentacles to strike fiercely at the ship. Before the tentacle even reaches them, the wind pressure coming from them was suffocating, the overwhelming power comes crashing at them. In the face of such strike, the crowd holding sword and guns couldn't move. They were numb due to fear. Their hearts were cold and desperate as they watched the huge tentacles coming on them. However, the next moment the tentacles didn't fall on the warship. If the ship was to break, it may turn into a really troublesome situation. Roja appeared out of nowhere, he was standing in the air. While his leg was covered by Busashoku Haki, he directly kicked the Sea King's huge tentacles. As for the air pressure, it disappeared in the next moment. Boom! At the time when the two sides collided, they generated a terrifying wave of the sea. The Sea King roared. It seems that the tentacle that could destroy the warship was blocked and even sent back with a kick from Roja, who had such a small body. Roja was even afraid to do his daily practice, he feared that he will destroy the warship if he used too much power. And now a Sea King came to destroy it, Roja simply couldn't tolerate this. He was really upset. After kicking the tentacle of the Sea King, Roja didn't stop there, he grabbed his sword and pulled it out, then waved at the Sea King. Getsuga Tenshō. Roja didn't want to play around with it, so he directly used Getsuga Tenshō. Instantly a red crescent-shaped sword energy shot toward the Sea King. The Sea King's skin was tough but under Roja's strike, it was as fragile as paper. The strike directly passed through the Sea King, while the Sea King couldn't utter a sound. Silence. A blood's line appeared on the body of the Sea King. It stretched for tens of meters. Crash. The next moment, strange blue blood from the Sea King dyed the sea. The warship was in silence. It didn't take that long, from the appearance of Roja until the defeat of the Sea King. Bang! Suddenly someone's sword fell on the deck. After that, all the people on the warship started buzzing. They were too shocked by what they just witnessed. Strong. Too strong. No one among them has ever seen such a scene before. The thing Roja did, kicking the tentacles, then killing the Sea King with one sword strike was like a dream for ordinary officers like them. Roja put back his Hano no Suki in his scabbard. And the uneasy mood dissipated. Now even I can one-shot a Sea King. A long time ago, in the first mission in the elite camp, Z used 2 fists to crash 2 large Sea Kings. That time he could only watch, but now his turn comes. One of the reasons that he only wanted to go out to the sea only when he had the strength of a vice admiral is because of those Sea Kings. If he couldn't handle them and encountered one in his journey, he would be doomed. Blue blood, mostly this thing can't be eaten. Roja looked at the changing color of the sea and couldn't help but shook his head. Then suddenly horror struck him. How can he think to eat those things? Did he become like Luffy and could only think about food? This is a terrible thing really. Without a second though Roja started to reflect on his though while leaving a sentence to those marine. And then he returned to his cabin. After a while from Roja's departure, the marine on the warship suddenly woke up. Someone suddenly leaned on the railing to see the blue-dyed sea. Then he looked at the floating Sea King which didn't move. The eyes still held some shock. And they couldn't help but subconsciously murmur. What is that power? Is this Rear Admiral Roja's strength? That scene was still repeating on their brain. Their eyes had a deep sense of awe. They no longer looked at Roja as a young and inexperienced marine. Now they admired and feared him. He is so young, but he has so much strength. Probably he is stronger than we think. When someone said this, the mind of all the people present buzzed. They could only recover from the shock after a long time. This close encounter of a Sea King was just a chance accident. From here on probably they won't encounter other Sea Kings anymore. They occasionally come across some large group of Sea King from the distance. So they directly avoid them. The location of the first branch of the West Blue is near the entrance of the Grand Line. And from the headquarter to the first branch is undoubtedly long. Even if the warship moved at full speed I will still take a long time. And they need to resupply from the islands they pass by. There are many islands in the West Blue. In this world, the islands are divided into 3 sizes. Small, medium and large islands. With a perfect ecosystem, there was no shortage of water or food. People in the small islands will form a small community and build a village. While the medium-sized ones got a few towns at least and in the center, there would generally be a large town. As for the large island, they will form a country, such as Alabasta, or Dressrosa. And those kinds of places will not have any marine stationed as to not cause any power dispute. In the medium-sized islands, there will be a small marine division, with the leader being a commodore. As for the base that Roja will manage, it is built on a small island. The whole island is the base and its jurisdiction fall on the dozen nearby small and medium-sized islands. The whole world obviously has a complete system. Roja knew of this generally from his past life. And after living in this world, he was more clear about everything. The marine took control of every area in the world. But the Grand Line is the only exception. In the Grand Line, especially the New World, the Yonko were the one in control. The marine knew about them but they don't want to easily enter a conflict with them. Roja was sitting in his cabin, he was wielding his sword and trying to get a deeper understanding of the way of the sword while also practicing haki. Suddenly Roja's eyes opened. And at the same time, a knock comes from the door. Come in. Roja put away his sword and stood up. The next moment a marine captain walked in the room to report. Reporting to the leader, we just received information, that in the island of Chronuo, there are 2 forces fighting, one is a pirate and the other is bandit group. Chronuo Island is a medium-sized island. I see. Hearing the report Roja nodded with a placid expression. On their way, they can receive a lot of information about pirates, but because the warship was on delivery task, he can ignore the pirates. And because Roja was bored, when he received the information about the pirate, he didn't ignore it but chose to suppress the pirates. Even if the reward is only between 1 to 10,000, it's better than nothing. Seeing Roja's attitude, the captain understood Roja's meaning. Since he didn't say avoid them, then that means we'll directly suppress them. After seeing Roja's strength, the marine wasn't afraid of going against any pirate. They didn't hold any doubt about Roja's strength anymore. Roja alone can catch most pirates in West Blue. Even if he fights 10 alone, he could win. The captain saluted Roja respectfully, then directly turned to leave Roja's room. Kronuo Island. This was a medium-sized island. There were about 10 small towns and a big one in the center. But now smoke was coming out of the town which filled the sky. The two forces were fighting, which turned the town into a battlefield. The pirates numbered over 1,000 people and the other group had only a few number. But those few were stronger than those ordinary pirates, which made the situation really chaotic. Damn, we need to let those pirates know our strength. Even if we provoke their leader, we must kill them. The reason for the fight is unknown. Now you can only see the people from both sides red-eyed and only want to kill each other. In a separate street, 7 to 8 pirates surrounded a girl. All of them had a vicious expression. This woman is also one of the pirates, get rid of her. Someone shouted this, while all the others were holding their weapon and rushed toward her. However, facing this many pirates, the girl's eyes were calm, as she lifted 2 arms toward her chest. Trying to fleur. Hung. Kacha. Those who rushed at her, suddenly grew a pair of arms that twisted their necks. After twisting, the neck broke with a kacha sound, then all the pirates fell to the ground. The situation turned big, this no good, the marine will come sooner or later, I better leave. The black-haired girl looked calmly, and after pondering for a moment she turned around to leave. On the sea, Roja was in the warship. After accelerating, the warship now docked at a small port in Kronuo Island. Whiz. Roja was on the deck, and the next moment his figure flashed, suddenly he was on the island. His uniform was gently fluttering in the wind. Behind Roja, the captains were leading the marine while maintaining their formation. Now all of them were on the island now. After several fights with the pirates, the marine didn't receive any casualties. All the fights were fought by Roja. They feared Roja but also held him in reverence. They were following Roja, and even when enemies were in front of them, they feared nothing. Their expressions were calm. Roja's figure wasn't huge, back looking at his back, they felt that nothing can stop them. Roja's figure made their heart at ease. You all just need to do as you practiced, understand? Roja continued to walk without looking back while he faintly said. Before on his mission and on the exam, he always fought alone. He could use his flames to wipe out everyone in front of him. Roja didn't need any assistance. Not to mention those pirate, even if all the captain with him were to fight him together, it wasn't considered as a fight for him. Whiz. Roja's voice suddenly dissipated. In the next moment, Roja accelerated and quickly disappeared. Like before, wait for the flames to extinguish before capturing whoever is still alive. After Roja left, the captain was the one in charge. He turned and instructed his men before walking forward. Central town. After going through a few towns, Roja finally reached the central town. The mess should have started from here. Roja shook his head, as he was walking. He was fighting both sides. This wasn't considered as fighting but still better than nothing. But while Roja was walking in the central town, suddenly a person appeared in his field of view. The central town was in chaos. Some people were fleeing but there was a person that looked really calm. Roja was surprised to this person here. It was a girl with black hair. She was wearing a leather cap, blocking the upper half of her face. And when she saw Roja, which was wearing a marine uniform, her movement suddenly halted. This is really surprising. Roja looked at the girl and couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Marine. That girl saw Roja and after pausing for a bit, without the slightest hesitation, she turned around to escape. But Roja didn't wait for her to enter another street. His figure blurred like a ghost as he unexpectedly appeared before her. He leaned against a wall while taking a good look at her. The girl's figure suddenly turned stiff and stopped in place. Roja looked at her and chuckled, then he said, "You're a little too anxious." Devil's child, Nico Robin. This black-haired girl was indeed Nico Robin. Hearing Roja directly calling her name, her forehead overflowed with cold sweat. But on the surface, she was still calm. She took a deep breath and without any hesitation, without speaking, she lifted her hand gently to her chest. Trying to fleur. 4 pairs of arms grew on Roja's body and tried to twist his neck. The force of those arms can't bend Roja's body. His body was harder than steel on general. Hey, that's uncomfortable. If you want to give me a pinch, then I don't mind. Roja ignored the arms that tried to break his neck as he couched on his leg. When did such a strong guy appear on the West Blue? Looking at this scene made Nico Robin heart turn cold. That it was her bad luck to meet such a strong marine. She wasn't his opponent. She was thinking of a way to get out of here. But with Roja's speed and him ignoring her attack, she knew that she wouldn't be able to escape. How can she escape now? Robin couldn't find a strategy, her heart sunk. From the side of the street 87 to 8 pirates suddenly emerged. The pirates rushed over when they saw Roja and Robin. Compared to Robin, Roja was wearing the marine uniform of the rear admiral. They instantly stopped. Bad. The marine had come. His uniform is that of strong a marine. The pupils of those pirates suddenly shrunk. Let's get rid of that guy. One of them said this, and all of them held their weapons and wanted to gang up on Roja. A good chance. Seeing this, Robin wanted to continue her escape. But the next moment, she stopped. The pirates were solidified in there. And couldn't move. Wouch. Roja pulled his sword while still standing in his place and waved. A 100-meter crack suddenly appeared at the end of the street. And the pirates were now lying on the ground. All of this took a blink of an eye's time to happen. Seeing this, Robin's forehead overflowed with cold sweat. Although she could barely keep calm, she couldn't hide the change on her face. Such a terrifying strength. Who is this person? Now Robin gave up the idea of escape. Because she knew in front of this strength there was no chance. Am I still going to get caught? Robin felt bitter. 10 years ago her hometown Ohara was destroyed because they could read the forbidden poneglyphs. They also knew about the history of the world government, so to cover that up they used the Buster Call to destroy Ohara completely. When she was 8 years old, if not for Akiji letting her go, then she would have died that day. Then as the only survivor of Ohara, she was labeled as the Devil's Child and her bounty was 79 million berry when she only was 8 years old. After that, she hid in the underground world until today. It seems she can't get away from her fate. The atmosphere lightened on the street. Chan. Roja put back the sword into its scabbard and watched Robin, slightly interested. Robin didn't move, Roja didn't move too. After a moment, Roja said to Robin lightly while he laughed, "Why are you still here?" Huh. Robin was lost and didn't want to resist anymore, and when she heard Roja's word, she looked at him in dismay. She didn't know how to react to his words. Roja smiled at her and said, "What, you really want me to catch you?" "You." Robin was stunned. Apparently, she didn't expect Roja to release her. "I am not interested in helping the world government to do anything." Roja shrugged then continued, "Of course, if you want to be caught then I don't really mind taking you." Roja wasn't interested about Ohara or the Buster Call event, and he won't take the initiative to help the world government. He will catch whoever he wants and he will let go whoever he wants. Hearing Roja say such things, Robin was stunned for a good while, then she looked at Roja with her pretty eyes which flashed with light. Then she didn't hesitate and turned away to leave. She certainly didn't want to get caught. Akiji had let her go once and now Roja did the same thing. She didn't know why they did that, but that didn't matter now since she is not caught, that's what matters. Speaking of that Marine, this is her first time seeing him. After gradually getting away from the central town, Robin slowed her pace. Then she turned to the other direction and headed to a small town. Then after recalling what just happened she couldn't help but burst into tears and murmured. So young but he has such strength, he also doesn't care about the world government. What are those people? A 79 million berry bounty is 7,200 points if I had caught her, that is. Well, I can probably get that much by catching a few pirates. Roja looked at the direction from where Robin left while shaking his head. After a little bit, he couldn't help but laugh. The first time he went to the West Blue and he already met with Robin. It seems his trip here won't be boring. Then Roja's expression turned cold suddenly, he walked to the central town and then all you could hear is a wave of roars, accompanied by the collapse of a building. Then everything returns to being calm. Hundreds of people were caught from the pirates as well as the other group. In the West Blue, there aren't that many people who could be Roja's opponent. The warship finished resupplying and then left the island toward the Marines' first base in the West Blue. The Marines' first base. During this time the whole base had a dull atmosphere. Because they were fooled by a bunch of pirates which made the first base reputation take a huge hit and made them a laughingstock in front of the other bases. In this case, no one in the first base was happy. Today's atmosphere and yesterday are different. Because today the first base received information that their new boss is about to arrive, which made the atmosphere very tense. They didn't know anything about the new leader. Their hearts were disturbed. They didn't know if the new leader was strong or was he hot-tempered. They didn't know anything. In the face of an unknown leader, their heart couldn't calm down. At the port of the base, the Marines of the first base had assembled. They were ready to meet their new leader. Rear Admiral Taika, the new leader should be strong. A captain looked at the sea and could not help but ask the person beside him. The first base had a rear admiral, but he wasn't as strong as a rear admiral from the headquarters. They maybe have the same title, but actually, there is a huge difference. The new leader is rear admiral from the headquarters who was transferred here. So he should be really strong. Taika said while his tone was really low. He certainly wasn't happy because he still couldn't get promoted to be the new leader. I hope the new leader can help revive the reputation of our first base this time. Our reputation fell to the bottom. Another captain looked at the sea while slightly looking forward to meeting the new leader. And at this time, everyone's eyes directed to the sea, when someone said, "Look, they came." Hearing this, everyone immediately looked at the direction that the one who talked is looking at. A vague outline appeared. Gradually the blurred silhouette becomes a shadow and then this shadow become clear, the warship was slowly coming closer. The warship arrived at the base and slowly docked on the shore. The first one to go down from the warship was the one wearing the rear admiral uniform, Roja. When the people of the first base looked at the appearance of Roja they couldn't help but open their mouth. They were stunned when they saw the rear admiral. Roja was too young, he looked less than 20 years old. If not for him wearing the rear admiral's uniform, they wouldn't believe that he is a rear admiral. The first base's rear admiral is close to his 40s. It is you, the one that the department has sent. Although he's young, since he is wearing the rear admiral uniform then there is no doubt about his identity. But the base's rear admiral still couldn't help but ask. Roja looked at him and the other soldier beside him and said, "If the headquarters didn't send in another person, then it should be me." Taika found it hard to disguise his surprise, he took his time before reacting and giving Roja the report. The first base of the West Blue, Rear Admiral, Commodore, 6 captains, are all present, this is the report, please read it. After the other party's voice fell, all the people on the base saluted Roja. The soldiers were behind so they didn't see Roja's appearance, but the Commodore and the captain could see him clearly. Although they saluted him, their expression of surprise couldn't be more clear. Apparently, they really didn't expect the leader sent from the headquarters to be this young. So young that he looks like a recruit. It's all right. Roja glanced and nodded slightly. It seems that he didn't need to clean the first base as the quality is pretty good. West Blue First Base Port. A team of Marine was moving the firearms from the warship. Roja's warship had 2 tasks, 1 transporting goods and 2 catching pirates. 2 soldiers carried the last box from the warship, with that the team finished his work and made the report to the captain. Everything has been transported. Okay, check it again and then move it into the base. A captain from the first base looked at the captains and other officers from the warship then said, "You worked hard. You are polite, this was only a delivery task and if it wasn't for Rear Admiral Roja, then we wouldn't able to do anything." A captain of the ship said this to the ones from the base with a smile. Rear Admiral Roja. After hearing how that captain was referring to Roja, most officers couldn't help but glance at him. After a pause, someone asked with a little doubt, the young leader Roja. Is he that strong? Roja's identity as Garp's nephew was really troubling for the Marine. Garp has beaten almost all the pirates from the West Blue, and all pirates here had a grudge with him. And if Roja was known as Garp's nephew then those grudges will turn toward him. So the information about him being Garp's nephew was blocked by the Marine, and that to protect the still young Roja. Very strong. The one talking revealed an expression of admiration toward Roja and said, "Do not use age to measure the strength of Rear Admiral Roja." Seeing how that officer had serious expression, all the others present had their heart calmed down a bit. They didn't hold much hope when they saw how young Roja was. But some people were still holding their doubts. After all, Roja wasn't tall and his body looked like the body of an ordinary person. Besides he looks very young, how can someone like that be as strong as they say? After delivering the arms and other things to the first base the warship resupplied and disappeared into the vast sea. The highest floor of the first base. Roja was walking and leading the way was the rear admiral of this base. They walked down the corridor until they reached the door of an office. "Here is your office, mine is on the opposite side. If there is anything don't hesitate to call me." Taika's attitude toward Roja wasn't any bit salty or indifferent but also no enthusiastic. Roja was so young which gave him an indescribable feeling. When he talked to Roja, his tone was neither overbearing nor humble, which he thinks is already a good attitude toward the young Roja. "Okay, you can go now." Roja didn't care about the other party's attitude, after all he's new in here and didn't have any reputation. Roja pushed the door and went inside his office. The office was clean, although it wasn't big, it still had a sofa and other things for comfort. There is a small balcony. In general, the environment was much better than the warship's cabin. Seeing Roja entering his office, Taika calmly turned around and also went to his own. Only Roja and Taika had separate offices, 2 people per office for the commodores and let's not mention the captains. Roja lived in the first base in the West Blue. Half a month soon passed. During this time nothing big happened. Only some trivial things that Roja hated to deal with so he directly thrown them to the rear admiral and the commodores deal with. This wasn't like a leader's performance. Taika was quite happy about it because if Roja didn't do anything that fit as a leader then he will only be a leader in name and all the power will be controlled by him. But still, occasionally Roja had to do some things himself which made him wonder if it really was a good choice to let Robin go. He should have captured her and made her his secretary, which would be better for him. Cough. It doesn't seem like a good idea. In addition, Roja after arriving at the first base didn't forget to practice and increase his soul sword's energy. The base's equipment couldn't be compared with the one in the headquarters. But still, Roja could practice his sword and hockey so it's okay. He recently found out that the hockey practice, as well as the sword practice, will increase the energy not any less than the hell training he always does. Perhaps it was difficult to enhance his physical strength using the hell practice now. His physical strength reached a certain degree that made it necessary to look for his own path. In that half a month Roja was in the first base he upgraded his soul sword to the final 10th level. The third stage, Smart Sword of the Soul plus 10. Attribute, Attack Power plus 300, Power plus 100, Agility plus 100. Special attribute, All things in the world, turn to ashes, sword attack has additional fire damage, evolution's condition isn't met. Special attributes, Getsuga Tenshō, can release a arc-shaped red energy attack. Energy, 18/220. As long as I increase the energy to its full value, then I can probably enter the 4th stage. Roja looked at the property bar and with a thought, he put it away and pulled his sword. When he looked carefully at the sword his brows wrinkled. Hano no Suki is getting more and more damaged. It looked like I need a new one soon. Even if I can't find one of the Seijo o Wazamono then I can find one with the same grade as this one at least. A Ryo Wazamono sword won't be able to withstand the heat. While Roja was deep in his thoughts, a sudden knock comes from the door. Pang! Come in. Roja put back his sword and said calmly. A marine captain came into Roja's office and reported. Report, we just found the Gecko Pirates trail. Gecko Pirates. Roja was slightly feeling that the name was familiar. Then he immediately remembered. The former leader of the base was defeated by those pirates and then the captain's reward raised to 70 million berry. The bounty of the entire crew should be really big if I catch all of them then I could get more than 10,000 points. Did the Gecko Pirate enter the Grand Line before? Roja stood up, touched his chin and asked while walking toward the door. Although he asked that question, but in his mind, he didn't really care why did they stay in the West Blue. The Gecko Pirates in his eyes were just 10,000 points for him to claim. If there is more of those kinds of pirates he will soon accumulate the point needed to get the Saiji o Wazamono sword. We thought the same thing, but we just received information that they are on the nearby island. The officer who comes to report saw Roja get out of the office and followed behind him while his eyes revealed his fear of those pirates. The pirates always avoid the marine but there wasn't a case where a marine avoided a pirate. But Gecko Pirate is different. They were defeated by those pirates before and even their former boss was killed by them. Because of this, the marine in the first base held fear toward them. Mr. Roja, what should we do? Do we request support from the nearby bases and attack or? Roja glanced at the captain beside him and said even if the second base rushed to our base it would take them a long time to get here. Moreover, do you really want people from other bases to come to support us? This. The captain revealed his hesitation after that question. If they were to request support from other bases they would be the laughing stock of all bases. The dignified first base of the West Blue couldn't handle a mere pirate in the West Blue. Roja knew the idea that was on the head of the captain before him, he smiled and said, it's not necessary a troublesome problem. Hearing Roja's word, the captain was surprised. Mr. Roja, the Gecko pirates aren't trivial pirates. Even the former leader was. Talking to hear the captain paused while face paled with fear, then said, Rear Admiral Taika isn't in the base now. It is best to wait for his return before doing anything. After hearing this, Roja stopped and looked at the captain. The captain thought that Roja accepted his idea, then he was surprised by Roja, who suddenly laughed. Don't you want to regain this base's reputation? Being so fearful and having no courage at all, don't worry, I will bring back that fame. This. When he heard Roja's word, the captain's face was constantly changing. And when he was about to react and respond to Roja, he found out that Roja has long gone. He hesitated a little, then bit his teeth and followed up. Roja was the base's leader, so he didn't have any power to refute his decision. Not only the captain, everyone wanted to revive the reputation of their base. And the best way was indeed to catch the Gecko pirates. He heard from those who were with Roja on the warship that Roja was quite strong and they couldn't measure him just by his age. Since that's the case, he chose to believe their words. Roja departed on a warship along 3 captains from the first base. The enemy defeated the former leader of the first base. Roja's order went smoothly as they now went to suppress the Gecko pirates. The atmosphere on the warship was terrible, a lot of Marines were afraid to go against the Gecko pirates. Such an atmosphere made Roja laugh. Roja didn't say anything. At least those Marine had some courage. He was standing on the deck with the captains. They were looking at the information about the Gecko pirates. They were dead set on chasing after them. On the sea, a large pirate ship was slowly moving forward. The last preparation is done. The captain of the Gecko pirates had a cold and terrifying face. He was standing there grinning creepily. Captain, are we heading to the Grand Line now? Kishishishishi, I want all people on the Grand Line to know my name. The other people on board revealed their excitement. There was no need for them to continue and stay in the West Blue anymore. And at this time, a pirate suddenly ran over and shouted. Captain, we found a Marine warship in front of us. Oh. The captain of the Gecko pirates with his sharp teeth felt surprised for a moment. He suddenly grinned. The Maine still want to cause trouble for me. Before we head toward the Grand Line, I will make them know who am I. Hey hey. The cadres saw this and were excited. They grinned while picking their weapons. They didn't fear the Marines at all and their eyes thirsty for blood. In front of the Gecko pirates ship was a medium-sized warship from the first base. On the warship, a captain was looking puzzled at Roja, who was on the deck, then said to him anxiously, Mr. Roja, the enemy had entered our range. Do we dire at them? The biggest advantage the warship hold on the pirate ships is the firepower. Even if it was a good pirate ship, it will be hardly comparable to the firepower of a warship. In accordance with the Marine rules and practices, once a pirate ship enters their range they will immediately start firing so they can hold some advantage over them. But it's still a decision of the leader whether he should attack or not. But this time Roja didn't give the command to start a fire even after they were already in their range. Roja didn't issue the command, which made the 3 captains' hearts anxious. But they still didn't dare to make the decision themselves. Mr. Roja, please allow the start of firing. The captain's forehead was full of cold sweat. They didn't expect that Roja won't follow common sense. He planned on attacking the Gecko pirates but still didn't command the attack. Is it because he is still young and never fought on the sea before? Thinking about this made the captain's foreheads full of cold sweat. Now the opportunity to start the fire is lost. Their hearts gradually sunk to the ground. They always felt that he was too young to be a leader. On the other side, the Gecko pirates felt very strange. They prepared themselves to get bombarded, but the attacks didn't seem to come at all. Captain, the enemy warship has no sign of firing. Do we start the fire? Let's first see what will they do. Gecko pirates captain was suspicious. He frowned while his heart felt was uneasy, but he still didn't know where that feeling was coming from. The warship still didn't start attacking, the same thing for the pirate ship. It was a very strange situation. When the people on the warship saw that the pirates didn't fire at them, the 3 captains and the others couldn't breathe at all. The distance was short, but it felt like they need more than a year to reach them. Even when they participated in other marine wars they weren't this nervous. We're lucky, the enemy didn't start the fire too. A captain wiped his forehead, which was full of cold sweat. Looking at the distance between the 2 ships was getting closer and closer, he took a deep breath. He looked at Roja's back, then at another captain. At this time they won't listen to Roja's orders anymore. They will rush to the pirate ship and attack directly. Not firing. Roja had his hand on his sword and was ready to defend against any cannonball coming toward them. But the other side for some reason didn't fire at them too. Roja chuckled in his heart. What were they trying to do? The problem is, for him, firing or not won't make any difference. 200 meters. 150 meters. 100 meters. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. The atmosphere was becoming tenser. It's like the calm before the storm. After seeing the 2 ships getting close to each other, the captains behind Roja were getting depressed. They couldn't help but directly talk with Roja. Mr. Roja, He decided that if Roja was still indifferent, then he will take command from there. He couldn't watch Roja give them a stupid command and get them all annihilated. However, Roja didn't answer him but looked at the pirate ship deeply, then said something that made the captain stunned. Almost there. What is almost there? The other 2 captains looked at each other when they heard Roja's gentle voice. They couldn't help but ask. The distance. Roja answered faintly, then glanced at the captain and said, do a good job at cleaning the mess. Clean the mess. What mess? The 3 captains looked at each other with a surprised expression. And in the next moment, Roja, who was standing before them, suddenly moved. Whiz. And after a second, Roja directly was walking on the air. Is this moonwalk? What does Mr. Roja want to do? Seeing this, the 3 captains' heart jumped. At the same time, Gecko pirates found that Roja was walking on air above them. They were stunned. That marine is flying in the sky. What does he want to do? The Gecko pirates, including their captain, couldn't react. Just the next moment, Roja took out his sword while his eyes changed. The sword rose through the air and then came down toward the pirate ship. I have a sword and could cut anything. Getsuga. Tenshō. The next instant, whether was it the marine on the warship, or the pirate on their ship, all of them were shocked senseless. That scene will not be forgotten for the rest of their lives. A dazzling red sword energy, like a crescent moon, from the sky, came down toward the pirate ship. Wouch! Silence, on the large ship, a deep crack appeared suddenly and then the ship was cut in two halves. Just one sword. Gecko pirate's ship impressively was cut in half from the middle. Crash! After being cut into two halves, the ship began to sink. The pirates couldn't react at all. They could only stare at the crack before them in dismay. All of them couldn't believe what has just happened. Their boat was cut in halves, with one sword strike. This is just too incredible. If it wasn't in front of them they wouldn't have believed it. They were confident in defeating the Marines from the first base. They still didn't enter the Grand Line. Why is there someone this powerful here? This was like the difference between the heaven and earth. They finally understood why the warship didn't fire at them. If they had such a strong person, why would they need cannonballs? On the other side, in the warship, almost all people that were present were shocked speechless. They could only stare at the scene before them. Even for the three captain, this was the first time for them to witness a ship getting cut by one sword strike. So Roja was this strong. They were Marine captains. Their position isn't low, but they were the only captain in the West Blue. They weren't captains from the Grand Line, so their strength wasn't much. It's a first for them to witness the extent of power that Roja just used. A sword was used to cut a large ship. There was no one from the bases capable of doing this. Only headquarter officers could have such ability. In the West Blue, the highest ranked Marine is the Rear Admiral. Which will be a leader of a base or a vice leader. They do have the same name but they were incomparable to those from the headquarter. For the Rear Admirals here, getting this kind of strength in their entire lives is impossible. That sword strike cut the Gecko pirate's ship in halves. Roja chuckled in his heart as he was feeling somewhat happy. Whiz. Roja's figure blurred then reappeared on the warship. The Gecko pirate's ship started sinking. Even their captain threw his weapon and found himself a wooden boat. He sat there desperately. Roja could kill him whenever he wants. He just cut a large ship in half, a small boat was nothing for him. Most of the surviving pirates tried to flee and some directly gave up all resistance. They didn't have a ship anymore, so how could they fight against the warship? Even if they did still have a ship, what can they really do against Roja? He was a monster, killing all of them is a joke for him. The Marines on the warship were still shocked. When Roja returned to the warship, he saw the captain of the Gecko pirate desperately trying to flee in his small boat and shook his head. Don't think about running. Roja drew his sword again and waved. A 100-meter-long sword energy directly flew toward the small boat and directly split it in half. The captain of the Gecko pirate couldn't put any resistance against Roja's power. If he was to fall into the sea he will directly sink to the bottom. Devil fruit ability. Seeing the captain didn't struggle anymore, Roja once again shook his head. He returned his sword into his scabbard and turned around. He glanced at the captains beside him and said, "You're not doing anything." Yes. Those Marine finally woke up after hearing Roja's words. They knew what they should do. After half a day everything was done. Part of the Gecko pirate became fish food while other didn't put any resistance and were arrested. They will become prisoners. The pirates who defeated the leader of their base before were completely destroyed now. There was only one warship now and some would scattered on the sea. The Marines searched for anything with value, like information, treasure and the like. The ship now completely sunk into the deep sea. The cadres of the Gecko pirates had some tens of millions on their heads. They were vicious before but after remembering Roja's power they couldn't do anything but fear him. If when they were in their cells they still tremble when that scene passed in their minds. They were afraid that this scene will hunt them for the rest of their lives. Reporting, all the surviving pirates are now in the prison. A captain was in front of Roja, he looked at Roja with a look of worship and admiration. The level of respect he's showing now is incomparable to before. Roja now was someone they look up to. He cut a ship in half with a one-sword strike. And even after that, he didn't just watch as the Marine caught them, but helped them instead. This is a first for them, to go in a war against a pirate group and receive such a low casualties. Only a few people suffered some light injuries and one was seriously injured while there wasn't anyone dead. This was a miraculous battle. Before their base's leader was killed in the process of fighting those pirates. But now not only did they win but only one person was seriously injured and no one has died. Even now they felt that all this was a dream. After reporting this to the headquarters they will receive a certain amount of merit. They benefited from Roja too much which made them not only worship them but also be grateful toward him. Of course, Roja's merit is the highest without a doubt. After all, he was the one who defeated the Gecko pirates almost alone. I am afraid that the power of all the people on the warship is less than Roja's. The pirates' total bounty was 120 million. And because they were one of the most influential pirates on the West Blue, they may receive an additional reward. Roja will probably receive 10,000 points. Roja was standing on the deck. He was looking at the sea. He thought a little then nodded at the captain before him. The captain saw this and understood. He respectfully stood aside and didn't disturb Roja. This piece of the sea has too many pirates. Many hold 100 million bounties, if I am lucky then it wouldn't take me that long to accumulate these on 100,000 point. Roja pondered for a while, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. The possibility of someone taking the Seijo o Wazamono sword is small. 100,000 points may seem like a small number but it's also a lot. There are many pirates in the sea but most of them are in the New World. The New World is a dangerous place. There are 4 powers that could be said to control most of it. But with the strength of a vice admiral, even if he can't win he could escape. Not to mention the time it takes them to return after going out to catch pirates, it may take half a month or a month to return. And that is really time-consuming. The points are then used to exchange for devil fruit, swords and other things they could be used to provide shelter for the officer's family and loved ones for 2 years or even permanent. Like Garp, because of him being such a big shot the Marine have to provide shelter for his family and even need to conceal some of his personal information. In the point system, the more expensive the item the fewer people try to get it. Like the sword, Roja is eyeing. There aren't that many swordsmen in the Marine, to begin with, and Roja wanted that sword not only because he liked it but because other swords won't be able to withstand his power anymore. Moreover, there is a chance that Roja with finding one while he's in the sea and he can keep it to himself. After pondering for a while, Roja turned to the captain and said, "Since we're finished here let's return." "Yes." The captain nodded respectfully. The warship started moving to return to the base. Roja was still on the deck. He leaned on the railing to enjoy the sea breeze and didn't return to his cabin. No one dared to disturb Roja. The captain was pressured facing Roja now and didn't dare to come forward and talk to him. They all knew that Roja being so young and so powerful won't be staying much as the leader of the first base in the West Blue. He will sooner or later be transferred to the Grand Line and he may even be an admiral in the future. After thinking about this, they were more respectful toward him. After half a day Roja who was still leaning on the railing was preparing to return to his cabin. Suddenly he felt something strange and looked to the direction that this feeling came from. In that direction, a shadow vaguely appeared. Quickly some of the Marine also found out about the shadow. This shadow wasn't an island, it was a ship, and this ship was going in their direction. Although it was still very far you can vaguely tell that it is a merchant ship. The merchant ship apparently found out about the warship and if the two continued on the same route they will hit each other. So the merchant ship took the initiative to change its route to avoid the warship. But as they took the initiative to change the route, Roja who was about to go back to his cabin revealed a strange expression. Because the magnitude of avoidance is a bit too big. If it was only to avoid being hit it could just change the direction by a little bit to the side. But this is obviously a little too large. It like they want to avoid the warship completely not just avoid hitting each other. Interesting. Roja touched his chin while revealing his interest then said, "Change the course. Target the merchant ship." Yes. Not just Roja felt that something was strange. The captain didn't suspect anything at first then he felt that there is a little problem. The warship changed its course. The merchant ship found out that the warship was coming toward it and seemed that it will soon catch up to them. It changed its course again and continued to avoid the warship. So there are indeed some problems on the ship. Are they going to escape? It seems that there is something on it. Roja heard the captains talking and looked at them with a smile and said, "Maybe you are afraid that we can't handle it, ... In this piece of sea, although there are many pirates looting but also there is a small number of corrupted marines. They would go on a merchant ship and get everything on it." Mr. Roja is joking. After hearing Roja's words, the three captains were embarrassed. Roja looked at them then turned toward the merchant ship. The merchant ship wasn't moving slowly. But compared to a warship it is somewhat slow. The warship caught up to it in no time. "Stop the boat, we're here to check it up." A captain stood at the deck and shouted solemnly at the merchant ship. From the merchant ship, a businessman like a person came out. Looking surprised at the captain in the warship he said, "Mr. Marine, we are just an ordinary cargo ship, there is no need to check. Talk less." The captain boarded the ship with some armed soldiers. 2 captains boarded the ship while the other one stayed with Roja. "Mister, this warship doesn't. It has a problem." Roja stood there and said before the captain finishes his sentence. When he heard Roja said that there is a problem with such a calm voice, he knew that Roja already knew the problem. He concentrated and looked more intently at the merchant ship. The 2 other captain has already boarded the ship. At this time the businessman-like person greeted them with a laugh and said, "You Marines really work hard." After saying this the man quietly took a stack of money and placed it in the pocket of one of the captain. His action could only be seen by the captains. Seeing this the 2 captains' faces changed, they looked at each other and hesitated for a bit. Then they took their sword and pointed it at the businessman and snapped, "You don't move, tell us honestly, what is on this ship?" Seeing this the businessman-like person's face suddenly turned cold. "Do we not have any other way? Do you want to resist?" The captain faced with a harsh look on his face. "Don't." The businessman bowed slightly and a fierce look appeared on his face. Then suddenly he pulled his sword and waved. The 2 captains were shocked. So strong. The 2 of them were surprised. They immediately wanted to call for support because this person is really strong. At the same time from the merchant cabin came out a large group of armed people and rushed over. "What is this merchant ship? Is it a pirate ship?" The businessman went on the offensive, his swordplay wasn't the strongest point but speed was. Ding! Ding! 3 to 5 people rushed at him, the sword on the captain's hand was sent flying and the next moment a sword was coming toward him with the finishing blow. The other captain was shocked and was late in his attempt to go for his rescue. And in the next moment, the businessman's pupil shrank as a silhouette flashed unexpectedly beside him. And to his surprise that silhouette caught his sword using 2 fingers. 2 fingers were dyed black and made the businessman unable to move his sword at all. Busashoku. Hockey. The businessman looked horrified as he didn't expect to see such a strong person in the West Blue. Roja's 2 fingers were cast in black as he caught the sword. And with a flick of his fingers, the sword was thrown to the side. "Where are you from?" Being able to use hockey, this group didn't seem to be ordinary Marines. After Roja threw away the sword, the businessman took away 2 steps back as he was scared, but he still commanded the people behind him and said, "Fire at them, kill them." Seeing this Roja shook his head slightly, his body moved forward suddenly and came in front of the businessman. He waved his sword and only stopped when it was next to the businessman's neck. "You recognize the gap of strength and still want to resist." Roja's indifferent voice echoed on the deck. Surrounded by silence. No one could attack. No one was able to shoot at him. Behind the businessmen, all the armed people were fixed in place. A clear bloodline appeared on their bodies. What's terrifying is not only the fact those people were cut but the fact that a thick line appeared on the upper half of the ship's cabins. Only the businessman was unscathed. But with Roja's sword on his neck, his forehead overflowed with cold sweat. When he looked at his side he was shocked senseless by the scene he saw. Wouch! Countless corpses fell and blood flowed. And the upper half of the ship fell into the sea which made a roar-like sound and set off a huge wave. Seawater washed the deck but there is still traces of scarlet color all over the place. It's two. Roja looked behind at the two captains and the other marines but he found that their mouths were twitching. If they didn't see Roja cutting the pirate ship before, then their chins would have already broken the floor by now. But even seeing this scene their heart couldn't remain calm anymore. If those marine who saw Roja cut an entire ship in half couldn't stay calm, then how could the businessman remain calm? He was completely scared senseless. Especially when Roja's sword was still on his neck, he got the feeling that his head is already separated from his body. What are you doing? Roja asked faintly. Sending. Delivery. The business cracked after looking at Roja and said with his mouth trembling. What goods? Arms. The businessman's forehead, neck and back were full of cold sweat. His sound was trembling when answered. He obviously didn't have the resolve to face death yet. Hearing the word arms, Roja suddenly frowned. He had a vague thought so he asked. Who will receive it? Don Quixote family. Really? Hearing the replay of the arms dealer, Roja did guess right. Speaking frankly, other than Don Quixote family Roja couldn't think of any bigger underground trader in arms and slaves. Before when he was still a recruit, the first and only mission he went on, he encountered a base belonging to the Don Quixote family. He didn't expect to come across something else belonging to them in the West Blue. Don Quixote family's trade network is really huge. Where will those arms be sold? No. I do not know. You don't know. Roja looked at him coldly. Suddenly the arms dealer felt pressure coming down on him and felt fear. He looked and saw a pair of indifferent eyes look at him. He quickly said, I really don't know, my responsibility ends when I send those arms to Barna Island. Hearing his words, Roja put back his sword into the scabbard and gestured to the captain behind him. Immediately someone came forward and put the shackles on the arms dealer. Roja looked at the captain and said. Barna Island. If I remember correctly it's within the jurisdiction of the commercial island. I didn't think there were armed traders there. The captain had a look of apprehension. Thing is a mess if it was really related to the Don Quixote family, they're a powerful group of pirates in the Grand Line. The commercial island. Roja touched his chin, suddenly showed a slight interest in his face. His mouth curved into a smile. Before when he was in the camp, he broke the base of the Don Quixote family in the South Blue. They did harvest quite a pit that time. Many arms and even 2 devil fruits. If he was to calculate how many points he would get that time, then it will be at least tens of thousand points out of it. Unfortunately, they were recruits and were using the Marine headquarters resources as they like. So in the actual mission, anything that happens will be in Z's name. Of course, when using the resources of the Marine headquarters you at least had to pay that much. But this time it's different. Now he isn't a recruit, he is the leader of the first base in the West Blue. He is a rear admiral and everything he finds will be counted and converted to points if he wanted to. Really this came to him in the right time. He just was wondering how could he get as much point as he can as fast as possible. And here the opportunity came toward him by itself. Roja couldn't help but smile and then issued a few orders. The Marines on the ship directly executed his orders. The Don Quixote family has dominated the underground trades. It could be said to trade in anything from arms to slaves to devil fruit. Their impact on the world is large. As Doflamingo isn't a Shichibukai yet. The world government didn't know about him yet. Even Great Staff Officer Crane had led an army to pursue Doflamingo before. Including the time when Roja was a recruit, they could only find 3 bases of the Don Quixote family. And now Roja happened to find one. Roja suspect that on Barna Island there are an underground trades. So directly commanded the warship to head toward that place without informing the first base. He didn't know whether Donk's white family had a spy planted on the first base or not, and if they did have one, then he informed them so they move, Roja would be upset. So Roja didn't have any intention to inform them. Even if they tried to load the arms on the medium-sized warship, it would fill all the cabins. So Roja didn't care about that now. First, he needs to go to the Barna Island and arrest those of the Don Quixote family. Then he will call the base to send some warship to get everything there. Not far from the Barna Island, a warship was slowing down. On the warship. You want to go alone? No. If it is really a Don Quixote family underground base it would be really dangerous. The 3 captains looked at Roja with cold sweat over their foreheads. Even though Roja holds so much strength, they were still afraid of going to the Barna Island. So when they reached the waters beside the Barna Island, fear started to show on many faces. And when Roja wanted to go alone, they couldn't agree. How could they let their leader go into the enemy camps alone? Even if he was strong, it's still very dangerous. After all, their opponent is the Don Quixote family. That's right. I am going alone. He said this without any doubt. He did experience the power of the Don Quixote family before and had his reasons to go there alone. If they all were to go and those pirates attacked, then, it will be inevitable to receive some casualties. Also if those pirates were to hold some of the marine hostages, then the situation will be really troublesome. The easiest way is to go alone and investigate. If he finds out that this is really a base for the Don Quixote family then he will make his move and let the captain clean after him. This won't be the same as the previous time. This time there won't be any danger for him. If he doesn't deal with this himself, then there is no way the first base marines would be able to do it. As for him, he can arrest them alone and even if some big characters from the Don Quixote family appear they won't be able to stop him. Maybe except for Doflamingo himself, no one can stop Roja now. And at this time Doflamingo seems to be fleeing from Tsuru the crane. This. The three captain noticed Roja's firm tone, they couldn't continue trying to persuade him to not go alone. They could only look at him with worry now. When Barna Island started to appear before them, Roja changed his clothes and wore some casual ones. He took a wooden boat and headed toward the island. The arrival of a boat didn't bring any attention toward Roja. After all, this island was a commercial island on the outside. So people often come here by boat to buy all kind of things. Roja didn't know where is the dock on this island, so he directly jumped into the island and disappeared. The center of Barna Island was a very bustling area. This island and the one that Roja had gone to when he was still a recruit are completely different. In this island, there were many ordinary people and most are real ordinary people. They weren't some disguised pirates. Even if the marine came here they won't find anything suspicious. Roja, who was dressed in some plain clothes, was sure that this island has a problem. He hockeyed to search for the Don Quixote base and finally found it. Is this really an accident? Roja was walking in the street slightly bored. He glanced at the earth beneath his feet and shook his head. They continued walking to a certain direction. In some place underground, a dozen of people were trying to close a deal. Although not everyone is vicious, all their eyes were cold. They were basically from the underground forces of the West Blue and representatives of various forces. A man holding a cigar said, "This time the arms will be distributed equally, is there anything else?" "Of course." A middle-aged man smiled while standing on the stage and said, "Devil fruit, I don't know if anyone is interested." Devil fruit. Hearing this many people's eyes shined. In the West Blue, devil fruits are considered rare. There are some people who remained calm. Whether we're interested in it or not depends on what type of fruit you have. The middle-aged man heard this and started explaining, 3 different fruits. After a brief introduction of the type of fruit, he put the 3 fruits on the table. Below the stage, many people started whispering to each other. After that, they began to place their bids. After some time the 3 devil fruits were sold. Well, we only have 3 devil fruits this time, but since they appeared now they couldn't be the last item in this auction. The middle-aged man once again took a black stick that was on the table. Taking a closer look, it's not a black stick but it was something wrapped in a black cloth. When the middle-aged man ripped off the black clothes, he suddenly exposed something long and white. The crowd frowned and didn't know what item they will see now. And the next moment, the middle-aged man held the peak of the stick and pulled. Wouch! The next moment, a very delicate, white long sword appeared before everyone. This is. Seeing this sword the crowd exclaimed loudly. The middle-aged man waved the sword gently a few times in the air, then he returned the sword into the scabbard and then put it back on the table. This really wasn't easy to find, after several times trying to acquire it, we finally got it. If I tell the name of this sword you should be able to recognize it. This is one of the Seijo o Wazamono 12 swords. White sword, Hiru. This sword is like Yoru, the sword used by the best swordsman Mihawk. After the middle-aged man finished his words, many people were indifferent about this sword, but some had their eyes flashing. Indeed the last holder of the sword died on the West Blue. I didn't think this sword has fallen into the hands of your Don Quixote family. Your intelligence network is really good. The auction was here so the owner could get money. So, of course, the people that will attend are all rich nobles. In this world, there are many things that could sell for a good price. The ordinary devil fruits are common in the Grand Line but they were extremely rare in this piece of the sea. Although there are many strong people on the Grand Line, those strong people mostly didn't have as much money as those rich nobles. So when they found such a good sword they directly went to sell it on the West Blue underground auction. The middle-aged man was really excited. This wasn't an ordinary sword. So it would sell and the price would be really good. However, when the middle-aged man announced the start of the auction, no one actually spoke. Many people's eyes were shining but they still were hesitant. This is not some common sword, it was one of the Seijo o Wazamono series. The price will certainly be really high but all the people here are rich and it won't be a problem for them. The problem is that the sword couldn't be controlled by them. Mihawk is always carrying his sword on his back, alone. Did anyone dare to touch his Yoru? No. Even if someone had his eye on it he won't dare to touch it. Because the sword held some strange powers within it. If someone other than Mihawk touch it, he will be killed. And even if they didn't use it, wouldn't this bring them too much trouble if this got leaked out? Having this sword is big trouble. So most people wanted to get it but they were still considering the risk. The hell? The middle-aged man saw that the people didn't start the bid and his brow started to wrinkle. His eyes looked suspiciously and couldn't help but say. No one wants this sword. If the item that was put for the end of this auction isn't sold then it wouldn't be nice. If so then I will let our people buy it. The middle-aged man's face wasn't looking good. If this can't be sold it would hurt him. After seeing that no one staring the bid, started winking at his people within the crowd to start biting. But before they spoke a loud voice came. Nobody wants this sword, then I will take it. The sound was moderate but also held a trace of evil. After the voice, a silhouette suddenly fell from above directly fell beside the table and took the sword into his hands. Countless people stared at Roja who was holding the sword. Holding this good sword, Roja's eyes suddenly flashed with strange light. He didn't expect the Don Quixote family to get one of the 12 swords and would try to sell it on the West Blue. There were only 12 swords on the whole world. This was really a pleasant surprise. If the Don Quixote family network wasn't so big it would be difficult for them to find this sword. Who? What are you doing? Roja's sudden appearance made all people present surprised. The middle-aged man was stunned by Roja who took the sword from the table. His face instantly changed, pulled the gun and pointed it toward Roja. Although he didn't know who Roja was, since he is here, then that means he came looking for trouble. Hey little devil, the Don Quixote family thing isn't something that you can just rob. You better honestly put it down. Rob? Roja looked at Hiru, then leisurely turned toward the middle-aged man without a care about the gun pointed at him. He shook his head and said. No, I am not robbing. I am seizing. He said that casually. Roja casually puts a white hat on his head. It is the marine hat. Silence. The crowd was silent, followed by an uproar as if a drop of water has just been dropped into a hot oil. Are you a marine? Hell. How did a marine get here, Don Quixote guy, what is going on? When they saw Roja suddenly appear and snatching the sword, all the people were in dismay, but they still didn't think that Roja is marine. But he suddenly wore the marine hat, which made their eyes pop out and those who were sitting stood up. Some people pulled out their weapon and looked at Roja. And some others were looking around. They wanted to check if they were already surrounded by the marines or not. And others were only thinking about how to get out of here. The Don Quixote family was in charge of this base so they didn't expect a marine to appear here. The middle-aged man was staring at Roja with panic in his eyes. Roja didn't wear his uniform. He was wearing casual clothes as he sneaked in. And it doesn't seem that any marine was outside either. Although they didn't know how Roja found out about this place and how he sneaked in, but since he's alone, then it's not a problem. Of course, the location of the base is already exposed. They need to get rid of the marine in front of them and move the base to another place. The middle-aged man thought then his killing intent was directed toward Roja. He didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. Bang! 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 A few bullets shot toward Roja. Maybe if Roja was an ordinary person then he wouldn't be able to see the bullets. But this is Roja we're talking about here. The middle-aged man was shocked to see Roja only tilted his head to the side and avoided the gunshots. The bullets didn't hit. All the people heard the gunshots and looked to the direction of the sound. And all they saw was Roja tilted head and the middle-aged was holding the gun. All of them were surprised. Everyone knew that Roja avoided some bullets just now. What surprised them is that they were in the West Blue, so where did such a person come from? Is this a joke? The middle-aged man saw what happened and was surprised when he panicked. He started shooting at Roja like crazy. Too slow. The Kenbunchaku haki made him know the trajectory of each bullet. A mocking smile appeared on Roja's mouth. Then he held the hilt of Hiru. His eyes flashed as he pulled it out from the scabbard. Wouch! The sword turned into a shadow and flashed a few times. And surprisingly all the bullets were chopped off. When the sword collided with the bullets, there wasn't even a spark. Looking at the sword in his hand, Roja couldn't help but praise it. This sword was far better than his Hanu no Suki. After waving it twice, he already adapted to its weight and sharpness. The middle-aged man saw Roja cutting the bullets and couldn't help but have cold sweat run down his back even though he's one of the Don Quixote family. Avoiding bullets didn't have the same impact as cutting them. An average person won't be able to do that. All the people present knew that Roja wasn't some normal marine. But they gradually calmed down. They are after all have fought many battles before and every one of them had spilled blood before. They all looked at Roja with murderous intent. Roja was a marine, so he's a common enemy for all of them. Even if Roja seemed to be so strong but his, after all, just one person. Many took out their weapons ready to fight with Roja as they had confidence in their number. At this time many members of the Don Quixote family rushed in and surrounded Roja. Under the middle-aged man's orders, they were prepared to kill Roja. Roja from the beginning to the end didn't pay them any attention. He kept looking at the sword and enjoying it. He suddenly caught a glimpse of the people surrounding him and shook his head. Some ants. Roja held Hiru single-handedly and faced those who rushed at him, then he gently waved his sword from the left to the right. Hum. A bright sword energy shined in the dark underground room for an instant. The energy appeared quickly and disappeared quickly. Almost in the blink of an eye, it disappeared as nothing could stop it. In the center of Barna Island, there was a large hotel. The hotel entrance was open but no ordinary person could come close, they can only look from afar. This was not a place that anyone could enter. But at this moment. Wouch! From under the hotel, a light suddenly flashed, pierced the ground and disappeared into the sky. Then suddenly a crack appeared in front of the hotel. The crack was neat as if was measured by a ruler, it was a long straight line. Gotcha. Just after the crack appeared, cracks started to appear on the whole street. Bang! It was like a spider web as it spread to the whole street. And at last a large area collapsed. That single sword made the street collapse. The collapsing made such a strong sound that all the passerby looked toward that way. Then a look of dismay appeared on their faces. When they looked at the bottom, it seemed like there was a huge dark room underground. In that underground room could see many corpses with blood flowing out. Screams sounded as the whole street instantly broke in chaos. Some ordinary people rushed to hide while others who seemed like pirates took out their weapon and rushed over. At this moment, Roja was in the center of the underground room while the sun shined on him. Hiru's blade was emitting bright light while the sun was reflected on it. Yoru was heavy and large while Hiru was light and delicate. Around Roja, all people revealed their shock while looking at the sword in Roja's hands which just split the underground room. As for those that surrounded Roja, all of them and their weapons were cut in half. You gotta be joking. Is this that sword's power? Even if those people were all influential people from the underground, their scope of knowledge is only restricted to the West Blue. This kind of power was out of their scope. Seeing that the sword could cut steel and flesh alike, all people were shocked beyond belief. Some people even though that this was Hiru's power as they stared at the sword in Roja's hand and wanted to snatch it. And at this time, all the Don Quixote forces came out and surrounded the places. There were countless swords pointing at Roja. And in face of this kind of situation, Roja was calm as if nothing is happening. He even had a mocking smile on his face. Those people are too weak. Roja though that he didn't need his sword to defeat those kinds of people, he could defeat them with a thought. The sky, the earth, and his enemies. Not only his enemies, even the vast sky, and the heavy earth. He felt that with a thought he catch everything in his hands. This feeling. Hum. In this moment, Roja's eyes flashed and from the depth of his body a power suddenly broke out and rushed toward every direction and spread out. Roja's momentum was unprecedented, like it condensed into reality. It's like the sky and earth have surrendered to his momentum. Silence. The people holding guns froze. The people holding sword also froze. Far away. The ordinary people who were screaming and fleeing all stopped. Everything stopped for a moment. Puff. Puff. After some time, all the people started falling down with puff sounds. 3 seconds later. All the people on the island with Roja in the center fell to the ground with a puff sound. Roja stood there quietly in the center with a calm expression as if this is what should happen from the beginning. If anyone in the West Blue saw this they would be horrified. If anyone in the first half of the Grand Line would also get horrified. Even if it was in the New World they would exclaim loudly. Haushiku. Haki. Yes. In this moment, the Haki of the Kings had awakened in Roja.
Hello everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.